We had a college that has now routinely, like, we've played shows for them, and it's like it's the same price that you're talking about for Goot to come play here or whatever. But like we've played and there have been like 4 people there or whatever because everyone's like on break when we play or whatever.
Right.
But we're still just like, okay, I guess we'll come play for like these 4 people.
Guess we're having a glorified practice today.
Yeah, exactly.
We're always collaborating at all times with the universe.
I love the fucking sweater.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I like your sweater too. Did you get to go to that tour or did you just have somebody pick it up for you?
No. So actually, a friend of mine, she works for, I guess, like a larger retail merch company.
Mm-hmm.
And they had her hire some local people, like subcontract to some local people to sell merch for them. So at Pittsburgh, they were at Stage AE and she was like, her name's Lily. She was like, hey, do you want to sell for AFI in Pittsburgh? I was like, yeah, hell yeah. I had no idea about the new album and they're playing all the old bangers too.
Yeah.
It was 2 artists. I forget who the opening artist was, but it was like a shoegaze kind of like ambient
cool.
style. But yeah, man. And they played for like an hour, like retro, like 80s synth wave kind of like pop. It was fucking awesome for like an hour. Real chill, real great vibes, like easily smoke vibes. And then after they were done, it was AFI for like an hour and 15 minutes. And you're an AFI fan?
Yeah.
They fucking crushed. Davey Havoc has it. Like whatever, he's never going to lose it. He's always going to have that, in my mind, that Sing the Sorrow era, like high vocal range. He just absolutely crushed it. They were phenomenal. So then while I was working there, and I didn't take it for free. I could have had it for free, but I was like, no, I'll pay. Like I've supported this band since the day I heard them, so I'm gonna back it now. It was like a $50 hoodie. And I was like, let's go. I love it. Let's go for it.
Good for you. That's very, very nice. Some guy walked into like my dad's, like I was like visiting my dad for lunch at work, and his friend walked in and was just like, oh, you're Steve's kid. You're the one who plays music. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, have you ever heard of the band AFI? And I was like, yeah, they're awesome. And he was like, did I ever tell you that my nephew is the singer of that band? And I was like, yeah, I was just like, no, you didn't. And he was like, we got to stop in for lunch more sometime. You know, he's so busy playing shows. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure Davey Havoc is probably a pretty like busy guy. And he was like, I'll have to have him stop in sometime and say hi. That was just such a random, like just said that, walked out of the room. Like, cause to him, it's just like, oh, my nephew, and he's putting out these songs, right? But to me, I'm like, yeah,
nephew and his little band.
Yeah, and I'm just like, yeah, that guy who like is probably kind of responsible for me like wanting to even do this. I'm like, yeah, your little nephew.
Yeah, definitely. How old are you?
I'm 22.
22. That's so crazy because like to me, that's my era of like high school music for sure. Sing the Sorrow came out, I think like a little over 20 years ago now. I'm gonna say 25. I want to say maybe, and I have been jamming. That record was huge for me. Like that was like one of the pivot ones. One of the ones that kind of shapes you musically for the rest of your life. And if you get that fucking phone call, you're gonna go to lunch with him or whatever. You give me a call and I'll fucking be there in 2 hours flat. I'll make it from State College to Erie in an hour and a half flat on the 80, just doing 160.
Well, I thought the funny thing also was like he was speaking to me as if I could like relate to like as if I could relate to them doing these crazy huge audience tour, you know what I mean, playing for like thousands of people and having tons of success and whatever. He was like, you know what I mean, you're a musician dude. I'm like, no, I don't know what you mean because I'm not in AFI. Like I'm not in a huge rock band. But I don't know. My dad was like, yeah, you know, you and him would probably have a lot in common. I'm like, I think we'd probably have less in common. Like this dude is just shaping music or has been, like you said, for the last 20 years. And I'm like, I'm like putting out these YouTube cover videos. Like we are probably in 2 different leagues here, guys. But thank you.
Have you guys ever covered an AFI song?
No, but we've talked about doing Miss Murder for a while. That's like, I mean, that's probably the one that people would want to hear.
Yeah, you just go to Spotify and see what like whatever the most streamed most streamed, you know, AFI song is probably like that or
like Girls Not Grey maybe.
Yeah, that's another big one. Yeah. They had an album. It was like not this past one, but maybe it's been 2 by now because I may have missed one. It's just, you know, you like miss a band's drop because you got your own shit going on. You're like, oh fuck, I can go back. I can go back and revisit this now. They had a song called 17 Crimes that they did like a behind the scenes sort of discussion about the writing of the song, and they said that it was like one of the songs that came together and like 15 minutes or something like that. And it's a great song. Like it's just one.
Yeah.
You guys have that experience where you're writing and you just kind of get into a groove, and for whatever reason, the right melodies kind of pluck out and like you just start like, holy shit, this song is done. We had a song on our last album called Bloodhound for Oblivion. And that was like a product of like maybe an hour and a half of songwriting. And then like 2 or 3 hours of like lyric writing. And we had the idea, then the message and the feel that we wanted for it out of the gate. So it was just a matter of like, okay, getting it all laid down in a way that was the way we wanted it to be.
Yeah, no, there are definitely instances where like things just fall in place really nicely. But I'm sure, for every one of those, like there can be 5 days where it's like hours and hours and hours of like, should we say like, and my friend or with my friend or but my friend? And then it's like, I don't know, this whole thing just sounds so cheesy, guys. Can we just scrap this and start a new idea?
Yeah, I just hate all of this now.
Yeah, I know. That's it's part of it's part of creating, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that imposter syndrome, man, it cracks me up because I feel like with imposter syndrome, it literally, it's like death, right? Like it holds no grudges, it has no it's completely non-exclusive, like it will come for anybody. So like if you have the ability to like sit down and write anything, it's like you just need to be grateful and get the thing out. My buddy Jason, he does this process called he's like he set out to write a song that sucked, and he wrote a song that is like, I think, transformatively beautiful, just like a piano ballady kind of song. And I was like, yeah, that's so great that when you remove the idea of expectation and you're just trying to focus on just writing for writing's sake, for like the practice of writing, that you can be a little bit more like earnest and vulnerable. And I feel like once you remove some of those roadblocks, what comes out of you then is something that's just so organic and intrinsically you that it almost can't be bad, because you're this byproduct of all these influences that create who you are and what you like to write and how you write. Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard these stories, but like on the opposite side of that, have you ever heard of, Billy Corgan is writing, Cher Brock or something like that. And he's just like, hitting writer's block, and he's like, I'm gonna write a song that's like making fun of that or poking fun at like people who write these very like deep and prolific lyrics. So he sometimes or I've heard Rick Rubin also has done stuff like that, where he's kind of just like, pick up this book and just like the first thing you see, just like put it down.
Yeah,
like
the Bridge and System of a Down's, what was it? Chop Suey.
Chop Suey, yeah.
He picked a book up, and it literally has to do with like it was like, I don't know if he picked up a Bible or what it was. He picked up something, and the line that was on the thing was what inspired what became the Bridge. And it came from nowhere, and it literally fit perfectly in with the context of what the song was about.
Yeah,
so it's
I know.
like that. Yeah, I'm a big fan of doing things that are catalytically inclined. So like if you're doing something for the sake of just seeing what it instigates in your creative space, that's a really interesting. You watch Dave on Hulu at all?
Yeah. You mean about like that, like Lil Dicky,
Lil
right?
Dicky,
yeah. Uh-huh.
So the new season, I guess this is season 3. Just started they dropped the first 2 episodes, but so I went back to watch like the previous 2 episodes from the last season just to kind of reacclimate with where the story left off. And the Penith episode, he's going through, it's like a perfect, this show should win more Emmys specifically because of the way it's tackling the disconnect between the creative world and the business world. And it's this thing where he has to go inside, he goes into a deprivation tank, and then he starts kind of hallucinating, and then which is what will happen sometimes. And so he goes into his like self, and he finds what he thinks is his ego. And it's really like, he is the ego. And like what he finds inside is like the truest creative part of himself. And he has a scene where he walks back to a computer, and he was like, look, like, you're having a hard time writing. Look, I'm down here. I've been down here the whole time. Like, where the fuck have you been? And he goes over to a keyboard and hits space, and he just starts making this wrap up out of nowhere. And it's really good. It's catchy. It's like fun. And he's like, oh my God, that's amazing. Can I have that? And so he has to have like a conversation for like 15 minutes with him before he realizes like, oh, this is in me. This is me. And so he comes out of the deprivation tank, and he's like, I got to write this down. He's like writing down this line, like, that's a joke. That's a joke. And he's like just running around in his underwear trying to get to a pen and a pad after he gets out, because he's kind of tapped into himself in that authentic way. When we talked the last time, when was the last time we saw each other? Oh, the shoot, the Doja Cat shoot, or Post Malone shoot, and neither of them were there. So, when I left, you were talking to me. You hit me up, and you were like, "Yo, like I'm thinking about doing some more of this. Like, what was the? I'm trying to remember what the question was that you had, because you were in a very specific point, and I appreciated that you even reached out to say anything about it, because I feel like that question in and of itself can be like a vulnerable thing to do. But what I appreciated about it immediately is that you were the kind of artist, and it's important for more artists to start to adopt this behavior where you're not afraid to suck, or you're not afraid to try the new thing. You're not afraid to branch out into an area that you're not familiar with just for the sake of starting that journey. Like if that's something you want to do, you just have to start, because like you don't know anything until you start fucking things up or doing things wrong or whatever it is. So like you have to be able to set up the space where you can be vulnerable to figure out what is authentically creative about what you're trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when I originally contacted you, I think I don't know. I wouldn't say it wasn't the first time I'd thought of this, but in my head, I was like, I'm in this band that's been fortunate enough to find some success. And I was like, and I'm very thankful to have been a part of that. And I think I was reflecting and I was like, my role in this group or this success is being like the doer. Like I think I have a greater skill being the person that can like churn out lots of like good work in like a short amount of time. And like, I can really, put my head down and like get stuff done. And I was like, and I happened to work with a few other people in this group or at this team they're very like idea driven. Like they're very good at seeing big picture and like directing people and where they need to go. And I was like, I should probably practice my skills a little bit of being more of like the big picture idea thing. And I was like, I was a little confused as to where to start. And you happen to be somebody who I've noticed is always like throwing out ideas, seeing what sticks, what happens, whatever. Yeah. And I was like, I need to, widen my scope a little bit and just like talk to somebody who I think is always trying to churn out these ideas. And I was like, I think if I get an idea and I'm happy with it, like I'm confident that I can do it. I was like, but I need to know like what ideas are smart ideas, what ideas are really bad ideas. And, everybody's still trying to figure that out in a way.
I think that's a part of the process. I think there's not really a scenario where you're going to know that you're doing it right. So you just have to do it and then discern what's right after the fact. Because sometimes you're trying to, you don't know what you're going to touch upon when you start writing. And certain chord progressions or certain, melodies or whatever can start to shift the way you think about writing a song or what lyrics you think might go into it, or if you're just ad-libbing vocals and trying to, it's such it's like a very comprehensive process, this process of songwriting. And it's true in every industry. Like if you're a tattoo artist and you design flash, like what makes a good flash design, what makes a bad flash design. Mm-hmm. The reality is they can't all be bangers. They can't all be top 40 hits. They can't all be the one that breaks you, like only one of them can do that. And I honestly kind of wonder to what degree we could ever decipher for ourselves whether or not we're ever going to know for sure what is and is not the thing. It's like there's formulas in place and there's things that you can do that are better practices, and certainly you should implement the best practices constantly. And I think to me the thing that always has stood out and is thankfully like a motto that like Relic Hearts has adopted for a long time, like we've kept it true to like the bare beginning of anything we do for music, is just what serves the song best. So like if it's not something that if I love it, but everybody else hates it, it can't be my baby. Like I don't know why I like it, and maybe with enough time I would be able to sit and figure it out. But at that point, you start making the perfect the enemy of the good, and then nothing comes out. And you don't have that. So you have a dynamic in your band where are you the sole doer, or are you like just one of the heavy hitting doers?
It's probably a heavy hitting doer, yeah.
And that's not bad, because you need to have a system in place in your band. One of my really good mentors, Jeff Hoffman, his big adage is, it's not about what you can do, it's about what your team can do. So if the team, you don't have to know how to do everything well. You need to be able to do what you do really well and contribute that in a way where the whole team is rowing in the same direction to get to where they want to go. And if you have enough creative vision on that side, but no execution, that does you no good, because pie in the sky and having a million ideas, a week is like not helpful. We were talking about, we were on our way to breakfast and you were saying about how like, I'll wake up and your girlfriend will be like, all right, no, don't write it down. Just go back to bed. Like, you're good. You're good. You're like, no, but if I don't
forget it. Yeah.
If I don't snatch this out of the ether now, I'm never going to remember it. And it's not going to make its way into my notepad. And I'm not going to have any way to, capture this thing that is, calling to me from wherever.
Yeah. And I think the dynamic in our group is we almost kind of jokingly say it's like a conveyor belt of sorts, where everybody is like,
you guys have a well-oiled machine. Like you guys, agree 60 videos a year is what you're on slate for, you said?
Yeah, we're doing a lot. I mean, at least once a week, and then for like a couple months out of the year for like Christmas, Halloween, whatever, like 2 a week acoustic videos and whatever. And yeah,
you started those when we did the Post Malone. Like the next week, you guys were starting the acoustic run of videos on like what, Tuesdays, or was it Thursdays?
Yeah,
Tuesdays, and then Thursdays you guys drop it. Weird memory, dude. Nothing is consistent about it. I remember the dumbest shit, and then I can't remember like birthdays to save my life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I'm definitely the same way, but a lot of that like, I think that we know that this system we have works very, very well for us, and it's great, and we know what to do. We know our roles, and so we kind of have that figured out. And so now I think at least all of us are kind of looking towards this future, and we're like, okay, like, are there things that we should be, or skills that we should be learning that, you know, should I know what he's doing in his part of like the operation, which like obviously the answer is like yes, like you should try and be a little bit more you know, attenuated to like what everybody's bringing to the table. And so I think lately I've just been trying to ask myself like the things that I really suck at, like who do I need to reach out to really to get me from point A to point B way quicker, because I happen to be in a very fortunate position, you know, as are you, where like we now are very well connected with other people who do the same things as us, and I'm like, oh, you know, we collaborated with, you know, Kurt Schneider, and he's so good at whatever, you know, a storyboard. Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I don't have to wait around necessarily to figure this out. Like I could just go to him and ask. And so part of it for me is like going through, you know, the contact book of like, who are these people you've collaborated with? I really liked how that person was able, or even like this podcast. Like if I ever was like, I want to start a podcast, like I would just be like, well, I'm fortunate enough to know somebody who's had success with this. Like I can just reach out to them and get it taken care of.
Yeah. A lot of people are afraid to ask. It's that old age old, you know, adage that if you don't ask, the universe can't ever say yes, you know? So you have to be able to be willing to ask. The worst that happens is you get told no. And if you really want it, you just got to find another path to getting there. Mm-hmm. And you guys are definitely an exercise in doing that. Like you guys you're on First to 11's unsigned, right?
Yeah.
And then Concrete Castles, are you guys signed to Equal Vision? Mm-hmm. That's like, so sick. We had EVR Promo, which was like their distribution for merch company that they ran. And we had like a net 30 or net 90 account with them for doing merch when we were on Warped Tour. And it was great because we could order like $8,000 worth of merch, show up the first day of the tour, and then start making that money back by selling everything that we were trying to get rid of and generating funds. And that's how we survived. Like, Warped Tour pay was not amazing. Yeah. And if at all. And so like you have to survive out there. And I think you guys are doing it in a really interesting way where I feel like you never have just one song going at a time. Like when we were up there, you guys had several on deck. You were several weeks out. Our process is by the time we get this done, we're ready to film the video while the mix and master is being processed for Spotify or whatever. Yeah. And then in the interim between that period is whenever I'm going to spend the time editing the video, getting the social clips together and all the things that you use to promote the song whenever it drops. And you guys were like, oh, yeah, no. We're not going to be able to film that until like the end of August. And I think we were done with it at the end of July. And I was like, but it's a summer banger. And you're like, yeah, well, we've got our releases planned for like a few weeks out. And we've got this new acoustic thing we're getting ready to kick off. And I was like, damn.
That's a perfect example of like something that, I mean, you know, we've done that for a while. So I've kind of learned to understand that. But a while ago, not really understanding, like I was in my own group before I ever was in First 11. And I definitely did not understand how much thought goes into planning your releases and how far out you should be, where maybe you're too far out and now you're going to miss like new songs that are up and coming that you should grab, or maybe you're not far enough out and you're like going to run out of content. So that's like something that I've picked up and, you know, now it's like very well understood, like backlog your catalog and stuff. But
yeah, consistency is key, and it's hard to be consistent when you're just fighting to get to the individual release being done to go to the next step. You have to kind of be these several steps ahead.
Yeah. And the one thing that I don't know, so far I found that like you can't really be gurued on as much as like what's a good idea. I mean, you can in a way. Like there are people who have shown consistent patterns of like solid ideas that take off, and you're like, I gotta hang around that person more. But you can't predict it.
No, but that in and of itself is a really good point. Like I come alive if I'm around a camp of other people that are in this space that are creative, but also, you know, they're the idea people, but they're also the doers. Like Alex, when he hit me up to do that video with you guys, like, yeah, we're gonna do 2 videos. I'm gonna have you come down and film it. I'll get you a percentage on the split. You'll get paid that way. He's like, I can pay you cash, or we could just give you a split on the streams for the song. Which would you be willing to do? I didn't need the money, so I was like, yeah, I'll do the split. Like, let's see how that works. Like, that's like an interesting dynamic for being paid that I think is going to be explored more going forward. Like, I had the opportunity to develop this Rick Saratella. He's like an NFL draft scout, and I'm helping him right now with his manager, Jeff, develop a channel around what it is that he does. And so in doing that, I had to kind of figure out, okay, like, how can I help him execute the way he wants to execute? Like, what is the way, what are the process I'm going to have to put into place for him to be able to do something like this? Cause it's not the same as music. It's parallel industry, but totally different process of like development in certain ways. And I totally lost track where the fuck I was going with that.
It's okay. I can kind of get what you mean of like, you run into these people that you're fortunate with, that they'll teach you a lesson. And like, it's very, I mean, in its way, it's kind of priceless because like, I don't think most of those people really were taught it. They kind of figured it out.
Yeah.
Like there's actually the first time that we probably worked with Kurt and understanding his process of like how he records stuff, how he films stuff, like you just walk away like almost overwhelmed by like, wow, like we figured out so much just by watching this person do their thing.
Right.
But like the scary part is that like you can't always watch somebody come up with a good idea. Like there are lots of ideas that like you throw out and they don't do what you think. And then as I'm sure you've experienced like some things that you're just like, just another video, putting it out, it blows up. And it's like, are you crazy for reading into it? Like, why did that one blow up? Especially with YouTube where, you know, you're just at the chokehold of the randomness of this algorithm of like.
That just shifted. And,
yeah, I know.
And then like the shorts algorithm is not tied in with the YouTube proper algorithm. And like your video watch views for YouTube shorts don't contribute toward your overall channel watch views, even though it's a shorts channel on your main channel. Like there's just so many weird fucking workarounds that you have to kind of implement. It makes like, okay, so in case of an idea, I'm looking at it like, okay, you know what would be interesting? I wonder what my click-through rate would be if on the shorts version of this video, and actually the I Like You cover is like the next on deck that I'm about to post. If I put the link to the main video on the YouTube shorts video for the people that are watching it on desktop or computer, what that will do for the click rate over to the channel. Like here they're getting the 15, 30-second snippet. But if I comment and I pin the comment like, hey, if you like this song, make sure you keep rocking out, click this link here. What happens there when I've noticed that, you know, I can post a short that's 15 seconds long and it gets, you know, 655 views. Well, that's better than, you know, a small handful of the full song views, you know? So it's like, how do I convert? How do I get these people over here? So I got to implement these new ideas. And I'm like, all right, I'm trying to post a link here and I pin it. And then that kind of, I don't know if that triggers the algorithm to have more people that would comment or more likely to comment on that kind of material. Like what the algorithm is determining it needs to show people is like, you know, we have an idea, but also there's like a lot of what's in the recipe in the kitchen that we just don't know about.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of intersectionality now between like, you said yesterday, like things are going vertical now for TikToks. When you film everything, you have to film everything.
How do we feel about that? How do we feel about things going vertical?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I can comment like aesthetically if I really care that much, but I mean, it is like you just now everybody has to think about like everybody has to take that into account when you film something now. Like how many platforms are you running this across? Like you're obviously
every platform.
Obviously you're doing a podcast, so now you have to like put markers down of like little hot clips of like, oh, that was a really interesting thing that we have to like cut out and put on here. And I've noticed, I mean, unless people are like now starting to figure it out, that a lot of people with like very significant like short content followings on like, or short form content followings on like TikTok or something, like the conversion rate to YouTube is way less than you would think. Like there are people with millions, and every video they post, you can guarantee. Translate. Yeah. And it doesn't translate. And we were talking yesterday about how like
when you got in last night, I was like, shut up, we gotta stop talking.
I know.
Save all this for tomorrow.
We're talking about how like there was Vine, which was like extremely short form, 6 seconds. Sky high, everyone loved it, whatever. Vine goes out, and now our YouTube has like the second wave of explosion where people are really liking like the longer form, like 20-minute mini doc stuff. Then we fall into the TikTok era, which is like very short form again, and now
but then they expanded it to like you can if you got a certain amount of viewers or followers, you can go to like up to 3 minutes worth of posting, which is wild, and you can still see some videos with 3 minutes worth. But now TikTok page, shit, like I don't think I've received anything from TikTok. I've been on the creator fund, and like all of that, and maybe it's just like the number. I'm like 20,000 followers. Maybe that's a lot. Maybe it's nothing. It's like a drop in the bucket, it seems, compared to the people that have millions, but somehow your organic reach can still. I did a video of my mom. Trump got indicted the other day, and so my mom calls me. She was like, you want to take that flag down off of your wall and go run downtown and parade through the streets and celebrate? And I was like, I'm working right now. I'm like, I've got shit to like turn off the television, go to sleep. And so I made a quick TikTok video about it. And I was like, check on your old folks, y'all. They're probably getting a little riled up right now. Because it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. If you're a pro-Trumper or an anti-Trumper, if Trump gets indicted, everybody's up in arms and has something to say about it. And it got like 10,000 views or 10,000 likes like the next day or something like that. I was like, that's fucking stupid. On my otherwise music and media content creation channel, just something goes out. So I couldn't have determined that it would do that. But it's also a socially relevant topic. So maybe it's being searched more. So like if you can kind of follow that trend, it's a little bit better. And so what I'm also finding is finding a way to kind of intermix current events into the podcast that we're talking about. Makes it so that I have more search engine optimization style content that I can then clip out as the short form content and then put out there. And now it's something that's just being indexed and searched for more often.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the analog of that of like being in a YouTube cover band is like, we're not just going to do songs that, we cover them and they sound like, Metallica. Like we're not just going to be like the metal cover band. We're going to be the band that like covers Katy Perry, and we're also going to cover Metallica, and we're also going to cover Bruno Mars, and we're also going to cover like this large spectrum of, like you said, like you're kind of widening your net a little bit.
Yeah.
Just being like, let's not be the people that like pigeonhole ourselves to one style of content.
Right. I only do top 40 covers only. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, there's two avenues you can go down. One is like, I don't know if this is really true, but maybe kind of like a short-term formula for success, which is like, if I apply to like this niche audience or whatever, I can like, there's not as much of them, but I'll swipe them up kind of quickly.
I'll be the big fish in the little pond.
Yeah, that's a much more elegant way to put it. Or you can kind of be like, well, maybe we'll do more of like a long game thing. And, you're doing a podcast, which is great because it's long form content. So you can like, as you said, put in lots of different topics that are like, okay, well, we could cut out all these different things. And maybe the one that we weren't expecting, where instead of talking about music, we talk about, like you said, like maybe it's something political, and it's like, well, that got picked up in this world, and it's like, oh, okay, great. Well, now we kind of have some new fans over here. Right. So it's kind of two trains of thought.
Well, case in point, we were at breakfast and you were talking about the NIL and about how you used to feel about college athletes being paid, and then how you feel about it after the fact. And it's not like the university's paying them, right? Like the NIL basically gives them the ability to monetize their name, image, and likeness, but without an agency to kind of put that athlete in front of that money or that opportunity, there's no way for them to there's a barrier for entry. And so one of the things that Aeneas Hawkins said, he was a guest I had, he's like my third episode. He was saying, a lot of these guys have been told they're the shit their whole lives. So that when they get this deal with McDonald's, they think they're getting this like, you see like the sweetie, like McDonald's deal. And so we talked about that. I was like, I'd never seen anything like that before. And I was like, wow, it's crazy. That's an intersection between like music and McDonald's that I just never saw there being like a pairing like that, but a very forward and thinking and progressive sort of marketing tactic from McDonald's standpoint, and certainly from Sweetie's camp. And so he was like, yeah, so these athletes expect to be like like, it's not like the Wheaties box. Like they're not Michael Jordan. They're not, it's not that. And they're like, why does everybody else, a couple other people have the same deal? And it's like, yeah, because McDonald's is trying to get in with athletes. They've got money to spend. You're going to take your little cut of it where you can, because they don't know if you're going to be the next big thing or not. Yeah. But if you're, an athlete and you can, monetize your name, image, and likeness, then you can turn around and like they stopped making the NCAA college football like 08 and 09 games or whatever. Like I want to say it was around 08 or 09. And that used to be, if you were a Penn State fan or you're an Ohio State fan or you're like, well, it doesn't matter what college football sport you follow. If you're a fan of that particular team, you would pick up this game because then you could play this. It's like basically Madden, but for the NCAA. Yeah. So you're like, why wouldn't I want to do that? And then they stopped doing it because there was this big battle between name, image, and likeness and the NCAA. And so then last year, whenever that got revamped or whatever, and it's just a case in point, not to get into that, but like we were talking about that, and I thought it was funny that you were like, I have friends that are, I know people that are athletes at Penn State or football, Penn State football players, and are like really good. And it's crazy how we know each other because it's like, like it's such a small world. Yeah. And like, I love that. That's such an interesting human experience that I adore, because you just never know. And you can always be surprised by, like, you say it was your uncle telling you about
About
Davey Havoc.
Oh,
being his
it's
nephew.
it's like some guy that he works with my dad. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
like, what are the odds you would ever have connected that unless he said something about it? Because oh yeah, you got you're in a band thing too, right? Like, I love it.
Yeah.
And you're in this age at 22. You're still in the age where if you're in a band, it's like he could fucking make it. Like, oh my god, he might go the distance.
He might go the distance.
But if you at a certain point, you tell people like, oh, I'm in a band, and they're like, cool. Like, what are you doing with your life? But then you get to show them what you do. Like, you know, if you're 28 and you tell people, oh yeah, I'm in this band on YouTube, like, you know, we're pretty successful or whatever. They're like, oh, cool. You know, when you meet people that don't know who you are, like they've never seen what you do, or that's maybe not the realm of interest they have whatsoever. And then you show them what you do and they're like, holy shit, this is like really good. Like, why aren't you guys on the radio? Like, why aren't you bigger? And it's like, obviously a disconnect between how everything functionally, how the system in place really kind of works. But
I've never really been able to nail down like how, and it's not even important, but I've never really been able to nail down how people like thought of me for the last, like, I don't know, I'm 22 now. I'd say probably from like the time I was like 16 or so till now, because I went to a high school that was like all about academics, and that was like, it's kind of my life for a little bit. So I had most of the people there that were my age and like knew a lot about YouTube and were like, oh, you're doing great on YouTube. Like, that's so awesome. But then like maybe the staff there were kind of like they tried to like not let me walk at graduation because I was like, I'm not going to college, by the way. And they were like, well, then I'm so like, you can't, like, you have to tell us something. So I had like the people, like the students that I was like good friends with, and they were like, that's so awesome you're doing this. I had the staff that were like, what the hell is YouTube? And then I had my parents.
What is your life?
But what is your life going to be? I had my parents that were very supportive, but albeit a little probably confused still about like, we're not really sure how you're going to do this, but like, we support you. And then the people in our city that are like, so it's just lost on them. Like, they don't understand. Like, it's
because it's an entire industry. And if you don't know how that industry functions or how to tap into it, or whether or not you feel like you maybe even haven't, they can't even ask themselves the question of whether or not they feel like they have a place in that industry, because it's just like you said last night, it's just so unattainable to some people. So if it seems unattainable, they just won't chase it. Yeah.
And I think also it's just like, it's obvious, but it's the way the media is consumed now. Like, if my dad didn't hear me on the radio, for example, then to him, he's like, well, I don't really understand. Like, how are you guys, like, to say, I always love this example, but like, whenever I'm not sure if you're familiar, but a lot of times if an artist is putting out a record, sometimes they'll say like, well, let's generate some more traction. Let's basically give the song to a YouTube cover artist like a couple days before it's out. They can make a cover, and then they'll release the cover like the same day that the song comes out, so it like boosts this like search engine, whatever. And whenever I'm like, mom and dad or my friends or whoever, like, this person, like Collab or something, asked us to like do a cover of his song that's about to come out. They're like, no way, it's crazy. But like, the video like doesn't do that great because the song is just out. We have to put it out on like a different release than we normally do. But to me, that's not like a indicator of success necessarily, as being like, we had like 5 videos in a row all hit like 1 million views. To some people who don't really know, and that's not how they consume their media, they're like, is that good? Is that bad?
Right.
Like, you're not on the radio. You're not selling out like and
if you ask any, diaspora of YouTube artists, like how much they make off of 1 million views, you're like, nobody knows. They're like,
yeah,
I don't know. I see the quarterly statements, I guess, or like I get the revenue direct deposited, and I assume I hope nobody's fucking me, because I'm never going to dive into the analytics to look at it.
Yeah. Or like, I think about how in a span of like a couple months, I played a show with my original band, Concrete Castles, at I think it was like the Wiltern or something in LA, and it was like a big show. It was like, a couple hundred people show up, and my parents were there like, that's awesome. Like, you guys are like, you're climbing up the touring ladder or whatever. And it did feel good. It was a good crowd. And then I told them, I was like, yeah, we made like, I mean, I obviously won't say it, but I'm just like, yeah, we made like a very small amount of like money on that, just so you know. And they're like, huh, that's weird. And then a couple months later, I go on a tour, and we're like a different band, like the cover band, we're headlining, we're doing this. And they're like, huh, there's not as many people around here. And I'm like, yeah, it's weird. We made like quadruple the amount of money, like,
we did last time.
And I think it battles in people's heads of like, how is this person crazy successful, or are they like starving, or like what's going on?
Yeah, are they a starving artist, or are they a huge success? I have no clue what the fuck is happening here.
When we first met Kurt Schneider, I think this is like just hilarious. He like, we get there and we're like, wow, I wonder whose car that is. And it's like this 2004 like Honda Accord that's like with
Piece
like a
of
donut.
shit jalopy. Like,
I was just like, whose car is like? I'm just genuinely wondering. He's like, yeah, it's my car. And then he's like, hey, the bathroom is down the hall on the left. And I was like, oh, I wonder which door it is. And I open it and it's like his, 10 million play button that's like dust on it. And I was like, I don't understand this person. Like he's living like
on the floor right now.
He's living like in an apartment with like this car, but I'm like, this guy is one of the biggest YouTubers. And even I have asked myself at so many points in my life of like, I just can't understand, like, is this person who's making their money on the internet, as like you and I both are beneficiaries of, like, are they killing it, or are they starving? Like, where are they?
It's all a part of the grand illusion. Like, nobody knows. Yeah, it's any man's guess. You know what's really funny is you reminded me one of the first tours, second tour I think I did with Alex. It was a summer with Alex Goot, and I think it was Luke Connor. Damn, why am I blanking on his name? Oh man, I loved him so much. He's like a country artist, and I am blanking on it, and I'm totally going to kick myself for it. But anyway, so there's a small tour package, and Against the Current had a few dates at the beginning and a few dates at the end. And so Chrissy was on the tour. I think she was maybe like 16 or 17 at the time, maybe. And so she's 17 probably, because she was getting ready to go into her senior year and graduating, and her parents wanted her to go to college. And but she's in Against the Current. Against the Current's like crushing it at that point. Like they're on the beginning of their like uptick. And she was like, I don't know how to tell him, like, I don't want to do this. Like I want to do the band, and I don't know how to she was kind of like battling and reconciling with that. And we had a couple really good talks where I was like, you can do college and just do this in whatever capacity you can for a year to try it out. See, like, put in the honest effort so your parents can see that, you made the effort to do it. But where you're building, I like pound for pound, I think they have the potential to be like the next Paramore, So like, keep going. Like, don't stop just because you got to go to college. You can do both. Like, trust me, people all over the world make music work for themselves in any capacity. I know tons of people that are, job A during the day and then not necessarily partying at night, but gigging and playing at night. And that's what they love to do. And there have been moments like throughout the years where I'll just randomly message her on Instagram like, yo, I just want you to know, like, I'm so like proud of you for like sticking to your guns and really like staying with this, because so genuinely talented, clearly has a great voice. And then their team, like, and not to discredit like Will or Dan, like those two super talented dudes and in their own rights, and they're together with that's a good dynamic of dreamers and doers. Yeah. And so like to have seen that they kept going, and then they do the Legends Never Die soundtrack, and all that stuff, like that's a really wild path that wouldn't have happened if she'd just gone to college and stopped just because that was what her parents wanted to do. But I remember her being in that phase where it was really kind of beating her up, because she was like, I don't want to disappoint them. Like, I love my parents. I want to go to college if that's what they want me to do, but I don't think that's my path. And I was like, well, you're young, like that. You don't have to know your path yet. But if you've got an inclination to go this way, like maybe keep poking that bear and seeing what happens. Yeah. I mean, and especially, well, I mean, that's kind of an interesting one too, because back then, like, YouTube was, I don't know, especially for cover bands, like it was a different landscape in the sense of like you could monetize much more heavily, but it was less saturated. There weren't anywhere near as many artists that were doing the same thing. Like everybody's got their own formula or process for getting there, but it's a lot of, from the viewer perspective, the people that don't know whether you're being paid a lot or being paid little, they're looking at it like, oh, all these artists are doing these covers. And like, have you guys noticed viewership's gone down like in the last, like, so well, you guys probably fucking haven't, but like for a lot of artists, like the normal amount of views that they would get just by dropping stuff has like dropped pretty substantially. Well, I guess what I was going to say is like, if back then, like the two sides of that coin are like, okay, well, the market's less saturated. My kid is talented at this. Like if you're Chrissy's parents, or if you're whoever's parents, like maybe if you're Alex Goot's parents or something like that, like, okay, well, my kid is really interested in this. Like they're obviously getting some momentum, but like, I don't know anybody who's making a living off doing this. Like as a parent, I feel like you're kind of just like, I don't know. Can people do this? And now it's more like, okay, well, I know that people can make money doing this, but it's so saturated that like, is my kid kind of like, are they really hedging their bets in the right direction of like, look how many people are doing this. Like, are you sure you don't want to do this? So I don't envy, having in a way like a kid that's like very successful at something that maybe is like uncharted waters in a way of like,
Ooh, I don't know. Like, can you do that professionally? Like, I don't even know if like my family sometimes is like, can he do this for a long time or can he not? Like, I wonder if they still think that.
Are you familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Sounds familiar.
It's this effect essentially where somebody thinks that they are just fucking killing it, but they don't realize how like they're not killing it at all, but they believe that they are. And it's sort of like there's a disconnect, like basically like a cognitive dissonance that they can't quite connect that, yeah, they are doing this thing. Like say you are the artist. That's the thing that the parent worries about, I think, subliminally. You may not know that you're calling it, that it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, but they're like, I mean, my kid's putting out these videos and they're putting out stuff on Spotify and these streams look pretty good. And, I don't know what any of that really tangibly means, but it's, I see double-digit thousand and I assume, oh, that's a lot of people. So that's gotta be good. And there, you want to be leery of whether or not, if you're somebody who wants to be a creative, it's like, yeah, you can be thinking you're killing it and be heading in the complete wrong direction for what is like where the industry is trending or starting to go or whatever. And there's also something to be said for like the artistry side of it, right? Like, I think if as a parent, your kid is a creative because you watch like Jada Facer, she was saying like she wrote like her first musical when she was 8 with her friend and like recorded it on iMovie on her MacBook or whatever, which is hilarious because like in 20 years, that's going to be a funny thing she'll be able to put out. That's this like ultimate throwback to something she's just always been creating. So that's a person that you're like, you know what, even if it doesn't pay very well, it's very clearly something that speaks to them. And there's this thing where artists in general, and entrepreneurs and a lot of people do this, where you don't have managed expectations of what success looks like to you. And so if you're chasing like the clout or the fame or some number, and that's what success looks like to you, that kind of predetermines the amount of work you're going to have to put in to get there. Because you can be like, I'm a firm believer that hard work trumps genuine talent any day of the week, because you can get lazy resting on the laurels of being naturally talented at something. But if you have to work hard for something, you have an appreciation. It's like being rich or poor. If you're poor and you work your way to rich versus you've been rich your whole life, you have an appreciation for what it was like to be on the other side of the fence. So there's a different respect for the dollar that you have at your disposal when you're in the rich category, whatever that looks like. And even that is varied from person to person, because like what success looks like to me might be something that's just out of reach constantly. Certainly what it fucking feels like. And it's like that thing where you're constantly chasing. You're like, am I ever going to get to a level where I feel like I'm satisfied with where I'm at? And I honestly don't know if that day's ever coming. And I don't honestly know if I'm upset about it either, because I enjoy the hunt. If you have respect for the process and you enjoy doing it, then you're not so tied up in whether or not it's making a lot of money.
Yeah, well, I think
if you weren't doing music with First to 11 and Concrete Castles, would you be doing music still?
I would.
Right. Yeah. So like it's not going anywhere.
It'd be in a different capacity, certainly. If I wasn't fortunate enough to be able to just dedicate myself fully to it. I mean, I've been in positions where I haven't been able to fully dedicate myself to it. And like, you can't get as much done if you're like literally just, you live in reality. You go to school, you have another job, you do whatever. So, but I think that what you said is pretty insightful. It's not even just about the way that different groups of people, different generations might consume media, but also like how do they define your success? And I try to not be like, I've never been somebody that's very like, mom and dad don't understand. Like I always I try to pay very close attention to when my parents or people who have been successful in any way are like kind of questioning like, hey, is what you're doing like working? And maybe it's not this band, but maybe it's like something, maybe it is going to school or something. They're like, hey, is this working? And I'm like, okay, well, to me, my success is, we had these videos hit lots of views, but to them, they might think of success as like, well, how much like money are you bringing, or is it connecting you to these people? And I never try and write that off. I'm always very much like, okay, well, they come from a different perspective. Like they think that success is this way. And I'm like, I didn't really think of it that way, but I probably should be keeping that in mind when I'm trying to develop some sort of metric for like, am I doing good in life? Or as you said, or am I just floundering and I have no idea if I'm actually doing well? Yeah.
I just enjoy this so fucking blindly that I'm like walking around like, yeah, guys, I'm doing this. I started a podcast. I'm in a band. It's like, it really kind of comes down to how genuinely you feel connected to the thing and whether or not you're hitting your metrics for success. And if you determine those for you, you have to ask there's some tough questions to ask, like, hey, this thing I love isn't really generating money, so maybe I should be doing something else. Like, that's a fucking heartbreaking thought. Like, oh, you're just not going to create music even though you thoroughly love it because you don't have a team in place or any ability to kind of manifest that into something that would generate more revenue for you, that would basically pad your ability to live comfortably while you create your art. And I mean, the starving artist term is a term for a reason. Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of get lumped into this thing where you're like, oh yeah, like I'm just an artist at this point in my journey.
Well, also, like, I think that I don't know if it's like discouraging, so to speak, but like, I think that there's a pretty heavy train of thought of like, discipline and consistency of uploading stuff is, or just dedicating yourself to your craft is like a very rewarding thing. And then, new forms of content can come out where it's just like, oh, this thing randomly went viral for no reason that you didn't really put effort to, or this creator is just kind of like almost randomly, it seems like, figured out something, and it's like, oh man, like time to like try and reinvent the wheel and like figure out some new way to get out content, or time to go back to the drawing board. Like you said, like it's kind of discouraging sometimes, even if it's not something as grand as like, do I stop doing music? But I really thought like maybe it's a podcast. Like, did you ever have thoughts when you were doing this where you were like, man, the first, 4 or 5 of these didn't hit my metric of success like I was hoping to? Like, should I stop or should I persevere? Because, it could turn up.
So for me, when I started the first episode, it was totally not on a whim. Like I had the sign. I got the sign. I was like, I had the idea for Collab or Die about this time last year. A few months later, I got the sign. I was like, maybe I think this is actually going to happen. I think I'm going to see this thing through. And then I heard the statistic that, of the millions of podcasts that get started, like 80% of them don't make it past the 3rd episode. Mm-hmm. And then of that remaining 20% that continue on, like another 90% of them drop off after, I think, like 20 episodes. So to make it to the top, the upper echelon of podcasts that are successfully releasing, you only have to release like 21 episodes. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, so if I can manage my expectations, I didn't want to have any expectations. Like, I don't want to dump money into advertising. Like, I want this to it's going to exist whether I push it or not. Someday somebody might unearth it in the future digitally, or it could become huge. Like it could be anything. If I don't have any expectations of it, I can't be disappointed by what I'm doing. And I think it's important that when you're in the creative space, you don't set yourself up for failure by having expectations that you can't control. So mm-hmm. like for me, the positive thing that comes out of this is I'm getting to have the discourse with people that I think are genuinely thoughtful. I just thought about it like, yeah, Collab or Die was like the idea, but the concept itself, when I was like, what do I want to do? It was, I want a conversational podcast. I want to talk to people that are artists and entrepreneurs and just people that move and shake in whatever industry it is that they're in. And there are going to be so many parallels in those conversations that you'll notice between the person who's the musician and the person who's the tattoo artist, and the person who's the painter, or the person who's the entrepreneurial leadership teacher at Penn State. Like, everybody has an intrinsic value when you have these little audio snippets that come out that they talk about, like, that you can succinctly talk about one point. And that's great if you're looking for getting your micro content out of your macro or whatever. But those processes, if you separate them from the mechanical side of like how they function in your business or your creative aspirations, really are just what happened naturally through the course of discourse and conversation. So when we talk about anything, having a nuanced perspective like you're going to have from your perspective is going to be different than mine. And there's going to be a lot of similarities here and there. So I just didn't go into it with any expectations, because I was like, I just want to get to 21 episodes. That's like a video game. Mm-hmm. I can get to level 21. Maybe I get there and I'm fucking crawling by the time I get there. But in doing that, it's an exercise in perseverance and consistency. Like, I have to have 21 episodes to get to 21 episodes. So I'm going to have to stick with it whether I'm loving it or not, because that's the discipline side of things. And so by being able to have people on from all walks of the creative space, I think it's good for any of my friends. I've had a lot of my friends locally be like, yo, dude, like, I love the podcast. This is fucking sick. I'm really like, keep going. This is great. Like, this has been really helpful. And just the handful of times I've gotten those comments since I started dropping the episodes less than a month ago, it's been transformative in the sense that, like, it eliminated the should I be doing this? Is anybody going to give a fuck mentality? Even more because I didn't go into it with the expectation that somebody would have to give a fuck about it in order for it to matter to me. Yeah, like, I would have this conversation with you. We started doing it like last night in my bedroom. Like, we were just talking.
Whether you're turning it into content or not,
that process is going to happen naturally. And what I noticed was, I know so many different people like I know so many different people from so many different industries that the conversations that I've had with them that have been, I would like to get some guests that I have stories about certain people that I would love to have be a guest on my podcast. You know who Andy Black is?
Mm-hmm.
From Black Veil Brides.
Yeah.
I met him when he was dating, I don't know if they're still together. I hope they are. They were super cute together. Juliet Sims on Warped Tour, because she played usually right before, right after us on the Ernie Ball stage. And so he would go and watch her, and then there would be this Black Veil Brides fan group that would like follow Andy around. He had to have like security around him everywhere he walked because girls would just mob him, and they were like a hot figure band in that scene. And I remember having a really good talk with him at the Arizona Warped Tour 2011 barbecue date, and we sat down and we talked, and he kind of explained to me, I asked him like straight up, I was like, does it bother you that there are a lot of bands on this tour that are like, they don't belong here, they're a fad band, they're this, like, these were, in hindsight, I guess with zero filter, it was maybe a dickheaded thing to ask him, but I was genuinely
Hey, do you
curious.
care that people like hate you?
Yeah, but like I didn't.
No, I'm joking.
I told, yeah, of course, but you can see like that's how I didn't feel like that in the moment because I was asking from a genuine place. Later on, you find with the benefit of hindsight, you're like, oh, that could have gone terribly if he was like not a person who was receptive to hearing that kind of a conversation and or you know a question, and instead he was extremely insightful. And he made it very clear to me that like he always had a plan, like a very vivid plan in place. We almost signed to like a sister label or like an umbrella label for a record label that was called Standby Records way back in the day. And that's who Black Veil Brides was initially signed to. And so I was like, what was your experience like there? Did you kind of have a game plan going into it? Because now you're on this bigger label. I think they were on a major at that point, maybe. So I was like, you know, I just had questions. And he was just so sweet to like answer them all. And I was like, wow, that experience, that conversation that I had with him was like a pretty transformative one because the next day we're driving on Interstate 8 from Phoenix, Arizona to what will be an off day in San Diego before the San Diego date of Warped Tour. And we're on the Incopah Mountains on Interstate 8 going uphill, and I'm asleep. We drank heavily at the end. After that conversation, I blacked out for sure. We had like a lot of drinking happen that night. And we wake up in the morning, it's like 11 o'clock, and the van's getting hot because we're doing this tour in a van and a trailer, which is not as comfortable as in a bus. And even being in a bus is not comfortable Warped touring. So we get on the highway, and I pass out. And we let our baby of the band, Scott, who's like 21, 22 at the time, drive the van. And he's like redlining the van going up this mountain where there are radiator springs every like 100 yards so that cars can pull over and put water in their radiators to not overheat. And I wake up out of a dream where I hear the pinging of the engine in my dream, and I'm like, that's the engine redlining, and I shoot up and I'm like, Scott, pull over. And he pulls over, and I'm like, shut the van off, like we gotta let it cool down. And in hindsight, I made the absolute mistake. We were steaming, which wouldn't have been as terrible, but I fucking opened the van hood and let oxygen in, and the van catches fire. We're sitting at the side of the road. There was a contest for Diesel, the clothing company, and we won. Like they give us a bunch of free underwear and a bunch of shit. And it was hot, and our AC in the van's not great enough to keep up with, you know, the summer heat in Arizona. It's like 117 degrees the day before, and so Chaz, our guitar player, gets out of the van because I'm like, everybody get out of the van, it's on fire. He jumps out and he's wearing a pair of like hot pink, Cadillac pink, fucking like boxer briefs, shirtless, pantsless, barefoot. And he gets out, and the pavement is so hot. He's like, oh, fuck, I can't. He got out with a blanket around him because he knew he was in his underwear. Pavement was so hot, he literally had to throw it down and then stand on it.
Yeah.
And, like, those kind of experiences that I had where, if you can imagine, like, my dream, my ambition is getting through this tour and selling a lot of records and connecting with people and performing and all of this. And I'm thinking, like, in this moment, it's going to be taken away from me because of, you know, just how my journey is playing out. Nobody's at fault. Like, Scott's technically at fault, but really, like, us driving an older van that was probably not rated to take a lot of the country touring that way with a 5x8 trailer in the back. We made a few mistakes. Those are our potholes that we had to go through. And, like, I guess because I've had such a fucking uphill and down, like, successes and valleys, I look at it like I've learned to respect and appreciate every part of that process because it's all baked into it.
Well, what you said about Andy Black, I thought was really nice because, I mean, I don't know, like you said, like these conversations and like the wisdom kind of gets passed on organically anyway with people talking to each other. And as we said a while ago, the world is so small that famous people or successful people rather are like going to interact with each other every day anyway.
Right.
So like to have a way, like as much as I think maybe there are some problems that social media can impose sociologically. There's definitely like a very obvious benefit that you have access to like hear those conversations now. Like I don't know, I could be totally wrong in saying this, but I think that this kid that I went to high school with who like always really liked streaming and video games or whatever, I think that he used to be like kind of like, what's this guy up to with YouTube? Because I was at least at the point where like it was successful enough that I was like I had some legs to stand on with it. And now he was like I like what you're doing. Like he kind of started doing it, and now he like makes a full-time living from like streaming and doing stuff like that. And that was just because we knew each other in high school. But if we hadn't, like, at least now there's hope that people who want to get into that can just like watch their favorite podcast or favorite TikToker, like give these little nuggets of advice or anecdotes and whatever. And they're like, yeah, you know what? Like I can do that. It's like we talked about last night. Like those things are more attainable than people think. But, you know, before, like if I did grow up with the internet, but probably not as much at the disposal as now for kids. But like
it's crazy that you think that, because I remember like dial up and having to get an AOL CD in the mail to be able to like create like an account. And then, you know, AOL chat's a thing before AIM is a thing. Like you could only chat on AOL if you had AOL. Dial up is fucking dog shit. It's terrible. I remember when broadband, like cable internet, started to become a thing. Like the speeds, memory sticks that were in computers were like 128 megs, and not like we weren't at the gig category of like memory sticks yet. And so yeah, like to hear that you feel like that too. Yeah, man, these kids are growing up.
Just to where it is now, it's yeah. Sorry, go ahead. But now it's just to a whole nother level. Like I didn't, and I'm, by the way, not saying this in like a poor me. Actually, I'm actually kind of grateful for this in a way, but I did not have a smart device in my hand till I think I was like, I think I was like in high school when I got like my first, like, I walked around with like an iPad for like taking notes, or like eventually I got like an iPhone or something, but like it wasn't as immediate to be like I wasn't going to run into like Pete Wentz from Fall Out Boy on the street and be like, hey, how should my band get off the ground?
Right.
But at the time, like, it was just then kind of starting to be like at the tip of my fingers, like, well, I can just look up like Pete Wentz interview and he'll go into detail and talk about like, well, you know, when Fall Out Boy starting. But now it seems like it's just so much more accessible. Like anybody could watch like an Andy Black interview, or the interviewer's like, hey, how did you tell me about like the things that you wish you had figured out earlier in your career. And that kid's like taking notes, like, all right, great, I'm gonna think about that now.
Are you familiar with Nardwuar?
Of course.
Right.
Oh my gosh, my dream is to have
a Nardwuar interview.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think about what I love about his interviews, the same thing I love about Sean Evans from Hot Ones interview, is that he asks questions about people that they're like, how did you know that? And like, on Hot Ones, you hear them often say, oh, like, that's really interesting that you know that. Like, this is a really good interview. Like, they have really positive things to say about it, because we've gotten away from, we can find all the generic answers to certain interview questions that we want from some people sometimes. I think that's the new barrier for entry, where I can kind of like come in and clean up right now, is that a lot of people don't even get to get those base, like how many publicist interviews are you doing when you guys are on tour? Do you guys have like interviews every day scheduled? Not
every day, no. Actually, it's I don't know what you think, but it's definitely not a lot.
I think there's no rhyme or reason to be able to tell which it would be. So like,
sure, yeah. So no, like, not very much.
And I remember like tour managing Alex maybe close to a decade ago now, and people like having the publicist emails coming in every day, like, can I talk to so-and-so, or how long can we get him for this interview? And you hear the same questions, and then you understand why a lot of artists don't want to do a lot of interviews, because they're getting the same questions over and over and over again. Like, what sets this record apart from the last one? It's an evolution in me as an artist.
How'd you get a band name? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And there's just certain things that I wanted to, I mean, I like diving into that too, because I like hearing it for me, but I'm also kind of interested in all those little sort of nitty gritty moments about how you get into, like, I don't know if you're like a very tone oriented person. Like, are you very like, oh yeah, I'm really into my drum tones. Like when I write stuff, I want to make sure the tones for each of the songs we write are right what I want them to be. Everybody's got their own niche of OCD that they kind of fall into. And I'm just interested in hearing it, because some people in the band are the guitar techie, like the very techie oriented software, digitally oriented type people. And then some people are like, no, man, I just show up and write. And luckily I get to be just the creative, and my team are the people that are the doers. And so, there's just no perfect formula for how a band or a group of artists come together to kind of coalesce and collaborate together.
Yeah, well, that also goes into, kind of like you said, that duality of like, are you kind of presenting stuff to your audience that's going to be a little bit more nuanced, but you might have a bit of like a culty fault. Like I think of people who do like rig rundowns, like they don't necessarily all have like tens of millions of views on their videos, but the people who watch those videos are like the gearheads who are very into that specific stuff. And it's almost kind of, I guess a better way to put it is it's almost like they don't care as much about if they're interviewing AC/DC versus Metallica versus whoever. They're more just like, I just want to see the gear. And then there's the other side of it where it's just like, I don't care what the hell you're talking about. I just want to see Kirk Hammett open his mouth. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, exactly. Like when the publicist stuff are doing interviews, it's like, are you, like you said, when you interview people, when you talk to people, are you interested in like, I want to know about you specifically, like what are you interested in? Or are you like, I want to know this specific thing and how it applies to you? Like, do you want to go to, like you talk about drum tones, like if somebody would ask me like, I want to know how you, Sam, specifically get your drum tones versus somebody being like, no, I'm just a drummer who wants to know how different people get their drum tones. And I happen to be talking to you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in the large world of how we consume media, like it can be any of those and all of them, like that's what's so cool about it. And so I feel like it's important to kind of cover your bases because you do probably have, like I would say First 11 probably has like a cult following. I had a friend of mine who is like, he's a grown ass man. And he was like, hey, I just saw you guys put out a cover with First 11. I was like, yeah, I was like, fuck, that was like back in September or whenever, October, maybe. I don't remember when it was. And he was like, I'm a huge fan of them, man. Like, that's so cool that you know them. How did you meet them? And I was like, that's somebody local to me who has got like clearly very into your band, who was like, that's really cool. I thought that was really awesome. I'm like, that's fucking wild. Because I hadn't heard of you guys till I worked with you. And then when I looked up your guys' stuff, I'm like, oh, I'm the one who's the idiot here who's not in the know. Like, oh, okay. All right. I see what's happening here. But yeah, but first impressions, I would be like, yeah, you guys probably have a cult following. You guys are like all young. You're like hot teen kids fucking out there like doing your YouTube page. I literally can scroll and you can keep fucking scroll. Like you can scroll the wheel, let it stop and do that a few times before you get to the bottom of your page.
I don't know. So I would say that like I can only speak for myself, but my interactions are like, there's probably, I don't know, maybe there's like 10 to 15 people that I like consistently message with that are fans that are like, I'd say my favorite part about like the people that I message are like, they are so like, I get messages from people that send me like, did you see this band that like is so underground and whatever, but I know that you love them, put out this thing. And I'm like, I'm like, I don't even think, like, I forgot that I love those people. Like, wow, they're so like, they pay such close attention to what you're into and what you're doing. And so I really appreciate that. But maybe First to 11 does, but I can tell you that I particularly don't necessarily, which I think I'm like a little grateful for at this moment.
Have
like
your own cult following. Yeah.
Like the people that I message are very like respect. Like there's a guy who runs, I don't even know why I say it as there's a guy who I know him very well. His name is Sheldon.
Dickhead, dude. Yeah,
I know.
His name.
But you know what? I think I started that sentence being like, well, I have to introduce this to people who are not following the Sam Gilman fan page on Instagram. Because I was like, but I shouldn't even have said it that way. A very, very just like sweet and amazing human named
supportive,
Sheldon.
like
yeah, and I've met him a bunch of times at shows. Like we messaged, like I think I messaged him yesterday, just like, how are things going? Like, what's up? And I have like this really amazing, I'm in this beautiful like sweet spot. I feel like with like I'm in something that is like much, much more successful than I am individually. So there's like a couple residual people that are like
crossover.
Yeah, exactly. But I've never had to like, this person, I better get like a fake, social media because otherwise they're gonna like. I've never felt like I was in any danger or anything. I'm just in such a beautiful spot right now where the people that I message are so kind and friendly and are like normal. So
yeah, you're in a good spot. Like nurture that, and I think that's what your fan base becomes. Because ideally, not ideally. Like, unfortunately, the reason that it probably goes sour is people sometimes aren't maybe clear or communicate with their fans the way they are.
Like their boundaries and
right, for sure. And I mean, that's like the number one thing in any relationship, and that's what that is. It's a relationship between you and your fans. And if they know who you are and a little bit about like your ethos and how you like to operate, then if they're respectful people, then they're going to respect that, and they're going to come at you with that same level of respect.
Yeah.
Like you talked about, we were talking at breakfast about you being on tour with the Sounds of Animals Fighting.
Mm-hmm.
So big Anthony Green fan now, and we sit there, we start rattling off like how many successful like touring acts he's a part of, and like you are also on the fan side of things for some artists, right? Because like Anthony Green falls in this category where pre-TikTok, pre a lot of the social media, the only way you found out about a lot of the bands he was in was because of the music videos that dropped and maybe premiered on Alt Press or, you know, whatever it was. But if you're an Anthony Green stan, you're like, I'll go see him play acoustic. Like, he fucking kills. Like, I can't wait to see him. So you have this different appreciation as well for the artists that you're a fan of. And so I think that that's probably genuinely going to come through the people that are fans of you specifically, and also fans of First or 11 if they have an interest in the sub genre categories of who each of you guys are.
Well, I was going to ask you a question. I don't know if like this question sounds like, I don't know, like ungrateful of like how fortunate I am to have had social media be part of my life. But like, what do you make of when people, I guess, have like internet, like when celebrities, I guess, have like internet friendships? That's kind of like, well, I guess the older version of that is like when celebrities would date each other, but it was basically just to like promote something or be like, talk the town, any pub is good pub kind of thing.
Yeah, how much Justin Bieber's new single is his single coming out, and how much of his new single coming out is tied into this Selena Gomez?
Selena Gomez, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the old form of that, but obviously now the new form is kind of like, did you see that, you know, these two people like follow each other on Instagram? So it's now not just like, did you hear that they're dating or they're beefing over something? And now it's like, oh, did you hear that they unfollowed each other or something?
right.
I hear that stuff sometimes and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm like, is this people are
paying attention to this?
Yeah, I know. I was like, I never thought about that stuff.
I mean, I think the latest example that I can think of that kind of maybe gave me a thought on it was Doja Cat, I think, slid into the DMs of one of the cast members of Stranger Things, asking about another cast member that maybe it was like the person who played Eddie or whatever. And he kind of like inadvertently blew up her spot by like posting their conversation on social media. And I was like, oh man, I don't know. So like, yeah, it's a mixed bag, right? Like you have to have some established level of respect between you and anybody you interact with. And it's hard if people don't really know each other and they're just kind of like getting to know each other to see that missteps can be made. Right. And so I think, I guess what are my thoughts on it? I just feel like you just got to navigate it carefully, like anything else, like online dating. It's like vet the person you're going to go out on this date with before you just jump into a car with them and then go off to dinner. Like,
yeah. Well, I know. And well, now I start to think twice when I see like, you know, two celebrities that I know are like hanging out with each other. I'm like, that's crazy. And then this is so weird, but sometimes I'm like, wait a minute, do they want me to think that that's crazy? So I like keep up with all this drama. Narrative? I know. I'm just like, are they actually friends? But then I'm kind of reassured. Like, it seems like, I don't know. There's just such at least in music I can speak on. There's everybody just knows everybody. Like everybody that I talk to, I like actually you bringing up people like, you know, Andy Black or something. I'm like, oh, I know, like, I can think of like 5 different people who also have toured with him. So in my head, I'm like, I would never think twice whenever you tell a story about that. I'm like, no, they obviously actually know each other because I've just seen firsthand how connected everybody is in music.
Yeah. Well, that gets dangerous too, right? Because like I don't know Andy Black. I just know I met him that time. We spent like some time like rubbing elbows together over that summer. And like I just recently started getting him fed on my TikTok, and his TikTok is fucking hilarious actually, because he's got a very like dry sense of humor. So it's hard for a lot of people to understand when he's fucking with them. And so he'll say something and like, you know, out come the trolls. Everybody's ready to jump on something he said that he intentionally said because he knew he was he's a smart fucking guy. Like that's a dude who's next level. It is not an accident. He has ended up where he is by design because he is a smart guy and he went after it. Like he had a game plan, a vision, he executed, he ended up where he wants to be. And so like we were talking about Ronnie Radke and at breakfast. My interactions with him have all been super positive. Like I remember running into him at Warped Tour. I remember us talking. We kind of like loosely touched base. And at some point before the end of the tour, he was like, yeah, like, let me get your number. Like, we should do some co-writes or something like that in the fall or whatever. I was like, okay. So I leave that tour that summer, go home, and I'm doing some songwriting with Matt Wentworth from Our Last Night. We kind of rough out some demos, and I send the demos to him, and he's like, come to LA, let's work on these. Like, I'm trying to think of Runner. Do you remember the band Runner?
I don't know.
There was one of the members of the band was like producing in LA at this like flat in the hills, and I met him up there, and we did like we were working on our co-writes out there. I liked what I got out of it. I came back and I changed some things. I think that might have upset him or offended him a little bit. Maybe not. But he was also very clear with me, even in this like very friendship like capacity where he was trying to help me out. He was doing me a solid. Like, anything we would put out that would be attached to his name would do well for us if we're in the same scene. And he'd done it for a couple of bands, and we just happened to be one of them. But what was cool was he was very, very clear about, I mean, he's a guy who's clearly gone to a lot of therapy and had to do a lot of like personal work at some point in his life. And so he was very clear that he set the boundary, like, look, like, I want to help you out, but I just need you to be very clear that if I don't respond right away or I'm not like very engaged, it's nothing against you. Like, I always have to be looking out for me and my band first. And I was like, you know what? I had nothing but respect for him for saying that. We ended up having to cut our co-write short because a tour manager who was really close with a lot of people in the scene passed away like while we were out there, and everybody got the news at the same time. And so it's just like obviously not the vibe to get together and write when everybody's mourning. And so, you know, and I've seen him a couple times since then. I text him now and again. He's still really, really nice. I've come to defend him a little bit on TikTok because I feel like he gets a lot of unjust kind of bullshit from people that kind of reach out because he is an instigator. He is just like, he is a kid who in high school you would have either loved or fucking hated. And so that is only going to extend into the echelon of social media world where people are going to hear a story and talk shit. But like, Spirit Box, that band Spirit Box just dropped off of a couple dates on the Popular Mons tour that they're doing because their fans are just so adamantly against them touring with him because of a bunch of things that they hear. And so I feel bad for a band like Spirit Box who kind of lets their fans dictate to them where they can and can't go, because those are people that are going to try to, that's like, they're going to try to control who they can and can't tour with. And it's already so fucking difficult. It's a Cool Kid Club. If you don't have the right manager and this manager doesn't owe this manager a favor, or this agent doesn't know this agent and isn't working with this person, like there's just so many people that if you aren't connected in those camps, you're not going to get an opportunity to do this tour or that tour. And it used to be you wouldn't get Warped Tour. So like that's the kind of thing where I feel like I feel bad for their fans. And then at the same time, I think Avenged Sevenfold, one of the members of Avenged Sevenfold was on a podcast talking about like, he's been acquitted of like anything that's ever come up against him, and anything that was like a rumor at some point has been dismissed. And like, you can say what you want about that, but like, we got to get away from this, you know, criminal justice of court of public opinion only, and not like reviewing the facts and seeing that, yeah, like turns out there are some fucking crazy women out there. I know we're not supposed to say that because we're supposed to, you know, believe all women, but sometimes that's almost a ridiculous statement because everybody is a human baseline. So whatever their, you know, prides and prejudices are, they're all coming from their own place. Some people are going to have a little bit less of a secure background, and they're going to maybe instigate something or create a situation that is not going to look flattering to somebody like Ronnie, but is not necessarily something he did wrong at all. And I witnessed that, like when I went out there to do my co-write, there was a girl that was like trying to break into his house. Imagine being you, who's a popular musician, and having some fucking crazy girl breaking into your house. Like that would, like, I bet that makes a lot of people fucking pretty dickheaded, and it keeps that shit from happening, certainly. And so I feel like he's in this comfortable place where he likes being an asshole and an instigator. And if you know him and he is, you know, friendly toward you, it's probably because he's assessed out of his own intuition that you're probably a good person. You're an okay person. You're a safe person to be around. And that could be like a coping mechanism for how he keeps himself feeling safe in his day to day. Because
I mean, I certainly don't envy people that are put in those positions where they have to either choose to, I don't know, you know, appease a large group of people like their fans, or do what they think might be better for their career. Like, I'm happy that day to day, I am not trying to like manage the impressions of like me, Sam Gilman, like manage the impressions of millions and millions of people.
Right.
Because that just, how do you win?
How can you?
And I also saw something that, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I saw this guy make a video recently, like outlining all of the times that somebody has like basically like made Justin Bieber feel uncomfortable. Because a lot of times I think the narrative is unfortunately
skewed towards the audience.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't want to take away from the fact that like it's, I don't know, he has not had 100% of like shining moments, which is fine because as you said, we're human. But it was probably one of the first videos I've ever seen where somebody outlined a kind of like the opposite perspective, where somebody's like, here's him on the Ellen show, or here's him on James Corden or something, or here's like times where like these people have like whatever, Katy Perry like grabs him when, blah, blah, blah. And the video kept going on and on and on. And I was like, wow, like, I can see why he's had some of these things happen. Like, I'd be pretty upset if an interviewer, like, literally, like, without me saying so, just, like, reached over and, like, grabbed my butt and, like, said, like, when are you going to be 18? Like, I'd be like, yeah, I'd be a little, like, hey.
Yeah, we seem to want to blur the lines a little bit when we see that it goes both ways. I think my turnaround moment for me with Justin Bieber was when he was on that episode of Dave on Hulu.
Oh, yeah.
He happens to be at the studio where he's going to do like some co-write with Benny Blanco.
Mm-hmm.
And
Benny Blanco's hilarious.
And but whenever Justin goes to walk out, he's like, Biebs out. And he's like, I'm just kidding. I don't say that. And he walked out. I was like, what a fucking perfect little insight into his sense of humor. And I think if you can start to gauge somebody's sense of humor, you can kind of get a real good feel of who they are as a person. Yeah. And that's somebody who is probably hyper self-aware and socially aware of what's going on around him and what's going on within him because of how he's come up. Like we have to be more forgiving of that kind of shit.
Well, I also and I mean this genuinely, I truly don't know what happens to how old was he? He was like, how old was he when he got signed with
13, 14?
Yeah. I don't know what happens
12,
to the psyche.
10 maybe.
I don't know what happens to the psyche of somebody who signs like a $200 million signing bonus with like one of the biggest artists ever, who's like, I'm going to make you basically the most famous and well-known person in the world, like in the next like couple years. I don't think anybody could ever have predicted like actually what would happen until we just saw it play out. And so I don't know. And
certainly there's no book for it, right? Like there's no manual for anybody in life. There's certainly no fucking manual for him in life. So you look at the history of child stars that grow up and have problematic like adolescent years and like early adult years. It's almost like it's a given. It's going to happen. We as people are not even really supposed to be biologically. We're connected to our cell phones in a way that like genetically we're probably not ready for another 100 years, 200, maybe 10,000. It takes a long time for us to biologically evolve to around like a thing that is implemented into our lives. And we've had the iPhone for 10, 11, 12 years. Cell phones since like maybe the late 80s, the internet since the late 80s, late 70s or whatever, hallucinogenic drugs in mass scale, probably since like the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. So like a lot of these things we've had as a part of our culture in the zeitgeist of what we understand is going on in the world around us have not been around for more than 50 or 60 years. And so what are the long-term implications of it?
Yeah,
bro, we're gonna be long fucking dead before we ever find out what the long-term effects of those are. We just got to ride this ship we're in this really pivotal information age where we've got, web 3.0s coming around and it's, NFTs and the way, future social contracts are going to get put together for people to buy houses and bank and do all the things we're going to do. Like it's going to be so wild. In 10 years, let's do another one of these podcasts and see what the fuck has changed in 10 years. It's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah. Random question. Do people still, genuine curiosity, do people still do like cryptocurrency and NFTs like they did like a couple months ago? Because maybe it's just like because I don't interact with a lot of that stuff, but I have not seen, like seriously the last thing that I heard of was like Justin Bieber buys like a $200,000 blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. But I don't feel like I hear anything about that anymore.
Well, I feel like for me, I got into crypto a good long while ago and I was able to catch it in the bubble. I rode it to the top, made like good money. And then I got out right before there was a big crash because I was like, this can't go on forever. This is definitely a fluke. And I happened to cash out like right before the new year, right before a lot of like the crypto market tanked. And in doing that, I kind of learned a valuable lesson in being like, oh, okay, all right, this thing is going to go through waves of fads until it's socially accepted or adopted. And right now that's what we're looking at. Like we don't have anything, any infrastructure in place to kind of deal with a strictly digital currency that's, decentralized and not a part of, you can't go, you can go to certain places, like certain like smoke shops and ATMs like you can buy Bitcoin here or you can withdraw in Bitcoin or whatever. So it's like, that's a weird thing that we're dealing with now. And of course it takes time to adopt it. The TV was kind of like that was a big thing because it upset radio, and radio was like the way that people connected to everything. Look at all the infrastructure we have around the country that still supports like radio, even though most people are doing satellite, or if they're not doing XM or Sirius, they're doing, you know, I've got a Spotify account, I've got streaming, I've got my daily mix, I've got the podcast.
Yeah.
I subscribe to this podcast and it tells me every day that, you know, they drop an episode that, hey, there's a new episode out. So if you're anywhere and you subscribe to podcasts, you get that update every day. You open your Spotify app, it's right there. It's all the little blue dots next to your new episodes or whatever. I do it for Joe Rogan. I do it for the Two Bears, One Cave. I do it for Andrew Huberman's Huberman Lab because I like learning about neuroscience and what's going on with human beings neurologically and how we're evolving and what's good for regulating your circadian rhythm. And I just have a wide interest in so many different things. It's like, that's the world we're, for better or worse, living in, and kids are growing up in are going to have to learn to adopt how we implement what makes good information sources. And like, I think we're kind of slowly getting over the curb of like traditional media for our news outlets. Cause we're like, oh, well, this is clearly all bought and fucking paid for. Who's like on the boots on the ground journalist who's really reporting what is happening out there that can give me an unbiased, like just observation of what is taking place so I can draw my own conclusions. If you get fed a narrative, you get pushed into one direction. But if you can observe it for yourself, you can decide for yourself.
Do you think there's going to be a boiling point though? Like, do you think there's going to be a point where...
Of course.
Yeah, but sorry, bad question. What is that boiling point going to look like? Do you think that there's going to be a point where I'm just making this up, but like in, you know, like when I have kids or something, like, do you think my kids are going to be like, I can't believe you guys stared at these things for hours a day?
Right, yeah.
Like, do you think they're going to be like,
you didn't just have the implant in your eye? Like, what the fuck is the matter with you, Dad?
Or do you think, well, yeah, true. Or do you think they're just going to be like, how did you get, like, this is not quite a perfect example to think about, like cigarettes or like seatbelts. I'm like, do you think that people are just going to be like, you didn't know that that was a terrible thing back then? Like, what were you guys thinking? Like, do you think that, you know, the next generation or maybe 2, 3, 4 generations are just going to be like, you didn't know that, like, you get cancer from staring at this or something? Whatever.
Right. Or 5G was giving you guys,
I know.
You were all growing third arms out of your back. Like, how do you not know? Yeah, I mean, they're going to have the benefit of hindsight, right? So they're going to look at everything with the history that's already laid out for them and kind of be able to analyze the data. But hopefully we avoid going in these circles, right? Hopefully we address the shit like school shootings and stuff like that. Like, I don't want to have to send my kid to school with a fucking bulletproof backpack. We got to figure something out. I don't care what it is, but something's got to be done. We can't keep doing nothing. And like, kids are, as enough old white guys in Congress start to die off and young blood gets in there, we'll start to see some like systemic changes that I think will affect the everyday American in their everyday lives. Like, for most people, it's how am I putting food on the tables? You know, how am I getting gas in my tank, and how am I getting my kids to school safely and making sure that they can learn and grow up and live the lives that they want to live? Like, I think most people are intrinsically good. They want, you know, to have a positive impact in the world, and they want to, or at the very least, they don't want to have a negative impact in the world. I don't know, man. I feel like it's always this like swinging pendulum. And right now we seem to be in a point where it feels like we're getting to a place of equilibrium, but that is always going to feel like that's temporary too.
So how do you see, you know, like you said, with kind of like this hierarchy of needs, like how do you see social media playing into that? Or how do you see even just people's connectedness to screens or devices? Like, how do you see that changing people's desires for needs or survival?
Well, I mean, that's a mixed bag too, right? Because like easy access to pornography is shifting the way that like a lot of men think about, you know, sexual intercourse. And so now you've got this like, hey, that's not real what you're watching, and you need to figure that out and like we need to have more discourse and conversation about that. With the social media side of things, it's like, okay, we think we've all accepted that what you're seeing. I love your Instagram for this exact reason. I don't feel like I'm getting the filtered version of you. Like, you posted like a picture, like a multi-picture Instagram the other day, and it was like, here's some Instagram, here's Trevor freestyling.
Yeah.
And just looking through it, I'm like, none of these are high quality, like highlight reel style visual onlys of what is going on with like a long caption that's like a narrative story that you're trying to get across to people. It's like, this is authentically me. And I think we're going to get to a point where we've, just like with advertising, we've been sold shit, my generation, our entire lives. And it started with our parents' generation in like the 70s and 60s and stuff like that with like big advertising agencies. We know, like we were talking earlier, that new MacBook you just got recently, you know, we've heard, we don't know, confirm or deny internet, but like they specifically set the MacBooks at a certain angle so that you have to touch it. And statistically, we know if you go into a store and you touch something, you are like 70% more likely to purchase that item than you would be. And it could be even higher. It could be like 125%. Like, that couldn't be that, because then most people will be definitely buying it, right? But I bet if I go in there and I touch something, I pick up that iPad or I touch that stylus, I'm like, fuck, they got me. And that's literally what you said. You're like, they got me. And they got me. Damn it. Here I am. I'm paying off this $4,000 M1 Max Pro, MacBook.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I go back and forth of being fearful and very hopeful for the next generation. Like I go back and forth of being like, well, think about how many opportunities to have. Like you can buy an older iPhone for a lot less money than you could 10 years ago. Like you can go and pick up like whatever iPhone, it's free to download, Instagram, whatever, and you could, or YouTube is probably a better example, and you can just upload stuff and you can pull yourself out of situations a little more easily. So sometimes I have this mindset on that side of my brain where I'm like, wow, like that's a very powerful thing. And then I also have this other side where I'm just like, are there like larger psychological ramifications for kids that have access to that? And maybe there's, I'm just kind of making this up, but maybe there's like some, avoidance of like real world responsibility or something like that that comes to people who are like social media stars, or I feel like the older analog of that was like child actors who like, they didn't go to school. They didn't like see their families very much. They didn't have normal friends. They didn't whatever. And you're like, look at this amazing life you have. But then they're like, yeah, I'm a little screwed up in the head, but it's like, I pulled myself out of poverty and I was fortunate enough to do this, but it's like, but the trade-off is that I'm like a little screwed up in the head. So I don't know what's going to happen. I guess neither of us really know what's going to happen until it happens. But I'm always just like, man, if I were to somehow, somebody walks up to me and hands me like this kid and there's like, this is your kid, take care of it. And I'd be like, okay, when do I give you a phone? When do I?
What's the etiquette? I'm sorry. Is there a barrier for entry to cell phone? Am I supposed to get them the iPhone 14 when they're 12, or do I wait until they're 14? Or like, should they have it at 8? Do you spend a lot of time? Do you have any like young nieces and nephews that are like?
Now I do. Well, basically it's second cousins, I guess. Pretty much yes. To answer your question.
So like, one of the things I've noticed is with my nieces and nephews that have access to cell phones at an earlier age, they are so much smarter than I remember being at that age. And I think it's strictly because I think if you give anybody this infinite well of knowledge and information, which is what the cesspool of the internet really is, eventually, if you have a good upbringing, I think you have the ability to discern what is like good content and bad content, or what seems believable and what seems non-believable. Now you can get like the outliers where you can get a lot of bad people falling into the wrong camps or whatever. But I think by and large, when you have access to information you're curious about, kids ask questions all the time. Their brains are sponges. So if they can look up the answer to this and they get a couple different answers and their dad sits them down or their mom sits them down and says like, okay, well, I see we got a couple different answers to this question. Which one do you think it is? Okay, well, let's go to this trusted source and see what they had to say. And you walk them through that. There's now this like sort of navigational path put in front of them that helps them discern good information from bad information. And I think that that's one that we're going to have to start to have. And in doing that, we're going to have these kids that have this well of knowledge. Like TikTok has been great for me because it did two things. Great and bad, right? One, it switched it. Three things that were great and bad. Going vertical. Okay, that's definitely making more use of the screen. So it's a little bit more native whenever I'm watching something to not have it be this 4:5 Instagram aspect ratio thing that I don't want to watch. I was not worried about having to turn my phone sideways. Apparently that was the thing we were worried about. I guess, biologically it's nicer to not have to move the phone and only hold it in this position and swipe up. Okay, that works. I get that. That's like a mechanical way of, engineering an app that functions maybe a little more smoothly because we don't naturally hold our phones in landscape. We hold it in portrait. So it did that. Then two, it did the, I think, terrible thing and also, but extremely beneficial thing of lowering the standard of quality for what we observe as like digestible content. Like people could blow up on TikTok just talking to their phone every day. I follow this one guy. It's just him pretending that he works for a company that's giving him a pizza party for, a reward for how hard they've worked.
Okay.
And Felonious Falafel, I think, is his TikTok name. If you've never watched his videos, they're hilarious. He's just fake green screen. He just puts a factory background behind him and pretends that.
Yeah, nothing crazy.
And his boss asks him a question off screen, and he's like, he just gives some smart ass answer. And he is, in my mind, the every worker in America. And he ended up getting fired because I think they found out his TikTok. I reached out to him to have him on the podcast. I'm hoping he comes on because he got fired because of the jokes he was making about his job, not naming them, just like making these scenarios up. And if you look at the number of likes and views, it's not it's a no-brainer as to why it connected with so many people, because I've worked in the service industry for a really long time while I was initially touring, because I could leave my job for a month and a half and come back and go right back to my job. And close and I worked at an Outback Steakhouse for 10 years, and it fully kept me and my artistic career afloat while I was traveling, coming back, working for a month, and then going for 2 months, and then back for a month, and then gone for 2 months. The reward that every company wants to give you for your hard work is never, oddly enough, a fucking raise. It's only a pizza party. And so like when you see it enough times, that joke resonates with so many people because they're like, yeah, that's what my company wants to do. They want me to, this person called off, so I'm gonna need you to cover their work today. It's like, oh yeah, you're gonna be paying me their wage too? No? Oh, well, then I think we've seen a disconnect here. And so, yeah, like so the second thing it did was it dumbed down like the quality level that we need to see for content to be able to absorb it, right? Like I feel like that first generational YouTube pop that you were talking about earlier was when if you had a fully produced music video, that's already far cry from like the MTV days where that was the only way to get your music video seen really was to be up at 2 a.m. after Beavis and Butthead was over and a bunch of shows, and you could watch like 4 hours of new music videos and whatever that weren't on Total Request Live. And now the barrier for entry was as soon as you could pick up a DSLR and film video with it, now you could make, and you have different lenses, you've got depth of field in your shots, like you can do some really interesting things. You guys took it to the next level. When we did our cover, and I was like, oh, holy shit, they programmed their lights via MIDI to have them change section by section so you're not watching the same lighting setup behind you the whole time. There's movements to the video then. That's a really smart thing to do, and it's really subtle. That's like Alex would call it the sprinkles on top of the cupcake. It's like, you've given them this thing, it's already really good, and then you're like, oh, and then this is also going to be just a little extra flavor that is you're not going to realize makes it great, but does. Yeah. And so that second wave and that YouTube wave was people's content quality bar was like going through the roof. And then TikTok kind of brought that bar back down again because in doing that, it made it way more accessible for way more people to do way different and new and fresh types of art. So that's cool. And then what was the third thing? Shit, what was the third thing? I guess algorithmically it made it so that it was easier to be discovered out of nowhere.
That's an interesting one because I think like I enjoy that on TikTok in a way. Like people are, I guess, in a way, a lot of times they're rewarded for just being themselves, which I think is like beautiful in a way because, being like the advent of the influencer is like such a weird thing to be like, are you famous because you just exist? Like, is that kind of what's going on?
What do you do?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's like, what do you do? But then I'm kind of reminded that there's some good in that because like at least people that I follow, like they would not have probably been able to like take their skills and interests into like a job. Like think about like, I don't know, that person talking about, he's like a hilarious person. He works for a pizza company, you said, right?
No, I think he worked like a factory. I think he might have worked in some kind of manufacturing setup or something like that.
So whatever.
Assembly line something maybe.
So like his skills in that assembly line are not aligning necessarily with how like just funny that guy is.
Right.
And it's like, you're not going to get rewarded at your job because of just being who you are. And it's like, but clearly people want to see it. Sometimes I'm like, that's so awesome that like you can kind of just make a career of just being who you are. I think the part where it starts to get blurred or like that threshold is hit is when I'm just like, why are you getting rewarded for being who you are?
Right. There has to be some sort of like intrinsic value there. And I think for he seems like if you have worked any sort of retail or service industry job, you have worked with this guy who is like, listen, this fucking dickhead trying to give us a pizza party instead of a raise for doing all this extra work. Yeah. Like he is a guy that you have worked with and it was a funny guy you worked with and you enjoyed working with him because of who he was then. So without ever having met him, you feel like you know him. And so it's a very familiar way to kind of get used to somebody. And then just having him hit on certain points about working for somebody and the different bullshit that like upper management tries to pitch you as like a new incentive they're trying to implement or whatever. That was really funny to me. And so I followed him and I sing his praises like every now and again. And
well, I mean, it's a good that comes with the bad of like, we talked about this earlier at breakfast of like, somebody who it might frustrate you that somebody gets picked up for a big Hollywood movie or something and you're like, they don't act. I don't get it. Why did they just randomly? Oh, it's because they have a following, which that can be frustrating. And then
case in point, Lizzo was on the latest episode of The Mandalorian this past week with Jack Black. And like, she is not an actor by trade. She's not, I don't think she's terrible in the Star Wars universe, but the Star Wars fans can be toxic. And so like, there's a lot of shit talk, but like that's in a loose sense of the term, it's really is some form of like gatekeeping where people that are like, oh, I don't want people that are fans of Lizzo to get into Star Wars because Lizzo was in it. It's like, why not? Why are you
I know. Well,
keeping everybody from this?
Then that's, you know, what you might consider, I guess, bad word, but you know, the bad that comes with it. And then the good that might come with that is like somebody like that creator you're talking about who would had to have otherwise conventionally climbed this like comedy ladder. Like, let's say you wanted to do stand up or something like that, or be a funny actor. It's like, well, now he doesn't really have to do all that bullshit. Like somebody's just like, all right, found you. You're awesome. Like, I'm just going to scoop you up and like carry you up this thing because like you might not get there working your normal job. You might not. So I don't know. I mean, like, how do you manage that? Do you like allow yourself to be very frustrated with that? Or you're just like, I'm joining the game. Like, I'm joining the rat race. I'm going to try and like be on the good side of that too.
Yeah. I mean, we each get to choose, right? Like that's the glory of it. And so I feel like that's sort of what makes it special, right? Because there is no rhyme or reason to it. And like you were saying earlier, Breakfast, it makes it so that, or no, you said it last night. Like people think that doing whatever this is like so unattainable. And it's like, but it's not. It's like none of it is. All you have to do is figure out what the systems and processes are. I get irritated with artists that don't want to pick up an extra skill set. Like they just want to be the singer-songwriter. They just want to be the producer. They just want to whatever. It's like you've got to wear a couple hats in any industry you're in anymore, honestly, because so many individual things kind of require extra media skill. If you're in the creative space, you need to have extra media skills. If you're a painter, you better have some way to figure out a GoPro up above you, watching you time lapse, do the work that you're doing. Cause that's a form of content you can put out. It's fun to watch. Maybe it's not something you're into, but like I said this to Greg before, like I think the mistake a lot of people make is thinking that their audience is only the audience that they think of. And I don't know what the takeaway for everybody's going to be from everything that we say. So why would I try to box it in and say it's only for these people or I'm making it for these people? It's like, yeah, you got to niche down to certain degrees to be able to like put content out that people can find in the realm of what you're trying to discuss or talk about or create or whatever it is you're doing. But to a certain degree, we have no control over what pops and what doesn't, you know, like there's examples of people like an artist their label not letting them release a song as a single. They release the single that the label wants to release and it flops. And meanwhile, the single that comes out afterward, it was the single that they wanted to push. It's like the passion push does like it crushes because it's like, I don't know.
Fall Out Boy with Sugar, we're going down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I can't imagine like that's got to be, they must love playing it and hate playing it at the same time, right? Like there's no way you can enjoy a song that you have to play no matter what, or people will be upset because it's how a lot of people, college age or not, have discovered you. And, you know, I think at their level, it's more of a practice of gratitude, right? They're like, okay, we got to play this fucking song that we've played no less than several thousand times. But you know what? Like, look at the faces. Like, look how happy all these people are. This is awesome. And, you know, I think that they've always been a pretty progressive and forward thinking band. I think it has a lot to do with Patrick and Pete kind of being at the helm of it. But that whole band through and through is really, really, they're all great characters as human beings. Like they're funny, they're all charismatic. They all have their own like niche things that they're into. Pete's an interesting writer. He had Decadence Records for a while. And
I always like to kind of like say this, but I won't say the person's name, but I was fortunate enough to meet this artist who was playing at a festival, and we were on a tour with Set It Off, and Set It Off was playing the festival day. We were not, but we were like, we'll follow him there. Just go watch him play. And I met an artist there who I had known and I listened to. I was like, oh, cool. I get to like meet him. And he happens to be signed to.
Or she.
Yes, true. This anonymous person who I actually lied is actually a girl, actually, now that I think about it. Thank you very much. This anonymous person is signed to like Pete's label or like Pete's like subsidiary of like Fueled My Ramen or whatever. Yeah. And Fall Out Boy was like, I would say one of maybe like 2 or 3 bands that I just like saw for the first time and was like, I need to pick up. Like that was just such a pivotal, like I need to pick them up. I know everything about their discography. I know whatever. That was like a very, very big one for me.
Okay. Quick sidebar.
Sure.
What is your favorite Fall Out Boy song?
Song or record or song? Ah, man, I don't know. It's a tough one. I feel like, I really like the song of All the Gin Joints. It's the one of the tracks off of Cork Tree.
Yep.
But so I'm like a very big fan. And I was talking to him and he was just like, that person, they're just like, yeah, I'm on Pete's label, whatever. And I was like, wow, that's like, I was overwhelmed. I was like, this person is like 1 degree away from like me maybe getting to me, and all of them, all 4 of them, very influential. Like, that'd be so awesome. I was like, are you a big Fall Out Boy fan? No, honestly, Pop Punk Artist was like, yeah, no, honestly, I'm not really, I never really kind of hit on them. I was like, I guess, whatever, a Yellow Card person. I've never really listened. And I was just like, oh my God, you're kidding me. Like, you don't even, but I kept together. And he was like, yeah, it's actually funny. Like, Pete's just like really into me. Like, he I don't really get it, but he invites me to like his Christmas parties, and he always wants to go to, these functions with me, and he just texts me all the time wanting to hang out and play video games.
Why can't
I'm just
I
like,
get the fucking invite to go? I
oh
want
my
to go.
gosh. I
want to go.
I literally, oh my gosh. And at one point, this person, and he is actually just a really we ended up getting along really cool anyway. So I was like, that's a funny thing, but whatever. And he's like, you guys got to come open up for, my day in New York or something. And I was like, that'd be great. And I was like, we're on tour. We're going to be missing that or whatever. And then after like that message where he's like, you guys got to come open. Like, I think, P wants to come by and hang out at the show. I was like, oh, it'd be cool. Like, I could hang out with you and he might be there. And then all of a sudden he just gets these offers from like huge bands, like playing like the O2, going out with All Time Low, like doing blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well now he is officially out of reach, and like my in to doing these like cool things and meeting like these childhood heroes, it's like it's out of my reach now. Like, dang it. I was like, if only we could have opened for him that one time.
I feel like for me, I Want to Catch Donnie is my favorite.
Yeah.
It's like a good beautiful song to kind of jam in the car, especially if you're feeling sad or if you're just feeling nostalgic.
That's a beautiful one. Yeah.
Alex from All Time Low, I have a bunch of really interesting weird connections with him. Like, our bass player Scott was a big fan of All Time Low, like a diehard. And I think in Warped 2012, he wanted to meet him so bad for like as much of the tour as he could have. And I think we were in Jersey, and Scott got too drunk and he went back to the van and he passed out, and he like vomited outside the van. I didn't know this because I was like at one of the barbecues and Alex was there. I was like, my friend's never going to ask you to meet him. And like, you seem very chill. If you have a minute, would you be interested in like going to meet my friend? We're playing the tour. Like, I think it would mean a lot if he got to meet you. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. He was like the chillest dude ever. We walked him back to our van. He opened the door and Scott's passed out in the front seat of the van, puke outside of the van, just not the scenario where you want to meet your idols. And we had to tell Scott the next day that he met Alex, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, no, you didn't. No, I didn't." And I was like, "Oh, I did. I had no idea you were."
You met him too, actually.
Yeah. And so I have a picture of Alex. He's like covering his nose, like next to Scott, because we're like, I need a picture of this because he's never gonna believe that you came over here to meet him, and I need to show him that this is the condition he was in whenever his idol came over to meet him. And it's like, that's a good memory, whether he loves the way the memory played out or not. It is like one of those like band stories that we tell a lot of people whenever it comes up.
I don't know what I'd do with myself.
Alex, and I don't know if he's still married to his wife, Lisa. When they got married, Tom Falcone was with them and did like a lot of the videography for their wedding. So I ended up like editing and color correcting his wedding footage for
cool.
him. And randomly there was a festival in the UK at Slam Dunk. I think it was Slam Dunk actually. I was out tour managing another band, and I connected like with him and Vic from Pierce the Veil. Like, they were super, super nice guys. And it was like, we had seen each other enough times at weird parts of the, at different parts in the pond or whatever, to be like, he was like, yo, and I didn't expect Alex to remember me, but he was really nice. He was like, yeah, I remember you from Warped Tour. And I was like, that's fucking wild.
Yeah. And that's cool. It makes such a difference. I feel like somebody that like you have this idea of like they're huge, as we said, it's an unattainable thing, and they remember you, like but
that's you. Like, people look at you. I know people that look at First to 11 and like, that band's fucking huge, like they have so many million subscribers on YouTube and they're fucking crushing it. All their videos have this, but like, you're a person, and that's why I think I wanted to do this, because I met all these people that are maybe industry giants or whatever. But when I talk to people, when you talk to them as people, as like one-on-one, there's more common ground there between the fan and the artist than I think ever before. Because you see that you suffer from a lot of the same things that somebody who maybe is afraid to take this next step. Like, when you texted me after we did the shoot, you were saying like, yeah, I want to get into, what was it you were saying you wanted to get into? You wanted to start doing.
I had a million ideas, right? And I had a million ideas, like, of doing like drum covers or filming these kinds of videos or filming I had a million ideas, probably one or two of which was actually good. But yeah, no, I know what you're saying. There's a lot of ideas that, like, even somebody like me, I'm just like, man, I don't know where to go. And I'm sure a lot of people would maybe hear that, or First 11 fans maybe hear that and be like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, you don't know, like, if you can do that. It's like, dude, why can't you? But I don't know. I've always said this, like, it seems like you just put on these tunnel vision blinders when you're trying to think of that stuff. Like, I've had friends, I've had my girlfriend, I've had whoever, like, I'm ranting about this problem, like, I don't know how I'm going to fix this. I don't know how I'm going to get this. And then they're just like on their phone casually, like, did you try doing that? And it's like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you. How could I have been so stupid? And they're like, I don't know how you could be so stupid, but you're very stupid for not thinking of that.
Right. Yeah, there's like this weird barrier for entry that we feel we have to have permission to kind of cross into the threshold of, and it's almost never true. Because if you can learn the skill set, and like everything you have skill set wise to your advantage, I could see you, like Trevor, you've got Trevor's a homie. So like have him come and film some drum cover videos for you if you wanted to. And you could literally just trigger your drums, record the MIDI, or program out the MIDI and play to the MIDI.
You can lie to the people.
Yeah.
No, I know.
Nobody's doing that. Nobody's
done that yet.
Yeah. But like, you know, I look at like Luke Holland, he'll go and he'll track and record somewhere and get like the drum tones that he likes. And that's better than having to set up somewhere where you're not going to have control of the elements and being able to get good drum tones out of something and having that mixed and mastered and put on top of a cover that you're doing. And I watched him basically go from being already pretty big at like 19 to being he's like one of the biggest drumming YouTubers that there is. And rightfully so. Like his goal is he wants to be like Bieber's drummer. He doesn't want to like, I'm sure he loves being with Falling in Reverse, but if Bieber gave him a call tomorrow, like that's where he's trying to go. He's trying to break into that echelon. He's a good looking dude, fucking insane on the drums. Like he's got all the credentials and accolades he would need to be able to pull that off. You just got to there's that 1 degree of separation, right? Like you just got to get that offer or whatever it ends up being. And like I could see you having all the skill sets already at your disposal where you could do something very similar to that with like a small camp and offer Trevor some equity in building that part of your channel and like the releasing the videos or whatever. And now it's like you're splitting the revenue, but you're halving the work that you'd have to do in the back end to get something out that you would like.
Yeah, no, you bring up a lot of great things. I've thought one about... That's
like all I do, babe. It's basically what I just shit out good ideas all day.
Yeah, exactly.
I just wake up and choose excellence.
You've never said a dumb thing ever.
Ever.
No, but I'm seriously though, like I think the only thing that I probably like differ on a little bit is, and I don't know if just with the group that I'm part of, if this is kind of like a belief that we hold so strongly, maybe even too tightly, but I think we're very much like try to be as self-sufficient as you possibly can, which you obviously know that, but you know, it's hard to know, like when do you cut your losses and you're just like, okay, I'm being self-sufficient, but truly this is like a waste of my time if I do X, Y, and Z when that person could probably help me do X and Y or something. So I'm trying to obviously like find a system that works where it's like completely self-sufficient, not relying on anybody. But I mean, I keep coming back to this thing that I'm trying to always rack my head around is like, what would people want to see? But then that also gets tricky because it's like, why are you asking what people want to see and why aren't you just doing what you want and hopefully people will like it? Well,
there's something to be said for wanting to cater to your audience a little bit too, or cater to an audience a little bit too, especially when you're in that period where you're trying to grow. Like it makes sense to put out content that you know, like Greg's point earlier was, yeah, you want to put out content that is specifically servicing a group of people that would be looking for that content. And so with you doing what you do, you wear so many hats that honestly your niches you have a few. So to me, I would say, why do you have to choose one or the other, right? Like you can have the best of both worlds by going after a few of them if you can find a way to collect it. And at the end of the day, every artist suffers from the exact same thing. You've got bandwidth. You have so much mental bandwidth to work with to get things done in your day. And the vice is we all have a million ideas, but we can't execute on all of them.
Yeah.
And so I think in the degree that some artists don't want to give up a little bit of equity in their projects to get a few steps ahead, everybody's taking 2 steps forward, 10 steps back. Like that's just like, that is the path. And eventually you end up where you want to be somehow. I don't know. It's fucking magic. It's black magic. It's voodoo. I don't know. But you have to be willing to subscribe to the idea that if I can put this effort out here in the way that I want to, great. If I'm going to get bottlenecked because I have to do, like, I hate vocal comping. And I know people that sing in bands that love vocal comping, not me. I can't stand it. It's like, I like doing it. I don't want to do it as a part of my process because I will spend too much time doing that. And then I can't be doing the other things that I do that cater and placate more to my strengths.
Yeah.
And so when you're trying to implement and feel out this system, I think the other question to ask is, what can I give up that is sole ownership of something to co-create or to collaborate with somebody that's going to get me this thing out. Like you said, the dude who was basically cutting out highlight reels from first to 11 videos and starts a channel, and then that channel blows up because or how is that the same person I'm thinking of? Or
yeah.
So like just somebody who does something like that shows you that there's so many easy ways to kind of repurpose and reevaluate what you're capable of pulling off. And the barrier for entry is very seldom that you can't do something. It's just that you have to learn the skill sets. And if you don't adopt that as an artist in 2023, you've got to have more than the core skill set you have that keeps you interested in the thing you're doing. You're going to have a hard time succeeding the way you want to, because you have to make certain, you know, you can have your grievances, but you have to make certain concessions to what you're willing to accomplish and put forth effort wise to get to where you want to go. And it's probably really hard for somebody like you, who is I'm a very executive dysfunction kind of person. You seem like the kind of person who has no difficulty in executing and getting shit done, but you have a million ideas and you got to funnel them into like the handful you think you can accomplish. But you look at the people that move and go and have little teams in place. Yeah, if Trevor's got his own YouTube channel, dude, okay, cool. Trev, can you film these videos for me? I'll go 50-50 with you on the videos. I can take care of all the music and stuff, and then I can show up and play it. I just need somebody to film it, and I'll even edit it. If you only want to film it, I'll give you 25%. Like, we have to be willing to have these social contracts and barter with the people that we co-create with to give them some equity in the art we're all creating.
Yeah.
And I don't know how your guys' infrastructure like financially is with First to 11. I would never ask you to discuss it, but like a lot of bands do, like a certain percentage will go back towards the band, like business account or whatever. And then maybe on every song, everybody gets a percentage split. And then that way everybody makes a little bit of money off the streaming, but the band makes the majority or whatever. Or, you know, you could do it any number of ways where you don't do any towards the band and everybody just gets paid individually. Like you guys have like a compound, basically. You have the music place, like the middle store you walk into, there's the studio spot on the right. And then the left area is like rehearsal areas and like lesson areas and stuff like that. That's what I think bands should be ascribing to, you know, pull together and put together.
Yeah, to just be like their own machine. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like they just
if the
do it
machine
all.
and the tools are there, I guarantee people will be willing to come in and pay for the lessons to be able to, you know, would they pay for lessons monthly that they have to pay $50 a month for, or $100 a month? I don't know what lessons cost. It's been so long as I paid for them. But like, you know, if you knew that going into a place and taking lessons there gave you access to the studio, would you sign up for the $125 or $150 a month vocal lessons once a week for 4 weeks? You know, like that's not bad. That's like not a bad price. And whatever that price ends up being, if paying for that gave you access to the studio space where you could schedule time to get in the studio when it's you know, available for an hour, and you could book it in hour increments or whatever.
Yeah.
Now you have a way to monetize both the studio when you're not using it. Lessons over here is funding a business that's good for keeping the lights on and everything going on in the house. And then you've got a rehearsal space on the left-hand side where artists can come in, and if you're a band and you don't want to take the lessons, but you want to pay $150 a month to be able to have a really nice rehearsal space where you can just kind of show up, plug in, turn on, and fucking jam. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah. We are trying to get a program in a way off the ground that's very much like, look, we will just cut those shortcuts for you and like show you how this is all done. Like you said, kind of for like a premium. And you and I talked about it last night of like, eventually you're probably just going to see more and more pop-ups of like companies that are like, look, we will just come and set up your entire studio for you and we'll teach you how to do all this. Like you will actually do it and film and do whatever, but like, we're just going to come and set up the entire thing for you so you don't have to like worry about a lot of it. Cause I think there's a lot of misinformation. Like I talk to like my students and they're just like, I want to record. And I'm like, great. Like, sure. It'll cost you like literally like $100 and you can do anything you want. Like anything. You can literally record the top selling record. If you have like this little, like people might not tell you this. People might tell you that you need so much crazy stuff, but like, this is yours. Go nuts. You know what I mean?
right. Yeah. Here's a Scarlett too.
The solo. Yeah. Whatever. I think that with I'll flip it around to you and see if this is kind of how you feel, but how solid are you in your, I don't know, in your, you know, how wavering are you with your ideas and confidence about the content you're creating? And I guess what I mean by that is like, I would consider myself to be very easily like inspired. Like if somebody, I won't make you feel awkward when you use an example, but you are very successful. And if somebody was just like, hey, why don't you do that? Sounds like a great idea. I'd be like, yeah, you're right. Okay, I'm going to go do it. Like you know what you're talking about. Like, I think I can do that. But at the same time, if somebody was like, that's not really a good idea, I get the wind out of my sail, you know what I mean? Like, oh man. But a lot of people are like very just strong in their footing, and they're just like, no, like, I don't care if people think it's a good idea or bad idea. Like, I'm going through with this.
Yeah, I think it's a learned behavior. And so you have to, it's almost like an acquired taste of like how you exert the knowledge that you have. So you're ultimately going to know whether or not something is, if something feels like a good idea, if you do well at listening to your intuition and you've got a history of acting on your intuition and it working out well for you, probably going to lend you to believe that you should maybe go after this idea that you have. But if you're kind of, I think it's good to have criticism at certain stages. It's not always constructive because sometimes it's nice to really test your resolve. So if I pitch an idea and somebody's like, I don't think that's a good idea. That sounds like, I just don't see why we would want to, end our set on a cover for some reason. It's like, well, it's the last song we're playing. So logically in my brain, I'm thinking if we play a cover last, doesn't matter if it's us last, they'll remember the whole show. And if all they remember is we did this one cover, then they may like us just because we did that one cover and then be more inclined to go buy merch or follow us on Spotify or whatever it is, And so I guess in my mind, I feel like if you can learn to disseminate earlier on in the process of the idea generation phase, what is an idea to pursue and what is an idea that it seems like maybe you're taking a shot in the dark, you get a little bit further along at saving yourself from the pitfalls of going after every idea that you think you want to go after. Because it's just like songwriting, man. Like not every song is going to be a banger. Not every song is going to be a hit. You just got to be willing to try the thing and put it out. And so the podcast, maybe I get to 21 episodes and I'm like, man, this is so much fucking work. Fuck this. I'm out and I don't want to do it anymore. I hope that's not the case because the idea of me not enjoying conversation with you or any of the number of people I could have sit across from me and engage with is never going to go away. I love talking to all kinds of people about everything. Like Greg, he doesn't think that my audience is his audience at all for any reason, but he caters to an older generation's appreciation and respect for certain sets of hierarchies and things that maybe don't necessarily all 100% still stay true in today's society, but make up the underpinnings of the things that do. And so there's a value in knowing what the base, pillar knowledge of how to create a market. He's got a marketing and advertising agency. So like it makes sense that he would be really inclined to be like, who's your audience? What did he ask us for? He's like, who's your audience? Like, who's this designed for? And I'm like, this is designed for any creative who has ever fucking felt like they have no place in their creative space that they kind of exist within. Like they feel like they're like a visitor or like they're only in transit, that they can't, be a part of this culture because I don't know, people just don't feel like they've earned it or deserve it or something like that. And that could come from like a shitty upbringing. Has nothing to do with the bearing on the talent. Like how many, for all the people that we do see, think about all the extremely talented people that we aren't going to see because they can't get over this fucking hurdle that says, oh, I'm not good enough to do that. Or if they're like, oh, we're a band, but like, can we hire you to do music videos? I'm like, I'm going to tell you right now, the reason we don't hire people to do our music videos usually is because I made myself capable of doing it. And I grew up on media, observing that content format and being like, oh, these are the kind of music videos I like. I know I like Linkin Park music videos, even though the CGI was maybe really bad in the beginning and got progressively way better by the end of, their tenure, if they're still going, I don't know. But, there's something to be said for giving it a shot and giving it an earnest shot and being patient through that thick, fog and haze of people being like, is this really a good idea? It just seems like you're not getting anywhere. It's right when you quit could have been the moment where you succeeded, and you have to be aware that when nobody knows. I just had this conversation with my friend yesterday about, I think it was about aliens, but this principle still applies, right? Like if the idea is that aliens are only going to come here to destroy us, then that means there are aliens, right? And at the very least, that means that there's this other idea that maybe the aliens are only going to come to save us. Like if one is true, the other has to also possibly be true. And so if you feel like you can't make it, you just need to assess like, but could I also make it? Could I envision it? What would it look like to me? And you have to have these like honest, they're hard conversations to have because you might be like, fuck, nobody in my team is really gassing me up. And like, I don't really have it's good to have a support group around you. So it's good to have haters. It's good to have a support group too. And if you can have a group of people around you that are also creating, it's usually going to uplift your spirits too. That's why I take random pilgrimages to Alex's. I'm like, I'm going to come down and he's going to be in the process of creating and being in the place where you are creating actively.
So inspiring.
So uplifting because you can take the fucking training wheels off. I don't have to worry about what I'm good at or what I'm bad at. I can just show up and do what I do and see what happens.
Well, I think that maybe part of that, I don't know, you'd call it that, like trepidation about it is because when I first joined First 11, so First 11 itself, the first like 2 or 3 videos I put out that were all like I think we'd all kind of agree, like lesser quality, didn't really know what we were doing.
That's the learning curve.
Yes, but those all had such big success that there was never any depth. The reason that they even put out YouTube videos, if you didn't know, is because when they were playing a day on Warped Tour, like, you know, a small stage, one day on Warped Tour, they were just like,
what day? The Darien Lake, or what's closest to you? What would have been the date that they?
Yeah, like the Cleveland day. Yeah,
the Cleveland day. Yeah, or Cuyahoga Falls.
Cuyahoga Falls, yeah. And but it was just like, let's get people to like come like watch us or whatever. Okay, all of a sudden the video blows up, which like at the time it's kind of like, wow, the first video, like that's like a little unusual, I guess.
Same thing happened to us.
So as you know, it kind of gives you this idea of like, in a good way of like, oh, wow, that's extremely possible. So that happens. Then later on, I end up joining First 11, already something that's like well established. I'd kind of put off a little bit, like joining, I was a little whatever. And then eventually like, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, let's see us. I'm in. And then I'm like already walking into something that has some legs, it has some momentum. So in my head, I'm like, wow, this is crazy that you guys can put out stuff and expect for it to perform very well.
Right. Because that's not how it normally works.
That's not how it normally works. So now
especially starting out, right? Like,
yeah, I know.
You don't assume anything's going to do well.
Yeah, which is like safe as long as you let it not become crushing, right?
Right.
Like you said, managing expectations. So I'm sure in a way you've also kind of had a new experiences where you're like, I'm starting this podcast. I am like, let's see basically, like you shouldn't be, this is gonna hit, but you also shouldn't be like, if this doesn't hit, like I'm out, you know what I mean?
I treat it like boxing. It's like sticking a move. You just gotta fucking, okay, I got punched in the mouth, okay, all right, next, what's like, where am I going next? Like I just gotta keep moving.
That's a good one.
If you keep doing it, you're gonna get through it, because the reality is it is a battle, right? You're fighting with all kinds of obstacles, and every one of those can be a punch in the face or the thing that puts a little extra air in your lungs.
You're also battling millions of boxers at the same time, trying to compete for that space. It's almost like, would you rather like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people probably have the same answer, but would you rather live in a world like we do now where it's like anybody can get in, which is great, but it's also like, holy shit, anybody can get in? Or would you rather live in, you know, whatever, the early 2000s, something where it's like, oh, this sucks. We have to kind of rely on record labels, but it's like, yeah, but if you're on one of those, like you have a good chance of people getting to like go to your shows and stuff.
Yeah, I think now we talked about this last night too. I think this is worth bringing up. You said, you know, you asked your manager, you know, why did you like choose us? And he was like, well, to be honest, like even if I'm not a fan of you personally, even if I weren't, I can look at what you guys are capable of doing and see that gives me as a manager the tools that I need to succeed. Mm-hmm. And a lot of artists just want to write the song as if the song is like gonna fucking do it. Like, okay, but what's the video? How are you putting this out there? How are you marketing this? Like, it doesn't matter. You don't have to play by all the conventional means either way. I'm not saying like you have to be on TikTok to find what success looks like for you. You have to have these metrics and these ideas in place, though, to be able to shoot for them and go for them. And if you have the ability to do a lot of things in-house, or even if you're not in-house, you have the team that can create the entire vision for what a manager would look for in a band that he could promote or an artist he could promote, then you have what he needs tool-wise to be a winning formula.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. And it's like that kind of comes full circle to what we were talking about earlier of like, you know, if you're part of a big team, like, how much of the responsibility is it on you to like start to gather the skills that the rest of your team is doing and being like, all right, this is great that I'm part of something. I think anybody who makes money on the internet kind of knows that like you have to diversify your income in some way or another. Like
right.
It's not really promised. So the responsibility is on the individual to be like, all right, I got to learn all these skills, because clearly I was fortunate enough that we hit success because we have the abilities, whether it's one person or a team of 100 people, to be like, we have all bases covered. We have the person who's really good at social media, the person who's really good at writing, the person who's really good at whatever. But
graphic
it's like
design. You guys have like nice animated graphics at the end of your videos. I was like, fuck me, we got to implement that.
Yeah.
Like to me, everything I run into is homework. I'm like, if I can look at something and be like, that's a practice I would want to implement with us, because I can see, one, that it works, and two, that it would work within our system and the way it already functions, right? And so we haven't announced that we launched our merch on Spotify yet. We were just kind of putting in a few items up on there. And then at the next video shoot, now we'll make the video where we're like, hey, like make sure you at the end, click the link, go buy the merch, yada, yada. And because like you got to diversify your revenue stream. You got to be able to like imagine. I've met artists. We've done collaborations with certain people where like they don't want to have their covers on their Spotify. They only want their covers on YouTube. And I'm like, oh, why?
Yeah.
I'm like, why wouldn't you want it to be everywhere where it could be found so you could get the revenue streams from all of those places, right? And they're just like, this is my artistry and this is my marketing. And I'm like, okay, I mean, it's not right or wrong if that works.
Oh yeah,
for them.
true.
I just have to be like, okay, that's not what I would do, but if you feel like it works for you, you know, you're living your best life. You're an artist through and through, and you try, like, nobody could tell you you're not doing the thing, you know, like you're doing what artistry is to you. And so that's all. I found that to be really, really interesting. Did you get any responses yesterday when you asked people what they would want to ask you?
Well, a lot of people just thought it was like funny. Like a lot of people were like, they were giving me stupid like references to like movies and stuff, like stupid. Do you know what I mean? Like, they were just like,
give me an example.
Okay, so here, this is one that came through.
So to preface this, I'll take a break real quick for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Tim, are you still okay, or what time I gotta have you out of here by?
I have still got 2, but I could stay to like 2, like 1:30, 1:35, 1:40.
Okay, cool. What I might do is just have you like jump out, and whenever you have to leave, I'll just have you cut to the wide, and then I can have that be just the rest of the episode if I have to. That way I don't want you to feel like you're trapped here and can't get to where you need to be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I knew this conversation was going to go long, and I was excited for it too, but I was like, I feel like I said 11 to 1 or something like that. I was like, we've definitely crossed the threshold. Okay, yeah. So to preface this, I asked you yesterday if you'd be interested in putting up a comment or a post on your Instagram to kind of pull your audience of fans and just subscribers and people that follow you and pay attention to all things Sam Gilman, what they would want to ask you or have you talk about on the podcast. And so you did that. I saw that. I think I shared it from the Collab or Die podcast Instagram. And then I was just curious. Like we kind of talked about like your engagement with your fans earlier. So I was like, I want to follow up and be like, what was the turnaround?
Well, like, okay, so one that showed up is, do you know? I don't know if you remember this, but do you remember that one like video? It was like this like viral, like I think it was a Vine. He asked this guy in the street. He was like, what did he say? He was like, who's the hottest Uber driver you've ever had? And the guy's like, I've never been to Uvu Java. Have you ever seen that like Vine or whatever?
No, but that's
I feel
hilarious.
like, Tim, have you seen that? Yeah. So
that's my favorite part about working with the interns from Happy Valley Song Lab is that they are all like fresh-minded, like vibrant individuals. You're a comm major, you said?
Yeah.
What was your major?
Math.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
That's why you're a drummer, dude. That's for sure.
Well, that's why I'm doing music, because who the hell gets paid as a math major?
Yeah, I got through college by the skin of my teeth taking like a math history class to get the math credit I needed to get out of college.
I was talking with Kurt Schneider, because he also was math, and it was just funny. I was like, you ever using? He's like, oh no. He's like, never. He's like, I'm so happy this worked out.
Right. This could have happened way differently. I'm glad it played out the way it did.
But yeah, I had some people who just kept on saying like, what's the hottest Uber driver you ever had? And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. Some people who are like diehard First 11 fans, we jokingly say it's like annoying when people ask us how we got our band name. We used to put a banner up on our live stream, like a moving banner like you'd see on the news that just says, we got our band name from blah, blah, blah. So I had a bunch of people that were like, I want to know how you got your band name. And I was like, okay, guys, please, serious questions. And
so you've answered this a million times?
Yeah, it's just, that's like, whenever we would live stream.
That's one of those entry level interview questions that everybody has to ask. And you're like, fuck, I got to tell this story. And you start to find like Reader's Digest versions of ways to describe it.
I know.
Boil it down for me. How did you guys get the name First to 11?
Yeah. Okay. The quick version of it.
Is it from dialing your amp up to 11?
No, but, I always said that'd be like, if there's like a cartoon show about like a band, like, that's what they would say.
Right.
Like, we like turn it up to, I don't know, but no,
it was the first to turn it up to.
Oh my god, I know, it's so like Disney Channel. No, I wasn't there when they created that name, but it was just I've known them for a long time. We always used to play this game after we'd have like band practice or whatever. It's a made up game where it's basically it's a mix of like volleyball and like tennis and like ping pong, where you just go to a tennis court, you do like 3 people on each side, and you grab like one of those giant inflatable Walmart balls, like the really big ones, and you basically play like human sized tennis. So like first to 11 on both sides wins.
That's hilarious.
But it's I don't think anybody would mind me saying this, by the way, but it's not a good name for 3 reasons. One is the first word, the second is the second word, and the third is the third word, because they can all be spelled a million ways. First can be
There's
F-I-R-S-T.
a bar downtown I can take you to. We'll grab a drink after we get out of here. It's called The First. It's PHYRST. So whenever, autocorrect, when you're speech to texting it's like it thankfully now knows, because I've typed it enough times to give me the option to correct it to that.
Yeah.
Case in point.
Yeah.
Terrible search engine optimization.
Exactly. I don't know how anybody has ever found us, truly.
What is the worst band name of a project you've been involved in?
Well, the the band that I was a part of for a long time, which, believe it or not, I'm not just saying this. We were actually very, very good. I was in a band called Jack's Mom for years.
But the name, you're
Yeah, that was like my baby. Like and we just hilariously were just like, what the fuck's up, everybody? We're Jack's Mom. Like, it was just, I don't know. People like, we had shirts that said Jack's Mom. Yeah, I know, exactly. But what's funny is like that. I actually think First to 11 would probably agree. Like, that band was pretty sick, and it was just, that was Jack's Mom. I mean, I was in it when I was like 13, you know what I mean? But like, still, it was cool.
I joined a band way late to the game. This is the band that we did a lot of Warped Tour with, and the terrible name we were given, or that I was blessed with inheriting, was the Groundbreaking Ceremony. So you have to like search for that. Is one, like, good luck finding, narrowing yourself into any. There's groundbreaking ceremonies for all kinds of things. So you duck out later, Tim. Thank you, brother.
See you later.
Yeah, like, you just don't have any means of basically being able to like get your artistry, your name found. So you're just kind of like, shit out of luck. Just is what it is. But I mean, testament to the fact that you guys took First to 11 into a position where you could actually like.
People can find us. Yeah, I know.
That's a fucking uphill battle, and that's a slayed uphill battle.
Yeah.
And you do it through that persistence and consistency, man. Like, it's hard to not know First to 11 if there are no less than how many. I bet there's like, you have to be 1,000 videos. There have to be.
First to 11? I don't know how many there are, actually.
I would not be surprised if there were like 500, 600 videos on your guys' channel. Like,
I can't even tell you. How'd you get relic hearts?
So this is the one that I get. I was on a plane coming back from the UK on a tour, and we were just demoing. We had like 2 or 3 demos. We didn't have an idea for anything yet, but we had been writing music, and that was largely because I had a manager that we talked to. We showed him like our last record as the Groundbreaking Ceremony, and he was like, yeah, like, this is like good, but like, it's, it's nothing. I no offense, he just gave me like a harsh criticism, like, this just isn't that special. This has already been done. Like, what are you doing that kind of separates you? What's your guys' narrative? And he was like, if I were you, I would ditch this. We did catering for Warped Tour, and we were supposed to, there's always like the unspoken rule was you would do like a year of catering or 2 years of catering, and then they would give you a gimme year where you would go and you would be on the tour, and you'd be maybe on like the Kevin Says stage or a better stage or something instead of the Ernie Ball one. And we didn't get the call back to do it. And like, we lost like 2 vehicles on the tour, and, bled for this, production company. And it could have just been as simple as like, we didn't orchestrate our emails soon enough, or, whatever. It wasn't like there was any ill feelings about it. I had some of the best touring memories of my life were on every one of those Warped Tours. And so I had no regrets or anything about that. I was never like felt slighted or anything. I was just like, what are we not doing that's getting us to where we want to go? So we just started writing that winter. We wrote for like a year, and then I'm coming back from a tour in Europe or from the UK, and on the plane I watched the movie Skyfall. It's a James Bond movie. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
And in this movie, the whole premise of the movie is that spies and that espionage kind of aspect of things is outdated. So like, you don't need that when you've got drones and like satellite surveillance technology. Like, what is the point of having this if we can get all the same information a different way or a better way without less resources or whatever being used? And so M, who is the one who distributes the agents into their missions or whatever, she is in a courtroom hearing where she has to kind of brief the prime minister after like the building got blown up. And she says something about how her husband, maybe it rubbed off on her because her husband was a big fan of poetry. And so she says, I'm reminded of this quote by Lord Alfred Tennyson. And so the poem is Ulysses. And the line that she's reading at the end of it really spoke to me, and I was just listening on shitty headphones on the airplane, so I heard it wrong. And so the quote is, though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that which strength... Oh, shit. What is it? I want to get this right, because if I want the audio clip for it, I want to use it. Okay, so though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved heaven and earth, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. And I heard heroic hearts wrong, which if I were smart, I would have fucking kept that because it had the alliteration, and I'm a fucking sucker for alliteration. HH, that would have been so sick. The logos would have been so sick. Yeah. But I heard her relic hearts, as if she was maybe referring to the queen.
Yeah.
And I just like the term relic hearts. I was like, fuck, that's how I feel. Because we had grown up in this pop punk metalcore community of like the Warped Tour scene. And we were maybe like too old to be doing pop punk or pop rock or whatever that means, right? I don't know. But what I looked at it was like, we as individuals are ingratiated enough to be able to say we are a part of the culture because we grew up in it. So like Nick, I remember him going to like the Drive-Thru Invasion tour, and Census Fail was you Census Fail
Love
fan?
Census Fail.
So they were writing, I want to say, what is like one of their, give me one of their
Get Lost, Find Yourself. Oh, like records or?
Yeah, it was off of the record.
I mean, Can't Be Saved off Get Lost, Find Yourself.
I want to say it might have been, actually.
The Red Eye
one. It may have been Can't Be Saved. Or it might have been Bite to Break Skin, actually.
It's a good one.
And Buddy was like writing that in front of a venue that's not there anymore downtown, but called the Crowbar. Like he was like in the process of writing it or something like that. There was some sort of a story that he had. I'll have to have him come on the podcast and tell it. But like Nick was a big Plain White. He's Drive-Thru Records fan. And I don't know if you ever met Richard Raines or not. He's one of the owners of Drive-Thru Records. They don't do the record label anymore, but they do a management company. And so we had interactions with Richard when we were trying to get him to manage us, and we had or sign us to Drive-Thru, and maybe because Drive-Thru might be doing like a resurgence thing. And so we just had like all these connections to music in a very visceral way, but we felt like we were maybe we were like the older brothers of the community. It felt like we weren't like young enough to be considered like who would be the stars or whatever, even though I'm like the same age as Alex from All Time Low or whatever it is. And I just remember being like, relic hearts, that's how we feel, because we feel like at some point as music progresses and evolves, we get these like cyclical kind of natures of things. Like I think a couple years ago we started to see grunge kind of make its way into metalcore in a very interesting way, fuzz pedals basically. And I remember being like, that's really cool that's kind of cyclically turning around, and new metal's kind of coming back a little bit. And this is really interesting to see these things that I grew up in high school listening to coming back around, and the things that were already basically I was indoctrinated by. Like I grew up listening to Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit and The Used and Taking Back Sunday and
Limp Bizkit.
Yeah, dude, all day. Significant Other was a huge record for me in my life. And so Korn, Slipknot, Mudvayne, Trapped, like all these like artists that were like just big back then. And we're actually playing the show this upcoming Wednesday with Head PE, which is a band I used to listen to in high school a lot, and a band called Tantric, and a band called Edema, whom I think is like the brother from Jonathan Davis from Korn's band or something like that. And so in doing and thinking of Relic Hearts, I was like, yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Like we are these kind of like old heads in the scene, but we have these hearts that are literally going to have to be a part of the culture moving forward, because you're going to want the artists that are making music to be the fans of the music they're making, and not making music that they're making because that's what the trend or the fad. And you can tell where the passions really are whenever you hear a song come out. Like that's a thing that is still kind of intrinsically baked into the observation of the fan as a fan perspective. That's
such a weird one. Like, I don't know. I feel like I can kind of sniff out like as you put it, like songs that people are creating because they're fans of, or songs people are creating to create it or to, I don't know, be famous or something. I don't know. I feel like I can sniff that stuff out usually. And I think that actually the internet kind of can too. Like I think a lot of people I've seen on TikTok, if somebody posts something and then the comments are very one-sided, like, whoa, dude, what are you? I'm like, okay, well, they kind of caught it because that looks like that person is just trying to make a buck or whatever or something. But dude, I'm not, obviously I'm going to not name this. Actually, I don't even remember what the artist's name is, so I literally can't. But I saw something posted the other day, maybe, no, it was probably a couple weeks ago. This artist put out like a video on TikTok of, like their music video or something. And like, I would personally, just who I am, I would never leave any sort of like disrespectful or critical comment. I usually am just kind of like a spectator looking at stuff. I'm not really commenting on stuff.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that if I don't have anything constructive to say, I'm not going to like...
Oh, exactly.
If somebody wants criticism, I'll give it to them. But like, I'm not going to be... You don't have to be a dickhead about it. Just because you know the truth is how you feel doesn't mean you have to exert it that way.
Well, also, like... I mean, I don't want people to laugh at me for saying this, but like, who am I to ever pass that kind of criticism? So anyway, I'm looking at the comments, and it's very one-sided. It's very like, this is not it. Like, hey, maybe go back to the drawing board. And I was like, they didn't put it that nicely. It's TikTok. Right. But I was just I was like, okay, well, no, we'll see what happens. Like any press is good press, whatever. And then I seriously, like, I think I might have sent it to somebody in First 11. And I was like, man, like, is this the direction music's heading kind of? And they're like, yeah, it's not. Anyway, our label, or like part of the like umbrella of our label, there's many different labels or whatever, was like now announcing to our team this new thing. And I wasn't frustrated at all, but I truly was like, wow, that's really interesting. It's like, I thought that the internet had kind of made up its mind that they were like, I think this guy is, or this artist or whatever, this band, I think this band is trying to like, kind of like get on the trends, make a quick buck, whatever. I was like, they were so many comments about like these lyrics are so substanceless, like this is so whatever. And then I was like, but that's weird because they just got signed to a label that, you know, they're a pretty legit label. I'm like, I really was left scratching my head being like, it's weird. Like they nailed the social media. Like we talked, they had all these boxes checked of like, they can do a million things that a label wants. They're just like, you guys just, we're going to sign you. You just do your thing. Like you already have all the team there. But I was like, they don't, like the public perception of this group was that like people really didn't like them. And they still were willing to like overlook that, I guess, and just be like, we don't even care. Like we can, I mean, maybe it's kind of like a Nickelback thing where they're just like, look, eventually people are going to like open their eyes and be really into this.
Yeah, they're going to realize that you guys are really good.
Yeah.
Like and they started as a cover band. Like a lot of people don't know that. They were like,
I didn't know that.
They started as a cover band and then eventually got to break into that world. So it's really interesting to think that, you know, yeah, in high school, it was like if you listen to Nickelback, you got made fun of, but they have like one of the quintessential soundtrack scores to the end of the Spider-Man movie. Mm-hmm. And I remember being like, I didn't love that song. But then when their next album came out, and they've got some rippers, dude. Their the guitar tones are insane. The drums sound fucking awesome. My friend Carrie Tedesco was their hospitality manager. And so she invited us to come see them in Pittsburgh. And so we did like a band field trip where we went and saw Nickelback and got to meet him afterwards. And it was a total trip. Like they were fucking so great live. The live production looked awesome. And I was like, yeah, people talk shit on these guys, but this is a vibe. Like if you're getting ready to go drinking with your boys on a weekend, like this is a song.
Well, now it's awesome. Now it's awesome to like them. You know what I mean? And like that's, you know, that's just how the internet goes. But I think the main point is I was just like, man, like even that is okay to be like overlooked for trying to be like a successful artist or something. Like we've even played festivals with people that are, like they're like YouTubers, not music YouTubers. They're like commentators or something. And they're just like, we're like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, I didn't know that you play music. And they're like, we don't play music. Like, this is our first show. Like, we just kind of had this song like given to us. And they're like, this is your song, go perform it. And like, I really don't want to become like an old head that's just like, how is what? But at the same time, yeah, it goes against my intuition. Cause I'm just like, wait a minute. Like I'm
a beneficiary of this.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm just like, wait, I benefit from this too. But then I'm like, but I guess I also still took the time to, you know, learn my instrument or do whatever. I'm like, how much of this matters and how much is that going to really not matter?
Well, think about like AI making its way into songwriting right now. And not even just from the lyric perspective of ChatGPT, but like the Nirvana songs that they made that were basically an amalgam of a bunch of different analysis of a bunch of different Nirvana songs. And they created a new song using AI and you could see it being on Nevermind or like.
Was it good? I didn't hear it.
It's not terrible, but you can hear how it's not perfect, but it's new. So it's not going to be good.
Give it a couple of years. And
yeah, where we're going to be in a decade is going to be somewhere totally different. And I think it's just like the calculator, right? Like parents didn't want, or teachers didn't want their kids having calculators in school. You're going to need to learn how to do this by hand. Why the fuck would we do that?
Wow, that's a great example. I've never even thought about that.
It's a perfect parallel because the immediate thing is you think, oh, well, if they have calculators, they're not learning how to do the math. Well, we've decided as a collective society, why the fuck would we want to try to make ourselves only be able to do all of these numbers when really it's equation types that find us the answers we need. Mm-hmm. And so if you're a math major, you're really just learning how to kind of assemble the universe in that sort of mathematical sense. But the reality is, why we wouldn't not give somebody who's like a mathematician or going for their PhD a fucking calculator.
Oh yeah, I know. Oh my gosh, I've taken so many you know, exams like in university or whatever for math exams, and I'll just sit there with my calculator and be like 16 times 2. Okay, great. And then go back like stupid stuff where I'm like, wow, if I didn't have this, I'd be a nervous wreck.
Yeah, I'm decently good at like simple math because of years of serving and bartending. So like I can make change on a whim because I know how to do that.
That makes sense.
And I also simplified it. Like if a guest check was like $42.12 or whatever, they're getting $8 back. I don't want to give you 88 cents or whatever it is to do that. And the fact that I made those numbers up and knew it was 88 cents to give them on top of the whatever change was like, they're just getting 8 bones.
Yeah.
And then hopefully they're like, oh, he didn't care about the change. I would rather them take it than me have to deal with a pocket full of change at the end of the evening. That was my bottom line to it. And so that is the way we're doing everything. We're digesting media that way. We're thinking about how we assemble, you know, like if you want to do a screenplay, you can be like, hey, this book I really like growing up. Go to ChatGPT, write a, 10 episode TV screenplay for Where the Sidewalk Ends,
Sure.
like whatever it is. And it'll give it to you. And it may not be great, but it may give you a lot of really good bullet points that you want to start from and then edit and digest from there.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool. It's so scary though too. Not scary, but it's like, I don't know, like Brave New World's scary. Yeah.
And so like it'll never replace what we would do with you might be able to fool people at a certain degree. And as the technology gets better, like, yeah, I'll be able to write a song that sounds just like Taylor Swift wrote it for my band and do it in my voice. And maybe it'll do well, maybe it won't. Right. But the reality is eventually the equilibrium, the pendulum swing for that is, oh, we got this tool and everybody's going to cheat and make music really quickly. And maybe you can get AI to make your visuals too. So now you don't even have to literally show up and do anything other than like maybe record your vocals if you want to, if you haven't sampled your voice or whatever,
yeah.
And so, but the pendulum swinging back is we'll say, okay, like that's great. And we'll go through a phase of that. But the reality is like we enjoy the human element to music. And we kind of got trained over years to have like ears for perfectly quantized drums and perfectly on the one instrumentation. But if you listen to music from like the 60s and 70s, what we liked about a lot of what we now consider classic rock or old rock or whatever was how it wasn't necessarily perfect. And some things weren't tracked to a metronome. And so there's no way to kind of like regulate it to a specific tempo because it wasn't played like that. It was done Beatles style where everybody had panels between them and headphones on and everybody was doing group harmonies around one microphone.
I know.
It's like we would never think to do that specifically now, but we're seeing a subculture of artists that are like indie and very DIY that are re-implementing those things and bringing them back. And then we're seeing it in an elevated production sense. And now we're like, oh, this feels like something new, even though it's very familiar to us out of the gate.
Dude, it's crazy to think about the pendulum swinging, like the pendulum swinging back right now. I guess you'd say right now, like people being like, I want to do like 90s shoegaze stuff. Like, maybe like, it's somebody, in your position would probably be like, wow, that's cool. Like the pendulum is swinging back to like what I grew up on.
Right.
And it's crazy that when the pendulum is going to go so far this way and come back, like when the next generation is talking about like, wow, that's so vintage. They're using ChatGPT to write lyrics.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. And we can't perceive it like that because we're in the middle of it as it's developing.
As it's new, as we're on this side.
We can't see what the right side of history is as much as we would like to. I think we have a good inclination to go towards what we think will be the betterment for, artists and for whatever. But there's like a lot of things we got to address right now. Like Spotify doesn't really generate a lot of revenue in terms of profit. Like it actually loses money most years and they're barely paying artists. So how do we say that that's a sustainable system if this, CEO is making this amount and all the people underneath them are getting bonuses and doing this, but the artists are making 0.000325 cents per stream and I have to make, 1,000. It's like there's no concept of the way when we sold CDs, the inflation has not kept up with streaming, right? So like when you sold a $5 CD that was an EP or whatever on Warped Tour, I made, I bought so many of them that they were a quarter a CD. So $4.75 of that was pocket change. How much does one person have to stream my album for me to make that same $5? That's nowhere near the same. And so it's devalued art as a whole. And the problem is given we've also gotten this space where there's so much artistry out there that it is saturated and it is kind of difficult to break through. But you can do it if you're consistent. You have to be the one you always have to show up and be ringing the doorbell trying to sell the Girl Scout cookies. Like if you don't ring the doorbell, you can't get a yes. So you just got to show up with the new song. You guys do it every week. And then you added in the acoustic stuff and then you do your own stuff. So as you are individually all building your own brands and doing your own thing, you're contributing to the collective as well, because then they know that you're a part of that. So each of you in your own little field, creating and thinking and ideating and doing is basically also creating individually to add to the sum of the collective together.
So do you think, this is kind of a cynical question, but I'm just truly curious to see what you think about this. Like, do you think that the low or the payment rate for artists on Spotify, is it all intentional in the sense that it's so oversaturated now that do you think that it's almost like a weird kind of like poking back at like, look, if anybody can put it out there, like, you know, we're only going to offer you this much. Do you think that there's any sort of like conscious stream of thought through that? Or, well, I guess more to that point being like, well, also, you're always going to get compounding residuals on your art. It's not like we're giving you like a flat fee every time. So if you're completely compounding this stuff, like, yeah, it's not going to be like a ridiculous amount of money. Do you think that that's like a conscious effort by like Spotify or the streaming platforms to be like, look, this is what we can do?
I think it's an infrastructure that when they set it up, they were like, this is going to be manageable because it's realistic because we have operating costs, right? But they exceed their operating costs whenever they're generating like tens of millions of dollars as individuals. And I don't know how big Spotify is specifically as a company, but I'm a big advocate for the $5 CD rule. If you can get it to the point where, okay, what is the average number of times that a person listens to a CD that they discover that they like? Start that as your baseline. If that's like, you know, they're going to listen to that whole CD through. People don't really listen to whole records in a row anymore. It's a very much so a singles market. But if like, okay, so we say that's 5 singles. So of those 5 singles on that EP, how many people or that full length or whatever, how many people listen to that song either the whole way through, or how many that needs to be taken into account. If they're not listening to all the songs and they're only listening to like maybe 4 and 6 go really kind of undiscovered, then the number of plays that that's going to get from that person over the lifetime of that CD as it comes out. Like think about it in terms of their lifetime. Now think of that in terms of the individual listener on Spotify. Shouldn't the stream be commensurate to that amount or closer to that amount so that we could get it to, well, obviously that's not sustainable. If you have even 100 fans that would maybe buy like, you know, however many monthly listeners you guys have, probably a decent number. If every one of those counted as like a $5 CD buy, you guys are loaded really quickly. But does that money come out of Spotify? Well, how easy is it to get to 250,000 or 1 million monthly listeners or whatever? It's not very easy. And you have to do it. You can only achieve it through the consistency and constant release schedule. Like you said, a single a month, like that's a lot. And so it's not that it's a lot, it's that it doesn't leave a lot of room for the period to sit in the creative space to continue to add to something. Or, you know, it makes it much more like everything has to be turnkey. We have to kind of have a template set up. We got to be able to get through this and into the lyric writing. And I want the song done by next Friday. Like hard deadlines for a creative process is always something that people are going to struggle with because it's like, oh, I feel like I have to get it done by then. But I think from the artist perspective, if you're an artist and you're constantly creating anyway, that deadline was coming whether you gave it the deadline or not. Like you would, if you're somebody who writes all the time, you're not trying to stay on one song forever either. Like you're trying to move on to the next one that moves you in this week and with whatever mood you're in. So I just feel like it's got to get better. It certainly can't stay where it's at because it's not helping. It's not, if they doubled it, that alone would already help a lot of artists. And it would help us. Like I look at what our monthly revenue streams are that we get for our royalties every month. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like it pays for every bill that the band has. And we have extra to put in to let's stock up and save up for like advertising or pushing a new single or whatever. Great. What if that was double the amount? Well, could you go to 0.00625 cents per stream and, you know, and could it come up even incrementally a little bit more? Could it quadruple? Okay. So that's what's 0.012 or whatever, or 0012. So there we're at like a thousandth of a cent. Okay, well now it's like, okay, now 1,000 streams gets me a little bit closer to, you know, like when you're looking at the numbers of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of monthly listeners, how many million streams are on your top Spotify 10 tracks or whatever. Now that amount could actually put some substantial money into your pocket that most of us are just, if they were smart, they would realize they're throttling the people that are investing in their platform. You're an artist and you're creating, you know, you want to be on Spotify, you know, you want to be on YouTube, you know, you want to be in Apple Music, Deezer, all these million other platforms that you want to exist on. So why wouldn't they understand that, oh, if they get a little bit more money, it's not even 4 times as much as like not that much given how much those streams are actually generating for them on their back end, right? So it's like, yeah, they'll maybe profit a little bit less, maybe take a little bit of a pay cut to see this company thrive. And what you'll do is you'll empower your artists to be able to contribute in a way that is, one, not just more meaningful, but more sustainable. Because then the artist can sustain. Some artists just quit. They give up after a while because they're like, I can't make money doing this. That's a real argument that it needs to be addressed. And by pretending it doesn't exist or that they're too weak to make it happen, it's like, I know some super talented musicians that have families. They're married. They have kids. They want to do it, but it just doesn't offer them the ability to make them feel valued for the time that they put into it. And they're allowed to determine that for themselves.
Yeah. Well, I'm not Spotify, but I would say if I'm guessing, It'd probably be because they're much more interested in like listener analytics than like artist analytics.
Right, exactly.
Which like
they're looking at what the listeners are trending to do.
Yeah, and so like if they can, again, all speculation, but if they're able to basically satisfy their listeners with like their subscription fees or whatever, and then sign like privatized contracts with like artists, like obviously like the big one that everyone's talking about was like the Joe Rogan one or whatever.
Yeah, it was like 200 million, 500 million. I remember a couple hundred
something
million.
great, yeah, something. But if they can basically like solidify those things and just say like, okay, well, we've made the listeners happy and we've basically like had some sort of like private thing with these artists, then it doesn't really matter for them if they get like a lot of new artists. It mostly just matters because now new artists that are getting bigger are going to be like, well, we want to be where the listeners are, and Spotify's taking care of the listeners, so they're going to want to go there.
Yeah, did you see the new Spotify release features that they added just recently?
No, what's that?
So there's the new updates are going to have like clips, like you'll be able to attach clips to your song so that people can, like, this is going to be a thing that if you guys capitalize on early, is going to fucking bankroll you for the next 10 years, because they're implementing it in a way where, yeah, you'll be able to put a video clip attached to something almost like it's commentary for a thing. How hard is it to sit down and talk about a cover you did and why you chose to do it as a group?
So I'm sorry, you're saying it's like an actual, like, it's like a video? Like, because there are canvases.
Yeah, Canvas is already a thing. This one is, I'm going to pull it up because it's worth pulling up specifically on this bad boy. Alex on TikTok, I think is her name.
Musicians, here's how to get 50 solid performance.
Nope, that's not it. I got to find it. It's so worth pulling up because I was like, Atlanta Music. This is who it is.
Okay, I just got off a call with Spotify's head of industry and artist partnerships, and they just gave me the tea of what is going down with the Spotify update. Lucky for you, I took loads of fucking notes. Let's get into it. We're going to break down 3 main things in this video: countdown pages, clips, and discovery mode. All of this stuff is coming out for you guys, so it's really, really important that you kind of understand what is going on with Spotify and how you can optimize it to do better with your releases. So, number 1, countdown pages. Countdown pages are going to include 5 things. Pre-saves for the album, where you can preview the track list for the album, pre-order new merch, watch video clips, we'll get on to that in a minute.
You gotta send this to me.
You can see the timer counting down until the album's released. So after you set up and publish the countdown page, your fans will automatically be notified that you have set up the campaign and to go and pre-save it. When they go pre-save your release, Spotify then adds your music once released to their library automatically. So the entire funnel should now be inbuilt within the app and actually making the whole experience
It's like YouTube.
Music a lot nicer for artists and for fans. So that's a huge win. At the moment, Countdown is only available in 17 markets. It's getting rolled out with time. The markets in Europe are UK, Spain, Germany, France, Italy, Sweden, and Netherlands. Number 2 is clips. So clips are going to be under 30-second videos and you upload them through Spotify for Artists. But Spotify tell me that their main focus is getting fans to engage and land on your profile to stream your music. So they're not really fussed about getting shares or likes. They don't want people passively scrolling the feed. They're pushing clips out in hopes that fans click onto your artist profile via clips. So they're driving it as like a discovery and engagement tool. They're really only fussed about watch time and views. Number 3 is discovery mode. Discovery mode is essentially a campaign that you can set up in Spotify for Artists, and it's where you agree to have your song pushed out to listeners in discovery mode. So using features like radio or DJ or autoplay recommended features. Also, yes, there is no upfront fee to pay for the discovery mode campaign, but Spotify will be taking a commission. You do have to hit a few key metrics to be eligible for discovery mode. That is over 25k monthly listeners. The track has to have been released on Spotify for at least 30 days, and the track has to be streamed in radio or autoplay in the last 7 days. You've also got to be distributing through DistroKid, CD Baby, Stem, Venice Music, and Vidia. I haven't even heard of the last one, but I hope that all makes sense. I've ran through that, like I said, loads of notes, so if you want me to go do part 2...
Yeah, so like that, like the clips aspect of that is going to be really interesting. They're trying to push it as sort of like a means of getting engagement and things like that up for individual artists. So to not capitalize on utilizing that feature when it comes out I don't know if it'll be adopted permanently, right? It could tank. It might not do as well as they think it is because people may not go to Spotify to use it like that. Like maybe people aren't spending time on the Spotify app. They just play their music and then put their phone in their pocket and go to the gym or, drive in the car or whatever.
The first thing that comes to mind, and this is not me saying that I think it's not going to work, but I think about how like we've gotten one of the big changes that we made, like I want to say it's now a couple of years ago, is some fans reached out and they were like, we really dislike that there's an intro before your songs on YouTube. We'd have like the first 211 show, whatever.
Yep.
There's like, we just wanted to just like, we have YouTube Premium and we just want it to be where like it just song. Like we even at one point were like, should we not even have like an outro or something? Cause it's like interrupting like streaming songs for people who just like put their phone in their pocket, headphones, and they go to work.
Yeah. If they use YouTube Music, then that affects them that way.
Yeah. So I just wonder with like that clips thing, if people are going to be like, I don't want to hear this stuff like before this, you know what I mean?
Right. And I don't know if it's going to be, it seems like it's going to be a completely separate thing. Like you're going to go to clips from artists, you'll be able to watch those and they're going to push those out. And that's hopefully, they're hoping that will lead to click through to get them to your artist page.
Sure.
And so if that's going to be this new means of discovery and engagement for you on Spotify, you'll want to capitalize on it just to make sure you're getting whoever is there into that space over to you. So it's interesting. Like, look, like you get comfortable, right? This is a case in point. You guys are a large band. And in terms of the YouTube space and the Spotify space, like there's revenue being generated there. So to not adopt this new thing could be detrimental to you, or it could be extremely empowering if you're able to, implement an extra angle of practice, but the industry changed on us. Like it's this major platform is altering things in a way that is now going to affect the way
it's like TikTok for Spotify.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's because they got to answer that TikTok's trying to come up with a music platform. And I think them getting clamped down with like Congress and everything, and maybe the potential TikTok ban might be a part of why they're maybe not emphasizing or focusing on it right now. This could be, a lot of money could be being dumped into legal, for example. But interesting how it's changing.
I feel like, one, it is such a flex when a social media comes out with a feature that everybody adopts, like
and loves.
For Snapchat, like stories, then Instagram stories, then YouTube, then what? I'm just like, wow, that's more power to them. They got that shit done,
right?
But then also like TikTok with now this like kind of like shorter form scrolling vertically, whatever. I'm like, wow, everybody picked that up. Good for them. Also, am I crazy, or do I hear like every other week that there's going to be like a TikTok ban or something? And
that's how I felt too. I'm like, I think at this point it's it's almost like the banks. They're too big to fail. Like it's like 160 million Americans are on it. That's a large portion of us that agree that we like it. And I think the disposition that they kind of set themselves up with is that a lot of people thought it was like an app where teens got on to like do these dances or whatever. And so they were like, oh, I'm not getting on TikTok for this, that, and the other thing. Meanwhile, you can go in there and find really engaging rhetoric around, like I found an ADHD therapist who's like this older guy who talks about a lot of the clients that he deals with as a therapist that have ADHD and what he helps them implement as sort of like systems of practices that help them kind of get their lives together. It's difficult when you're neurodivergent to deal with things because you think that you're normal. Meanwhile, you're like, oh, not everybody feels like this like raging sense of rejection sensitivity that I suffer from. Like that's a thing. And if you don't know that that's a thing, you don't know how to kind of mitigate the thing you're dealing with as a person. So you got to be aware of it to even be able to address it. And so I learned a lot from just like him discussing that. And I don't know why that started dumping onto my feed, but clearly the algorithm fucking knows me. And I remember being like, this is really cool. And so when you can have good discourse taking place, it's like educational. Another one, like there's a way where you can use a hammer to put a nail into place and press down on it using a feature that's on the back of a hammer. And then you can hit it with the hammer and it's good to go. You saw that?
I've seen those videos, yeah.
Case in point, well, I tinker constantly. I built this entire set. I built the back. This is like reclaimed pallet wood that I found from a guy, and I ran through a planer to kind of sand it off and get it cleaned up. And I didn't varnish it, but I built the frame and I built these little partitions because I was like, I want to have a little backsplash that looks nice.
Yeah.
I got that the other day.
Man, I'm jealous. When you're done reading this, let me know.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll come take it. But I think that like there's lots of things on TikTok that are like extremely inspiring to me. And I think the only thing that I keep coming back to is I'm like, I wonder if it's going to end up being one of those situations where like, oh, everybody in the class gets a piece of candy corn, but if you take two, then I'm going to shut this down and nobody can have any. So the kids who take one are like, great. And then one kid ruins it for everybody. Like, I wonder if we're just going to run into a situation now where like, great, these musicians are getting off the ground. Great. Now I know how to refurbish this thing or whatever, or now I have this following and I can monetize. And then it's just, it might go too far in one direction and they're just going to be like, nobody can have this anymore. Like, sorry guys.
Yeah.
I just wonder.
That happens, right? Like if the actual platform itself succumbs for whatever reason, you know, the TikTok ban comes real and it drops off. It's a shame, right? Because there's a lot of creators that didn't find their voice until they were on that app and realized that the content format had shifted from between what they thought they needed to be with like Matt Pat with like food theory and style theory. And like they, you know, I watch all of his videos that I think are interesting because I'm like, I love watching his breakdown, the scientific analysis, like sometimes like the individual small case studies that they do. But when you have to think about it in terms of a script that you have to read and there's got to be a lot of animation and text, you're like, I don't even know where to begin with that. Like, I'm not going to start that. But when you can see it being something that's just somebody conversationally able to break down something that they read, and like that person, they do it where they break down the Spotify updates where she gets off the phone with the dude who's in charge of what most artists are trying to die to figure out. Like, she's not gatekeeping. She's saying like, here's what you should know about these things that are coming out and how they're kind of what their intended purpose is. And we don't know how that'll actually play out, but you should know what the intended purpose is so you can kind of start figuring out how to navigate it. And in doing that, I learned a lot as an artist just from watching it. I was like, okay, I gotta be mindful that I'm gonna have to mix that into my workflow. Yeah,
I know. I mean, like the landscape's always changing, and I don't know. I think what'll be more interesting to see is like people who grew up with TikTok and people who, like you and I, did not grow up with TikTok, were kind of beneficiaries. So I feel like maybe there's a level of like responsibility that's a little bit built into us, and maybe I'm totally talking out of my ass right now, but I feel like it's like, I don't know, maybe you tell me, like, do you feel like you know how to be like, wow, that's not good content for me to see, or being, wow, I've been on this way too long, I'm going to put my phone down? Like, do you feel like you have good control kind of over that?
Of course not. I'm neurodivergent. If I fucking get on TikTok, I can lose a whole day if I'm trying to get shit done, if I just stay on it. So, but the discipline in me says like, okay, all right, I got to cut this off. So I'm good at doing it. I'm not good at wanting to do it. Like, it's literally a learned behavior that I have to implement, cutting my own arm off so that I don't continue to sit there and scroll.
Yeah.
Cause I could stay up all night. I love learning. There's one of the Hook Theory is one of the TikToks that I follow, and they break down the progression patterns of like the top 40 Billboard songs or whatever. And so you see like Ed Sheeran's like, wow, how does that have that many? That's the progression for that song.
Yeah.
And like
1645, 1645.
Right. But like, yeah, exactly. So when you're watching it, you're like, huh. And then as an artist, you could be like, okay, well, obviously there's, you know, if this is the most popular chord progression, what would be the song that I would write if I did that? And how do I make it not sound like this one? You guys just did Separate Ways. I saw you released. That is like one of my all-time favorite songs of all time when I was a kid growing up. And I can't remember what movie that was on the soundtrack for, but it was like at this Paramount moment in the movie where you were ready to connect to this song. It's literally the same way Kate Bush's Run
Up the Hill.
Yeah, Running Up the Hill. Like that song, when it drops in Stranger Things, you're like, you kind of hear it in the background. They tease it where she's listening to it on headphones and you don't really hear what she's listening to. But then they give you a scene where you hear the music and you feel the vibe, and visually what you're looking at is that thing, and you're in the middle of the story you're already connected to. So it's no wonder why all of those things of being part of the recipe lend to this amazing dessert happening of, you know, the resurgence of that song charting on the billboards, topping out on Spotify, and, you know, her interviews afterwards were like super humble. She was like, it's so great to think that the people have discovered this song because of the Duffer Brothers putting it in their show. And so in the regards that you can see how it could happen to anybody at any time, you could have a very shit success go at trying to make your music career successful and then dip out. And then this song 20, 30 years later comes back and it's put into this. You're like,
dude, I just imagine she just like woke up and like, you know, I mean, by the way, I'm not saying that she was not like successful beforehand, but I'm saying, but I'm saying it's probably funny that she was just like kind of sitting there with like,
that wasn't her most popular song back then.
Yeah, I know. But like predictable kind of like quarterly checks or whatever. And then she just wakes up and someone's like,
yo, you're back. You're
gonna want to see this again. And she's just like, great, I'll go buy a new Bugatti. Like, that sounds awesome.
Classic. Yeah. And I'm not mad at, like, I'm not a gatekeeper for success. Like, I think for me, I try to adopt this attitude that everybody's at their own part in their artist journey. So a lot of the local musicians to me for a while, and I can walk you around to like all dozen of them that were like, how do you do this? Like, they have questions, like they want to grow and they want to expand. And to me, that is the only barrier for entry, is being willing to ask the question, how do I accomplish this thing that I'm setting out to do, that I see that you're doing not how I would do it, but maybe to a degree of what I would want to do. And if you can get people past that hump of like, I don't know how to start, so I can't begin.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, dude, I was when we were just recently on tour, we were at like a bowling Disney night or something, and
This is in Orlando?
No, in was it in Charlotte or something? I can't remember.
North Carolina?
Yeah, I think so. But it was like a bowling Disney night, so there was like a DJ on stage, and like people were going crazy. They were buying so much merch, and I was talking to one of the guys in First 11 about it, and I was talking to Ryan, and I was just like, you know, I was like, am I old, or is like this just like kind of hard to imagine this many people like going crazy for this? And he was like, I know, I'm trying to figure out how I feel about it too, because
Feel about what? The Disney bowling thing? Or?
sorry, the DJ set that was happening, because the DJs were just killing it, like raking in, but they weren't like DJs that you'd think of, you know, I don't know, like they weren't like Skrillex or Diplo or something where they were like
EDM.
Yeah, sure. They were like, I mean, I was side stage, and they were like literally just like Spotify playlist, like play, skip, no like crossfades or anything. And I was just like, well, it took people a long time to warm up to DJ. So I was like, I'm not going to be the guy that's like cynical of that. But I was like, why does this give me this weird feeling inside? I'm like,
I could do this.
Yeah. But then I was like, you know what? Like, we make money doing covers, and I'm sure we were in the exact same position as these people. Where
Some people look at like, how are they making money just covering these songs and putting them out?
I know, they're just like, where's like the artistry or whatever. So I had to just talk with myself and be like, shit, like don't think about it like that. Like think about it like in the way that they thought of something smarter and faster and before you.
A lot of emo nights do that. They get together. It's like if you're not a part of like the main emo night branch, whatever that is, like there's one that's I think coming to State College pretty soon. And I went to one maybe last February. It was like a Valentine's Day massacre one. And I went out with this big fur coat. I just went out eyeliner on just to go out and just be a fucking dickhead and have fun and like, you know, whatever. And the music they're playing, they've got like a live band that's on stage. It's like playing guitar. Nobody's drumming, but they're like playing live guitar and stuff. But it's mostly just a Spotify playlist of all of you could probably find that playlist like Emo's Underground or Emo hit classics or whatever the fuck. And you're going to be able to hit play. And then you don't even, if you do the crossfade, you don't have to do anything. You set it and forget it, you know, and just let it go. And so that's that thing where it's like, you can't claim to know who your audience really is or what an audience for something really is. Cause we have our own personal bias of like, I would never do that. But I knew a buddy of mine who started a venue off of the back of money that he made DJing, doing gigs where he was just showing up and doing that, playing shit off. I don't think it was Spotify. I think he actually like had all the music downloaded at the time or whatever. But yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a Winamp or an iTunes playlist. Like he just made a playlist and then let it play. And he did these shows in St. Louis. They were called Count It. And people would just get together to listen to all their favorite tunes. And like the dudes in Story of the Year would come because they were from St. Louis. So it's like you just have like this good culture. And if you build it, it doesn't matter if you saw how it could be built. It matters that it got built and why it's being successful. Yeah,
I know. And no, you're totally right. I mean, like they just, whether they thought they were like, ooh, there's a market for this, or they were just like, I just want to go be a DJ.
Right.
It worked for them. And I don't know if this is controversial, by the way, but like we played a small stage on Emo Night and in LA, and I was like, wow, this is not what I actually really.
I saw the pictures. This is not what the pictures look like.
Well, I mostly was just, so there wasn't a live band on the main stage, which I think is a big part of it.
Where was it at?
Oh my gosh.
The Roxy?
I know it was not the Roxy.
That's like one of my favorite places on the Strip.
Yeah, we played Roxy. It was cool.
That's a cool little stage.
Okay, so take that into account. There was not a live band on the main stage, which probably has a lot to do with how I feel about it. But I was like, why would anybody pay to go to this? I don't know why. In my head, though, for some reason, I was just like they invited some like CD
How are you like the oldest 22-year-old I've ever met in Seoul? You were like, nah, I'm ready. You came into town last night. You're like, nah, man, I'm an old man. I go to bed at a decent hour.
Yeah, I know. Well, okay, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that happened.
Sleep. Yeah, so you can't be an accurate gauge from whether or not this thing. Why would anybody pay? It's like clearly they do.
I know. Well, no, that's the point. I guess I'm trying to hit on is like I think that's why when I've been hitting on so much of like. Do I need to get my head checked? Are my ideas okay? Because I'm like a 22-year-old who grew up on emo music and I love it. And I still went to that and I was like, that's weird. I would not have paid to go to that. But so many people bleed black for that. Like they love it.
I honestly, at first glance, I probably wouldn't have either. But I would say, like, I think about the dating world, right? Like if you want to go out and meet people and you listen to music, you were like an emo person, like you're not probably going to the club, you know, and like
That's a
Latin
good
night
point.
and salsa night and, you know, hip hop night or whatever.
You don't want to
But,
meet
like,
somebody at salsa night?
I would. I'm saying, but some people won't.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they jump by genre. They don't you fucking try to cancel me. They like some people just by nature will not branch out and do other things that they're like not a part of wanting to do. And so going out, I think, is one of the things that I notice it a lot. Like if you're not a big drinker, it's like, why would I want to go out? Well, I know tons of people that don't like to drink that I used to go and see at a pool hall in town, Sharky's I used to go to all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And like my buddy Dylan, a great pool player, he would just show up and get a glass of Coke and he would just drink because he liked to play pool. And I'm like, that's so weird. You would still go to this smoking room pool bar to just shoot pool and not like, I don't understand why you would want to do that, but it's just proof that, you know, you don't have to know how or why it works to know that it does and be like, oh, okay. And if anything, like you're saying, like it makes you sort of want to adopt this idea of, okay, I don't need to know why people will go to this. They clearly want to. If you can shift that to why do they want to go to this and figure out what that is. I could imagine like a lot of people in the dating pool, if you're like a little older than a college age and you live in a college town and you want to date somebody and you have the music you're into, but you're in an area where like maybe pop and country and rap are like the predominant genres in your area, having an extra night for emo night gives you a place to meet people that like the same music as you do. And who knows what visceral memories each person has connected to Cute Without the E. Yeah. And like, you know, and certain songs come on, certain All Time Low and certain Mayday Parade songs come on and everybody knows every word. And you're in a room full of people singing this at the top of their lungs. It was the first emo night I'd ever gone to. It happened to be in the town that I live in. So I was like, all right, we'll go and see how it's done. They did it pretty well. They did some things pretty poorly, but by and large, it was the people that were there that make it. And so that's to me no different than a show experience where you go to you play to a dead crowd. That sucks. You play to a crowd that goes nuts over everything. And you're like, why are you this excited? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, dude, what you just said was very insightful of like, don't ask yourself so much like, why would anybody do this? Or why would you choose to like, what are you doing? But really ask like, well, why are they? Like, why would somebody choose to enjoy it? That's a great way to put it. And I mean, it's like a club in a way. Like it's not like a nightclub, like a book club. Well, I guess it is kind of like a nightclub in a way too.
It's a club
like,
for you. It's
a club. Yeah, I know. Because I think about it like if somebody was like some people probably look at me and they're crazy and think I'm crazy because I'm just like, oh, I drive like 2 hours to go to like a Cars and Coffee, and they're like, why? Like you want to just go look at cars that you know exist that you don't own and you just want to go meet these people, and it's like, yeah, you're just gonna meet a bunch of people who think the exact same way as you, and it's like, okay, got me there, whatever, good point. But
maybe, but there's also discourse you have there. Somebody's, you know, if you're a car junkie, so some people swear by this exhaust and some people swear by, you know, like
no, exactly. It's just so
you can find shit out, like and it's community building really, and that's what it is. Like the emo nights being here lends credence to the idea that there should be maybe more rock-oriented venues in America and mass, and not maybe solely rock, but that cater to that rock audience or that, you know, pop punk audience or whatever. Like the venue in the area that we play here is like a legacy venue. It used to be called the Crowbar, and now it's called Stage West. I love the place because I have nostalgic memories attached to seeing like I don't know if you ever listened to like the Juliana Theory, but I saw them there. Yeah, bro. Like, wow, we can go down that one.
Good one.
So I love that. I love the venue for what I have attached to it from memory. But he books packages that don't maybe draw that well. And so we're doing this New Metal Madness tour, and I was like, how are ticket pre-sales doing? And this is like vulnerable. I don't know why I'm saying this, but like he was like, he's like, the ticket pre-sales for the show are not doing well. Well, I know we can only draw so many people in our hometown area. We only play in town here maybe like once in the spring, or once in the fall, once in the spring. I'm not trying to saturate home. I want people to come out and see us and have something to offer when we put a show on. I want to design a show and have fun doing it. But, you know, he gets discouraged because he books these packages that are not going to draw that well. They're like a legacy touring package of like old school New Metal Madness tour. You would expect that to have maybe a few more bands that were attached to the name New Metal. And so without it being them, it's going to be whoever their crowd is that they bring out. And maybe they're not big ticket pre-sale buyers. They're people that show up at door because they know there's no way that this band's selling out shows in 2023 when they had singles whenever I was in high school in 2003. So like it's just a very interesting thing. So I want to start booking. Like I would love to have you guys up here and book like a package. I was like, hey, if I booked a show in the area, do you think that you could let me do like an 18 plus show? And he was like, yeah, I'd be open to it with the right whatever. So maybe it's just a one-off and we figure out how that works. Like this is the kind of spitballing. I'm not like, maybe this is an actual pitch, maybe it's not, but like you have to be willing to kind of formulate these ideas to see where they get shot down, where they do work, where they don't work. And then if you keep doing that, I could solidify some big showcase that puts like you guys here, maybe some other band. It's all for a one-off, and we just bill out this like afternoon showcase thing that's like a 6-hour show, and you guys play like you headline, or maybe somebody else that's like bigger than you headlines, but we can fill a 600 cap venue easily with the right package. That's not hard, and you guys tap into a super diverse. I would love to see, just for the nerd sake of me, the analytics for your YouTube shit to see like what your age and demographic groups are. And I would imagine it's pretty expansive because, like I said, I had that friend who's like, "Oh, I love First to 11." I'm like, "You're a grown ass man drinking White Claw right now. Like, we need to have a talk about."
That's the demographic.
Yeah, that's who we're looking for. But you guys are also young, and so you're not too far removed from like high school, and you guys have been doing this for a couple of years. So like. And I don't mean that derogatorily. Like, I mean, you're young in your career. Like, the sky is literally the limit for you at 22. You can do anything you want for the next 30 years. And worst case scenario, you got to switch to country after 40. Like whatever it is.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, for sure. And so, to me, I'm just like, if you can see that, like, your audience is that broad, then you can draw that broad of an audience. Well, that to me says that's also a college age demographic. That's also like people in the area that are older that would be into you, and all everywhere in between. And then that's not just this area, it's also the surrounding areas. So it's easy to market that to people that would make the short trek up here to see you guys and see, it's in Pennsylvania. Maybe people from Erie will come down because they're like, "Oh, I've never gone to," like Audra said she was going to come down for the whiteout game for Penn State after we did the collab in September. And we filmed that in August, I think, actually. I think it came out in September. That's been my confusion. And I was like, "Well, let me know when you come down," because I work with, Penn State football, and I do these pregame shows. Like, I have some homie hookups. The lines are going to be long. Like, let me know. Like, I know a lot of the bar owners. I can make sure you come in and you have a good time and aren't, like, getting the average person experience, because it's like I can utilize my connections to give somebody a really awesome, positive experience here, and in a way that I would want people to experience the place that I call home.
Yeah. We were at one point in time, like, a member of First 11 was at Penn State, and we were like, "Man, wouldn't it be crazy if we like played Thon or something like that?" And then we were like, it's not that we like got close to doing that, but like we like climbed up a few ranks in the ladders, like maybe that'd be cool and like possible or whatever. And then like we just started noticing that they were like, "Yeah, well, it turns out they actually are going to get the Jonas Brothers player." And we're like, "Oh, okay. Like, never mind. They win. We cannot do this." Like, I sometimes forget just how much of a powerhouse this university is and how much they're just like, "Yeah, we want like Lady Gaga to come play there," and she's like, "Sure, I'll be there." I'm like,
right? They'll definitely, they'll do it. And so what's funny is you guys totally could play Thon. So Tim, the intern that was here, he is an intern for Happy Valley Song Lab, which is basically how they umbrella their interns under the record label type stuff that they try to do for My Hero Zero, which is the other band that Greg said he wanted to book.
Yeah.
But wanted too much for the wedding, and he was like, "Would you guys do that for this amount?" And you're like, "Yeah, whatever, sure, whatever." Yeah. But like, they play Thon almost exclusively, like every year, hour-long set, and there are other bands that are local to here that also get a shake at that. So I don't see it. Like, I could probably put you in contact with them to see if you guys are serious about doing it. I'd love to see you guys come down and do that, because it is a good time. It is a great cause. Obviously, it's for pediatric cancer, and you guys are definitely a part of, you play the music and do the things that would so well to the level that it would justify you guys coming down and playing it for sure.
I mean, we're down. If anybody out there listening somehow has more connections to Penn State than you know what I mean? Jump on it. Have us come play Penn State. Have us come play the halftime show or something. I don't know. That'd be.
There's a student organization called SPA. It's like the Activities Association for the students here at Penn State. And I remember randomly after I'd done a couple tours with Alex, he had a one-off date here, and I knew some of his crew texted me like, "Hey, isn't this where you said you're from?" And I was like, "Yeah, you guys are here today?" And they were like, "Yeah." So I went and I saw him. He played in the freshman dormitory area, like in the middle of all the buildings. They had him set out and do like an outdoor show. And it was like maybe a normal 30, 40-minute set, and it was like a $10,000 check. Dude. And like that's the kind of dumb money that universities throw into. I say dumb, but I'm like, yeah, it's kind of appropriate. Honestly, it takes a lot of, like, if you're not working and Audra and Ryan and everybody aren't working, and you can't be at home working and making music and releasing stuff that generates money. Yeah, you're taking time off essentially to go play a show. The show then becomes a new way of making money or whatever. But people don't look at it like that. And really it's like you have to sacrifice resources that you have to make, to generate income for yourselves to go play a show. And so to that degree that you've got 4 or 5 people in a band that have to take off work, plus travel, plus cost, plus everything. It's like, and then the value of your craft added in on top of that, I would say that's a fair price. Somebody who's built an audience for themselves that made you clearly want to have them out here must be worth that for real if you're willing to pay that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the most important thing that you just said was like, how else, like the one thing you can't really wager too critically is like your time. Like if you can't be home to like make stuff that will make you more money, then like, yeah, it'll cost premium. And also I talked about this with a friend last night, but how, I don't know if you'd agree, but just how the emphasis on live performance is like, I think slowly going down. That's not to say live performances are getting worse.
In what way?
It's just that it seems like up until recently there was like well, I think this is not a secret, but like to go and be like, we just need to hit the road all year to like whatever. Like that is not a part of it that's as essential as it once was.
Right. You used to be able to tour to make fans, and now you tour to your fans.
You tour to like appease them. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. So like, I don't know, when you talk about like now the landscape has shifted where like it really does cost more of like a premium to be like, okay, well they could be making money like putting stuff on the internet. So like we kind of got to give them a little bit extra something if we want to have them take time out of their day to just come put on a show.
Right.
We had a college that has now routinely, like we've played shows for them and it's like, it's the same price that you're talking about for Goot to come play here or whatever. But like we've played and there have been like 4 people there or whatever, because everyone's like on break when we play or whatever.
Right.
But we're still just like, okay, I guess we'll come play for like these 4 people.
Guess we're having a glorified practice today.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just so weird. Like sometimes I forget the scope of how universities, like to me, I'm like, yeah, like, they're going to have to pay this hefty thing. And they're just like, done, here's your check. And I'm like, where do you guys get all this money?
Right.
Like I wonder if students.
Why can't everywhere be like this?
I know. I wonder if students ever think about that though. If students ever here are just like, wow, I cannot believe I'm spending like, $50,000 to pay here. And it's like, I better be getting a good education. It's like, would you rather just come see, the Jonas Brothers or Harry Styles come play there? And they're like, yeah, absolutely.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you think about it, there's this thing, you have a student activity fee as a part of your tuition it's billed you every month or every semester, and you get it at the beginning, and I forget what that number looks like, but I'm sure it's inflated since whenever I was in college. So that money is going towards these kind of things. And we do a big festival here every year called Moving On. And it's like the largest student run festival in the country. And they had like, I think Jack Harlow was here last year, and like they always have Muse like not too long ago. So they have some big fucking bands that come through, and it's all run by the students. And actually Tim is on the board. He's on the board for Moving On for this year. So he was in the fall when we started filming. I was like, who are you guys trying to get? Who are you trying to get? He's like, I can't say anything just yet. Like I'm like, I had to sign an NDA. Like I'm not allowed to like talk about who we're talking to right now. I'm like, that's fucking funny.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it's just very interesting, right? Like this whole process of being involved with creating anything is just sort of, it's like nobody really truly knows what they're doing. And like I said earlier, like the best you can offer or hope for is to have some systems of like best practices in place that kind of help elevate your art above the people that are your peers when you're trying to be discovered by them. But I don't think any artist is trying to like shit on another artist by putting out their art and covering them up or anything like that. Everybody realizes we're all kind of in a different rat race, but we chose this one. And so we're somewhat happier, even though we may be somewhat broker or whatever it ends up looking like. It's just such an interesting journey. Do you have like a difficult time balancing, because you guys do so much? Do you feel like you have a difficult time balancing work and art and creativity with your personal life? I've
always jokingly said that I would have slayed at a 9-to-5 job, because I'm very good at like, I love deadlines, I love meeting times, I love like designated, organized, everything, blah blah blah. Like, dude, put me in a cubicle, I'm your guy. Jokingly, I mean, I kind of say that half-heartedly, but like, is it difficult? Yeah, I think it's difficult because like, I'm sure you know this too, but you have to make your own punching clock. Like you have to make your own time card and just be like, all right, well, tomorrow from this time to this time, like that's when I'm doing this. And like, you could just not go into work if you wanted to. In some situations, like my dad's a physician, he can't. If he just doesn't go into work, they will fire him so fast. You know what I mean? Which yeah, they should, right?
Yeah.
If you're gonna expect somebody to cut open your brain that day, you better hope that they show up.
Right. Yeah.
But it's so is it difficult? Yes, but this, by the way, what I'm about to say is certainly not like a boastful like badge of honor thing, but I struggle in the on the side of the spectrum where I don't know really where to stop. Like I usually am starting like my days with like a camera on and hitting record usually at like 9 a.m. and then I'm leaving the studio, whether that's teaching lessons, filming first to 11 videos or recording covers or doing whatever, usually around like 7 every day. And like it's hard to pull myself away from that. Right. And it almost would be easier if there was somebody there to just be like ringing a bell, like, all right, lunch break. And then like ringing a bell, like, okay, time to go home.
Right.
I don't know if you feel, I just like, certainly. I struggle with that. Or when people, this is the big one. And I'd be shocked if you've not experienced this, but when people are like, yeah, like, well, can you take off for that? And it's like, I can, like, I really would rather not. And it's just like, well, like my parents who now are like, they understand how it works, but for a long time, they were very much just like,
why aren't you at Easter Sunday dinner? Like, why? Like,
yeah. Well, I used to get calls. I mean, it's funny because they were like, when can I listen to this? And I'm like, well, let's hope I don't say anything too brash. But the only thing that I've had to have conversations with them about is sometimes there's like, well, you need to stop in and whatever, mow the lawn or something. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, I kind of got to stay here and like get this stuff done. And it's like, do you have to? It's like, I guess I don't. No one's going to fire me if I don't.
I'm not fired, but it is a part of your livelihood, right? And they're almost kind of inextricable in that sense. So it kind of becomes a thing where people also have to have respect for your craft and the artistry and like what you have to do. I totally get what you're saying, man. Like I get to a point where if I'm working on an edit for a client or something like that, or even for us, if I'm like, if I hit a stride where I feel like I'm really chopping through it and I'm like, yeah, I'm terrible. I'll be like, yeah, I'm leaving in 15 minutes. And then like at around minute 13, I get this like awestruck amount of inspiration that I'm like, oh, I know how I'm going to edit that. Like, and then I'll kick, and the next thing you know, an hour's gone by. So it's not, you do have to have the discipline to stop, but you also have to have the discipline to understand when not stopping is actually the better thing because the muse is with you. You're in a place where you've created they're just moments in time, man. That's all we get are these little moments and glimpses into what the ether is offering us. And you've plucked it out and you're trying to implement it. And, it can be a disservice to not pay attention to that. And so ultimately that's what work-life balance is, right? Like you're trying to find the best balance between I get to do the creative stuff, but I know when to turn it off and not going too far into one way or the other. Because if you slack away from the creativity, you can start to feel the void of, your soul's purpose not being fulfilled. And then if you go too far to the other side, you're like, man, but I really miss like getting to cuddle my girlfriend. Like I've been so busy, like he goes to bed early. And if I'm not done until 10, I'm not going to get to see her tonight. And then I work tomorrow. So I'm not going to see her till, oh shit, I'm not going to see her till Saturday now. Like, it's easy to lose yourself and your art at the same time. So you have to, it's a fucking juggling act and nobody really fully acknowledges it for like the one that it is.
Well, I've found, I think pretty like conclusively, like the happiest that I feel at the end of the day is the day where I get home and somebody's like, how's your day? And I'm like, dude, it was awesome. Here are like the 12 things that I finished. Like
you've got all the accolades. You're like, oh, I know this today. I cleared this out. I sent this invoice. I fucking this. Like
exactly. And I'm sure so many people feel that way totally exclusively of what their job is, but it's harder to come by those things where like in music, or I guess in the arts a little bit more broadly, like there are very like indefinite projects that you're just like, well, this project is not really looking to get finished up for the next 6 months. So it can get defeating coming home every day and being like, I chipped away at this and I chipped away at that and I chipped away at that. It's
no
like,
rewards.
It's
no
done.
Cookie at the end of the night. You're like,
I know.
Fuck.
It's I think that is what I have found. I think that's what drives like you're really going to stay another hour. It's like, yes, like if I can just get a little bit closer to having this be towards the finish line.
Dopamine hit. I'm just going to get this done. It's going to feel so good. You're going to want to deal with me in an hour way more than you're going to want to deal with me now if I don't get this done.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I know exactly. And also not having an overarching kind of structure of like, this is when you can take time off and this is when you can't. It sounds great to a lot of people that are like, you mean I can technically take time off whenever? It's like, yeah. And it's like, why would I do that? Well, I think there's a lot of mental like, oh, am I taking am I taking too much time off? Or it's like, did I take time off at the wrong time? I'm sure you know this too, but if you like taking weekends off where you're like, okay, I worked Monday through Friday, like 9 to 5, 9 to 7, whatever. The weekends, gonna not do anything. But the weekends are then when you're supposed to like be playing shows. Right, and if you can't play shows during the weekend, you're like, oh, I'm actually going out of town. There's a little bit of this internal like, oh,
I'm letting them down, or like,
I know
I'm failing the team, and this is like our group endeavor effort. And definitely that's definitely a part of it. And everybody's got to reconcile with that. I mean, the best thing you could do is have a band of like 5 people that are interchangeable with like, a homie who also plays drums in case you can't be there and is like familiar with your system, but you can't expect somebody to be on backup for you so you can go take this family vacation, Christmas cruise or whatever, Yeah,
I know.
It's just such a mixed bag. And that sacrifice is a part of it, man. Like it's all this very delicate balancing act of how we make it all work. And there's no rhyme or reason to any of it other than like, you got to find what works for you and be true to you and be true to your family, your friends, your close relationships that you have. Like, you have to do your best to honor your creativity and honor your relationships.
Yeah, I have a question for you, and this is going to sound like such a crude question.
No, I love them. Clearly, I don't give a fuck.
Do you ever feel the men that I happen to be surrounded with have this weird, and I guess myself in a way, I'm kind of included in this group, but have this weird drive to just be like, man, if I could just like put my head down and like get myself away from society and lock myself in a room for the next couple of years and just work till my hands bleed and like get rid of these projects that I want to get done, like I'd be so happy. And in my head, I'm like, wow, that sounds like such a nutcase thing to think of, that you wouldn't want more balance in your life. But I'm like, I can't lie. I've thought about that before too. Like just being like, man, if only I had this opportunity to like not have the personal side of the balancing thing where you're like, well, I do have to check in on my brother. I do have to, pay attention to this relationship, whatever. It's weird. Like you're like, when you're in work, sometimes you're like, man, I wish that I could just take this break and go grab a coffee with my friend. And then when you're out of work, you're kind of just like, if I could just have no social responsibilities for the next like year.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a real place. And I will say that has shifted for me as I've gotten older. I think it's something that just naturally does. Like as your priority shift, you kind of shift the way you function in your workflow because it has to adapt accordingly. And so what was the question originally?
I guess the question, sorry, maybe I didn't state it too clearly, but if somebody gave you an opportunity that was just like, look, I know you have this record you want to finish.
Right.
You have this whatever you want to finish. Yes. And I know that the deadlines are probably like 8 months away from now.
Right.
If I gave you the option to fast track that and get them done in like 3 months and everybody
you got to dip away from everything. Yeah, do this for 3 months.
I'm gonna just pick you up in a helicopter and just put you in Scandinavia where you know nobody and you just work on this.
I say that I'm already doing that pretty much in my day to day. Like for me, it's like the demoing process, getting the ideas going. That can always happen. That can happen independently of anybody even getting together at all. Like we all have ideas and creative things that we kind of input when it comes to Relic Hearts. But then like when it comes to finishing, like I said, we got a demo pool of like 20 something songs that like all have really, really great things about them that I want to see finished, but I need to set time aside to sit down. And you have to actually discipline yourself to have the time to sit down and do them. And it's difficult when you have like all the other work things you got to do at the same time. So I'm a big advocate for the idea of just sort of like absconding for a week or something like that. And like basically instead of the 3-month version of that, doing it in a week increment or like a 3-day increment. Like how many songs could we work through melodically that I'll refine over the next like 2 or 3 weeks? Because I don't love the idea of completing the art in one setting all the time, because then I don't feel like I allow it to breathe and think of other things that I might add or contribute to it later.
Yeah, sure.
And so if you can get like the core melody writing done and get like the core components to a bunch of your songs done, like 5 songs in 3 days, that's doable. If you're just doing like melody writing and maybe like you're pulling from lyrics, if you've got a massive textbook or books full of lyrics at your notepad full of lyrics or whatever that you can pull from, then maybe you can kind of make that happen in its crudest sense. But then you take that over time and you refine that. That's better for me than waiting to just get the individual one song written by spending only time on that. So like for me, the getaway is good. Like if you're separated from things, you have less distractions. And sometimes I find myself sometimes needing distractions. But I've also been in places where when we did our last record, Volatile, we disappeared to Salt Lake City for a month and a half. And I was away from everything and everybody. I have my cell phone so I can connect with anybody I need to at the end of the night. But the goal was work on this music from literally 10 a.m. till 6 to 8 p.m. whenever we're done for the day, and grind on this because we want to get it done while we're out here. We've already spent the money to be here at the studio recording and stuff and supporting my friend's studio business. But I also acknowledge like I can't do that all the time, right? Like that can't be the way it always works. And so there's some ebb and flow. It's another one of those balancing acts. It's like I've been in the position where you're at where I'm like, if I could just do this for 3 months and just hit that fucking burnout, I'll take a break then, but then everything will be done. I could take a 2-week break if I fucking hustle for 3 weeks and give people 2 weeks of my genuine time. The problem is sometimes you can get to that 2-week mark and be just, you just want to sleep for like a week of it. And you ever like go to the beach and like not go to the beach? Like I've gone to the beach once where I went to the beach like during the day for like an hour or two, but I didn't spend like an all day affair. And I love doing that as a kid. So, like my girlfriend recently, she's a big beach goer. So like when we go, she wants to be there the whole fucking time. Well, if I want to spend time with her and I'm at the beach with her, guess where I got to be? And she's not a big like hang out in the water all the time kind of person. But if I'm at the beach, I'm like, all right, well, I get laying out, but that's fucking boring. I'm not going to just lay out. Like I'm going to get it in the water. I went and I buy like boogie boards for my nephews and stuff like that. I'm like, let's get fucking buck out here in the ocean. And so you just have to be able to give yourself the adequate space to do the things that you want to do when you want to do it. It's hard when you feel like grinding. I think there's something to be said for listening to that. There's also something to be said for knowing when you're like, okay, yeah, this is that manic part of me that wants the dopamine rush of like finishing a project and being able to say it was done and I did it, and knowing that it's on to the next phase of, all the songs done. Now we can start working on the video for it or whatever.
Well, do you find that like it's even just hard for yourself to enjoy those moments away because the whole time you're just thinking about like
shit I got to get done, this work I've got to do, client work I have to do, stuff I'm trying to get done for the band. Oh, we got to plan this show. I got to this. Yeah, I mean it's always there. It's an exercise in silencing that voice so you can actually. I think the most important thing you can do is be present. It's like the best gift that we have is to be present with people. That's why I like doing the podcast. That's why I put the headphones in, the in-ears, because I'm like I have a hard time. If Tim were talking, I could lightly maybe hear him in the background or whatever, but if I hear you talking, you're right in my ear. So it's like you might as well just be like whispering in my ear. And so just having you talking to me and being able to know that like my phone is on and I have like a list of questions that like I sometimes want to default to if we talk about something that makes me want to touch on it. But the reality is I just enjoy talking to you. Like you are a creative person through and through, and you're the kind of person that if more people had a person like you in their lives, they would benefit in the sense that they would adapt more I guess like executive means of going after their creativity instead of being like, oh, I could never do that, or oh, that's not really attainable.
Oh, stop.
But you're one. I think I'm one, and I think I have I know a bunch of Alex is one, Kurt Schneider's one. All these people. When you're around them and they're creating, there's like I don't know. It's like a very like what do they call it? Like a handshake muse that you kind of get when you're around, and so you can kind of start to dig deep into parts of yourself that you maybe wouldn't have in that moment.
I have another question.
Let's hear it.
How do you think your life would change if you had 2 of yourself?
I would get everything done. That would be the game changer. As soon as I can clone myself with CRISPR and like age myself like the clones in Star Wars, that's it. It's game over. If I have 2 of me, you're fucked. It's game over. Like I'm winning the music industry game.
I almost think that if I had 2 of me, I could finally be like, I mean, like I don't want to quit my job, to be clear, but if I could be like, I could quit and be fine.
Right.
Like if I had 2 of me, because I could just be like, all right, you go do my stuff. Like I'm going to go work on all the back burners. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Clean up those back burners and have them ready by 5. And then you like go over here and because he executes the same way you do, shit gets done before, out of sight, out of mind. Are you a fan of 21 Pilots?
Yeah.
Huge fan of 21 Pilots. My buddy Chris is the tour manager for an EDM artist, Big Wild, or he was at the time. And he invited me to Firefly. It was like an event in Dover. It was like a big festival, and 21 Pilots played. So I got to see them play for the first time. Already kind of a fan, but had never seen them live. And that's an example of like, I mean, they're not clones of each other, but like for being brothers and like in a group together where you can share the same mission, that's kind of like, that's about as close as you can get, honestly.
Brothers, you said?
Yeah, aren't they brothers?
No.
They're not?
Mm-mm.
I could have swore.
The Tyler Joseph, the singer, and Josh Dunn, the drummer?
Yeah, they're not.
Mm-mm.
Huh. I don't know why.
I don't even look, unless they are, and I'm just a...
Let's look this up. Let's fucking... We could
Dude, I'm pretty sure they're not, but... Well, are you thinking of the Way brothers from My Chem?
Well, that's another example. The The short answer is no. That's hilarious.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you mean. Like, I'm fortunate that so many
One of the top questions is 21 pilots have 21 members. What?
21 Pilots is interesting, by the way. It's not really a confirmed or denied thing, but I've heard that early in their career, whatever one of their first singles I don't know if I was like Holding On or something, or Car. I don't know which one came first, but whatever the big single was, apparently got picked up by like the Christian community or something, and then they like kind of blew them up with like these crazy numbers and inviting them to like Christian
ministry
festivals.
events.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
yeah. And then somebody, I think, like in an interview was like asking them like if like they're tied to that, and they were like basically like didn't like confirm or deny it, because they were like not really, but like I mean we're not gonna fight this.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was a period of time where like there were like Tooth and Nail Records and a bunch of different like Christian record labels were signing bands because they have like a lot of money to dump into those artists. And that's, as an artist, if you're getting a development contract, like that's what you want, is the ability for somebody to invest in you to help you get to where you're trying to go. And so there were a lot of people that I felt like jumped on the Christian metal bandwagon that were like just there because it was like an easier path to getting to where they wanted to be.
Yeah.
And so yeah, what a mixed bag. Okay, so yeah, so they're not actually brothers, but the idea that, you know, those two are two people that are so synonymously close to working in tandem with one another to get things done, that's about as close as you can get to having like, you know, a doppelganger of yourself out there helping you complete the work that you were doing. If I had two of me, of course I get so much more done.
Yeah, it'd be beautiful. And what's crazy is I mean, I still feel like I get like probably like a little bit more than like an average person does in a day. Like I definitely try to push myself pretty hard, but I'm like, man, second person. I think the hardest part, like I'm lucky that I work with people that have a very similar vision, because obviously like our goal is to create these YouTube videos. So everyone's working towards that thing, which is great. But like for all the like the personal endeavors, you know what I mean? To be like, wow, if somebody could share the same like goal with me, like, man, the way that things would run, that'd be crazy.
Definitely. And so to me, I liken that to sort of like, you know, if you're Christian and you don't go to church, or you go to church and you only go to one church and you don't really love your church, and so you don't really go as often as you would if you went to a church that you liked. That's like going to a therapist. Like you can find a bunch of different therapists, but you should probably shop around and find a therapist that you connect with in a way that can really help you. And so that's like another important means of like kind of seeking out and establishing stronger connections and relationships with people that are more aligned to your vision. Just like being in a band or just like writing a book or anything like that, you want to have a team of people around you that share that vision. If you're rowing in the same direction, you're way more likely to get there. And that's just the bottom line.
Yeah.
So like if you can, yeah, like you said, having your band be, you know, we want to get this video done and up on YouTube, like everybody chirping in that same direction is going to make sure it gets done a hell of a lot faster. And somebody's like, yeah, but can we change the snare sound or whatever? Like somewhere way late in the game, you're like, the fuck are we talking about that for?
Yeah, I know.
And so, yeah, I think that's like a very important thing to acknowledge, that if you have it is good team building, and it's not just like your management, but even on the artist side, it's the team of people that you're creating with, sharing that vision and sharing that sort of like, maybe not even the same dream destination. Maybe what success looks like to all of you is slightly different, but the goal of knowing that as we grow, these are the things that we want to implement as our best practices daily with what we're doing, gets us to where we want to go. That's awesome.
It's crazy how much when you said that, like, can we change the snare thing? Like, it's crazy how much I've let go over time of like, how does this art work? It's like, yeah, it looks cool. Like, I feel like just over time, like, I don't know if it's just because of like how quickly you got to put stuff out, but in my head, I'm just like, sure, looked great. But I feel like years ago, I would have been like, no, that snare tone does need to change.
Right.
I don't know if you find it, but like nowadays I feel like there's so much more like broader, like get this out by this day kind of thing. If that is what's driving it, that I'm so like much less nitpicky about stuff.
Well, also you kind of you learn to start making definitive decisions earlier on in the process. Mm-hmm. And so then if you're doing that, or you have a tone that you gravitate towards, you guys will naturally whittle a lot of the question asking out, because you will have obtained a sort of like like a rhythm to what you're doing, and be like, okay, these are, we don't have to sweat that, because we all already agreed like 6 covers ago that we liked this sonic texture that we were kind of laying out as the foundation for this song. So there's nothing really has to change here other than, you know, the songwriting, actual individual parts, and how we handle like this rhythm section or whatever. Like those are things that are decision-making steps that you make along the way. But when you learn to commit to these decisions earlier, you're way better off because you can get to the end result faster. My problem is when original songwriting always takes significantly longer for me because I have a hard time committing to something early because I want to allow something to be edited and grow and birth something new maybe. And I'm interested in seeing how this can get affected if we send the stems out to this person to see what they would do production wise with it or whatever. And so when you have those kind of things that are kind of fucking with the workflow of getting it done, it can kind of be, it inhibits you from getting to where you want to be.
I wonder what it's like to be like on like Bieber's team or something though, where everything they do, they're like, all right, we can guarantee that whatever we're about to do is going to be consumed by like millions and millions of people. So they have like passing it to this person. He needs to get approved from this person to get approved of this person. Like, I just wonder what it's like. How does it work to do something on such a scale where there's quality control people for the quality control people?
Yeah, certainly. Right. And that's just the team building, right? So it's like, this is going to go out. Well, it's just going to come. When's this going out? Oh, it's going out in May. Well, that's right before the summer. So we should probably have this be like a summer vibe song, like that Peaches song that he had. Mm-hmm. That came out whenever I moved my mom to Hawaii in like April, like 2 years ago. And it was on every morning. And I was like, wow, it was the soundtrack to me being in Hawaii. Inadvertently, I'm not like a diehard Bieber fan. I don't dislike him. I definitely like plenty of his songs. But when you're listening to it in a space and in a place, the island radio is just on repeat all the time. And like Hawaii, significantly far away from Georgia. So like to have that song be the song that's popping off there. So yeah, I mean, it is really interesting. If you knew that the outcome was going to be like hundreds of millions of streams, what would be the song that you would put out? I would think that maybe they would say, hey, let's, what is it that we feel like is going on in the zeitgeist that we feel like this would be helpful with or, influence, or what do you have to say right now? And it probably happens passively a lot of times too. You probably have a bunch of shit in the work constantly. And then when something, you just know when something pops off and this is it, you're like, let's fucking run with this.
Do you think that they do like focus groups? Like, do you think that they like basically have a record done and they just sit down like, people who are in the top 1% of his monthly listeners or something? There's like, hey, if you want to hear the record early,
they could. It'd be a great way to have like a public litmus test of like, fans of Justin Bieber to be able to go in and review something. But I would also say their quality control, that aspect of what they would do for their focus grouping would be done by probably the series of producers and engineers that they hire to work on that, because they're like, they know that they're already in the wheelhouse as is, so that they're going to eliminate a lot of the barrier to entry questions that they're gonna, an average fan might have. I'm like, hey, why don't you do this way? And it's like, no. We commit to shit here. We get shit done and out and ready to roll.
Well, I also wonder though if like he's just on, or anybody in his sphere is just like on such a level that it doesn't even matter. Like, I think of Taylor Swift, like
she put out that All Too Well 10-minute version, and it's like not shy on streams for being a 10-minute long song.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, it does not have to do anything with like, is this record good or not? It's just like, dude, she's at the height of whatever you want to call it, the apex of like this era in music that we're in, and like it doesn't matter. She could put out, or the opposite. Like, think about like, didn't Kanye West buy a beat that Drake wanted? Did you ever hear about that? The song they put out that was like the Scoop Diddy Whoop song or whatever.
Yeah.
Where he basically bought it just to be like, well, no, you can't have it.
Right.
And
that's
like
a different world. So I'm noticing that in the hip hop community, the beat world is a totally different thing, right? Because that's some of those producers, that's all they want to do is just do the beats. Like they don't have any interest in the rapping side of things. But if you're somebody who makes beats, and there's no shortage on rappers that want to rap on your beat, most likely. But the pay structure for how you monetize that. Do you take a split on the record, or do you do a flat fee for up to so many streams? And if they make more than that in streams, you got to check back in with them and say, oh, hey, you got to buy another license for the next 50,000 streams you get. So it's not the same world as the people that can create the music and do it on that end. And that's something I've just recently started learning from working with some of the hip hop artists I've been working with. So I'm like, that's weird that's like an avenue of issue that kind of comes up in your creative space, where it's like, if you're a rapper and your thing is like you're a brilliant lyricist and you're really poetic and you got killer rhythms and you're fast and you're fucking all the things that we say like make you a rap god, but you don't have the ability to make your own beats. It's like you're kind of dead in the water unless you partner with somebody who can help you mitigate that other side of that.
Okay, tell me what you think about this. I've thought not nearly long enough about this, but I always thought it'd be cool if there was basically like Tinder, but for beats, basically.
I literally almost said this to you early about Tinder for musicians. For like, what if you could be like, oh, we tour with them. We tour with them. We play a show with them. No, definitely not. Your stats are on there.
I would almost start more specifically with like, people who are selling beats, and I was just like, well, SoundCloud's already a thing, but I was like, it should be SoundCloud, but way more like simple with like user interface, where basically like you have a beat and you can choose like a 35-second clip of it that plays like when you scroll. Like think about TikTok, how the video like auto plays.
Right.
So you just scroll, you get a 35-second thing. There's like the price that they list it for, and then you can, you know how like on, well, actually, I don't know if that really works, but like on dating apps, how there's things that are like interested in like a relationship with like a guy, or I'm interested in a relationship with a girl. Like there could be like a thing that's like, I'm interested in just selling you this beat. I'm interested in like producing this full out for you.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And then like you can get into direct contact. And then it could also be like Facebook Marketplace, where if somebody like hits you up and they're like, I want this, it can be like marked as like pending. Like somebody might take this. Right. And then you could do like bidding on them. Like if you're like a really famous one, you could be like, we're starting an auction. You want to have
a short window of it, because otherwise somebody could like bid and keep something pending and something wouldn't get out.
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like we need to develop this app actually, and then we got to come up with a name for this, because there is something to that. There's subcategories that say like, oh, I'm a man, or I'm a woman, or I non-identified, or whatever your category is, and then the next category is I'm seeking a whatever. Mm-hmm. That would be an interesting platform that I feel like a lot of artists would gravitate towards.
Yeah, and you could basically
can we pause real quick so I can pee, because I'm gonna explode. I've been like,
no, you're good.
Yeah, like I almost want to just jump on ChatGPT right now and be like, all right, what would be a great name for an app that handles artists that are looking to connect with beat makers and this, that, and the other thing?
Well, I think that part of it is like people who are in rap are like, I don't know. This is just what I noticed personally. People that I know who are like the SoundCloud rappers from your high school, that you're kind of just like, what is this kid doing with his life? But I feel like if those people who maybe are slightly they're like less akin to knowing how to maybe use social media and stuff like that. Like I know so many kids that actually were not bad in high school, and if they just had like a platform to like meet other people to connect with that stuff,
right,
like would have been huge. Or if somebody had explained to them how to remotely record, like you don't actually need to live in the same city as this guy.
Yeah, like I still don't have that barrier hurdled, like personally myself. Like if I can figure out how to implement that with my bandmates, that would save so much time, where we could like get together and do this writing together.
Yeah.
Adjust the MIDI for this drum part that we're writing in real time, and like just move on to the next thing. Be making these, it makes it harder to make solidified decisions until you have this extra situation where you get together to discuss those things.
Yeah.
So like that can be a thing that holds shit up. And that's like, you can't have that. You can't have any of these things that are kind of tripping up the system. And when you're trying to run a well-oiled machine, and I mean, that's what you guys are doing. Like when I watch what you guys pull off, I'm like, this is not by accident. This is fucking, there are strong systems in place and practices in place here that fully make it so that you're able to capitalize like at every turn of the way, because your mindset is focused on the goal and everybody's focused on the same goal.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you guys get a lot of flack for doing Concrete Castles and First to 11, since it's like some of the members you're basically, it's minus Ryan, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, we don't get flack for it because we were very like upfront, like, do you want to do this? And he was like, well, I mean, really for him, it wasn't that it's not that he didn't want to do it, but the touring part of it, he was like, I can't, I have kids, I have a family.
Right.
So no, I think
his his son is a monster. Like that is so hilarious.
Oh my gosh. I like his kid, like I like him. I'm so like inspired by his kid doing how well he's doing that if he starts inspiring me anymore, it's gonna become like consuming. I'm gonna be like, I can't compete with this kid, because he's just so like everything that he touches is just like blows up. You know what I mean?
Well, he's a cute kid and he's fucking super talented.
Yeah.
Good on him that he has his dad for his dad, right? To help like encourage and facilitate that growth, because he's fully gonna benefit from it, like clearly.
Oh yeah,
I think it's
his kid's amazing.
That's really, really awesome. We went out to, you were there. We went to Wings after we went and did the video last time. Yeah, that was just such a trip. I had so much fun. Like that whole day was like such a whirlwind. We had such a good day doing that. We didn't know what to expect going in there, because I was like, honestly, I've seen them with Alex and like what the system looks like at Alex, but Alex's system is his system, right? It works the way his works, and your guys' is totally different. And when you can see that there's no right way to do the thing that you put out to have similar or comparable results, you're like, oh, well, like, Alex is a one-man team. So like if he had 3, 2 or 3 more people with him doing the kind of shit that he could do a lot more too.
I think that the greatest benefit for, and something that I truly commend him for, is I don't know how he's able to be a one-man team and like commit to stuff so the way that he does, I guess. And I actually noticed that the only times that I've ever been like, oh man, that's everything that we do, like with him, where we're kind of just like, yeah, that's basically how we do it. And then like there's only ever 1 or 2 times I'm like, yeah, that's weird. That's not how we would have done it. And it's usually because he'll kind of like question if the commitment that he made to something was like good or not. Like he'll be like, ooh, that drum fill, I don't know. And I'm like, we already recorded it. What do you mean? And he's like, yeah, I know. But, and I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, it's good. I'm telling you, it sounds awesome. And he's like, okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. He's not neurotic in a bad way, in that anybody who is neurotic suffers from it in a bad way. He is somebody who is just hyper vigilant about what he puts out and creates.
Exactly.
He also is also like, oh, like if it's good, it'll find the right audience, get it done, and put it out. So like
I know, yeah.
He has his own battles inside with like his own perfectionism and what he wants to get done and this, that, and the other thing, and whether or not this will do well. And the landscape's changing, so it's like you have to be willing to adapt and do that. And he is in the ways that I think are the most important, and that's in the like he can hear feedback and be like, oh yeah, you're right, I'm overthinking it or whatever.
Yeah, I know.
But he's also got the mindset where he'll notice the thing and be like, maybe something else here.
Yeah. When he suggests other angles, or we should actually do this instead, it's like, yeah, you're right. That's a good idea. And then it's just so funny because like those are things that maybe we in some capacity might struggle with. We're like, yeah, we couldn't have thought of that. Like, good thing we collab with this guy. And then, like I said, like sometimes we'll just get texts where he's just like, so I'm kind of rethinking that we need to do this. And we're like, I'm telling you, it's fine. Like, dude, it's awesome. Actually, it's amazing. In fact, it's amazing. Like, you have to.
The reviews we've been getting from our friends and family.
Yeah, I know.
Play him some quick clips.
He's such a funny dude. I love him. I gotta go see him.
I get that he feels like he is probably an acquired taste, but he is this like perfect example of like how like there's a certain amount of genius to his madness, and I love it because he embraces it too.
Yeah,
and that's what it takes ultimately, man. Like he's definitely one of those dudes that like when we were touring, he was very socially like anxious about like doing the meet and greets and stuff like that. And so he was like, I don't know. But he knew it was a part of it. So it was like he was able to decipher for himself that really what he loved more was being home, being with his family, and being able to do more music writing from, and covering and stuff like that from home. And so it's like, yeah, if you set that for yourself, like super successful, his house is so nice. Like, the time you guys came down, I was sitting there, I was painting the 3-bay garage to be his like home studio for videos and stuff like that, to give him a secondary alternate area to do, live music video sets. And I was like, you pick up things when you go to other people's places and you step into their homes or their creative spaces, and you get if you're smart enough, you kind of cherry pick the things that you like about each of these places to take home with you, to integrate into your systems that make it so that it kind of becomes a new way you adopt doing things. And if it's constantly this process of doing that, you're going to find some really interesting ways to make the same art you've always been making, but in just new ways.
I don't know if this is like, I think the story is fine to tell, but it is just fucking hilarious. The first time, it was when we first met. The first time we like pull up and we like see his house and we walk in and we were like, to preface, what we thought was his house.
The townhouse. Yeah.
So we pull up and we were just like, wow, like,
really
this guy
nice
got
place.
in. Yeah, this guy got in early. Like, this is a nice place. He's a great, like, man, it's cool to see another guy that's really like doing well for himself and whatever. And he's like, all right, we're going to go back to my place. And I was like, this isn't your house? And he's like, no. And we walk it, or we're pulling in the driveway, and there's the gate that says like, now entering $1 million+ homes.
Yeah, $1.3 million house.
Yeah. And I was just like, what? And then we were just seriously like, we were laughing hysterically in the car, being like, his neighbors at his townhouse where he records are probably just like, this asshole just rents out this place. It's not even his house, just so he can record.
He's always there, to be fair, but
he is always there. Yeah.
But like, not at night, like when he goes home and stuff like that at the end of the night, they're like, he never stays here.
I know, they're like, where is he going?
Right, for sure.
So funny. And oh my gosh.
Until he passed away, he Meatloaf lived right next door. Yeah, I was like, oh no, that is insane.
I know. I just thought that was hilarious. Like, I was just like, this dude. And actually, that's kind of what it was like with like with Kurt too, in the sense of like we saw like his apartment. We were like, wow, it's interesting. It's in LA at the time. It was in LA, and we were like, well, LA, inflate the cost or whatever. We were like, wow, it's this is a great place. It is a little interesting that he lives like in an apartment. And then they're like, yeah, we're moving. And then we were just like, oh shit, like they're living nice. I was like, good for them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Alex was living with a couple of people, a couple of YouTubers out in LA. Whenever I think it was like VidCon in one year we went out to, and we went to his place, and he had like a giant metal knight statue in the foyer wraparound staircase area of their huge place. It was like not that far from downtown LA, so it's like not cheap rent, and but still like a really, really beautiful place. I was like, damn. That's that fuck you YouTube money right there.
I know, it's like pre-adpocalypse money right there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's like another thing. Google's AdSense is like shifting and stuff like that right now. So it's like, it is kind of a shame that we're getting away from this. Like, you can algorithmically be found that way and into this space where you have to be willing to pay to be in front of those markets, because that creates this like, okay, but if you don't pay these artists enough to be able to fund their advertising, at least like in like old union towns, like old coal mining towns, they would have like the coal mining company would own the fucking grocery store, and they would own like the barber shop and this and that. And so all your money you were making, you were just funneling back into the company to provide services, basically. And so that's essentially what we're kind of getting into. So hopefully, and when we don't have representation in Congress that can handle the tech side of what we're dealing with from the entrepreneurial side of things, and you have zero protections from them to just change a policy, and it's like, oh well, they're a private company, so if they change this, it's like well within their right, you don't have to use their platform. Okay, but can we agree that if we want to have videos out there and we're not on YouTube, we're doing ourselves a huge disservice?
Yeah.
So it's like, when are we going to have this discussion about what constitutes being a monopoly in the tech space? And meanwhile, you got the Congress and TikTok. Oh my god, dude! I don't know if you watched any of that, but
the SP something act, SP.
Yeah.
What is it?
Yep. Yeah. And so the one representative was like, the one representative of Congress was like, if I'm at home and I'm on my Wi-Fi, does TikTok use my Wi-Fi to get?
Oh, they have no idea what that.
They have no clue. It's like, why are we having this discussion with a fucking idiot? It's like asking, somebody who is a rural farmer in the middle of nowhere, Texas, like what's a popular bird in Pennsylvania? He's like, why the fuck would I know that? Like, I have no idea. So meanwhile, maybe he shouldn't be making legislation about popular birds in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And that's the part that really frustrates me, because I'm like, these are people that are like, we're dealing with an AI crisis that, like, if we don't figure this out and start regulating this shit now, especially with like facial recognition, we're 10 years behind on that already. We need to be regulating that in a way that is much more strictly going to be monitored, because that's how you slip into a surveillance state. It's like, oh yeah, if you live in China, there's software that can basically detect you, and there's like a social credit score that you're kind of privy to. Okay, well, I don't want some mistake I made in high school to be the reason why I can't get a loan for a car when I'm 36 or something, because maybe I said something unsavory back then, or anything. Oh, I missed school. I was late. I almost had my senior year. If I missed one more day, they were not going to let me graduate. I basically took 3-day weekends every weekend my entire way through senior year, because I was a straight A student. Like, why would I? Yeah. Why not? Why would I punish myself by going into this?
Yeah. Well, and also, like, I don't know. Now you're seeing the landscape change in another way, which is like, now people are basically paying to elevate their status on social media. Like, do you know that there have been like something like 50 million like verification checks sold in the last like 2 months or something like that?
Oh, I believe it, because we've synonymously agreed as a social media consuming society that blue check mark means something. And so,
I know, it's like a currency,
right? Yeah, certainly. And I mean, and being able to pay for it, it's like, okay, yeah, subscription service for notoriety. Cool.
Yeah,
I can be relevant while
how could this go wrong?
Right. Yeah, for the day that Twitter brought like purchasing verification back, there were people that were like not verified that were making fake accounts for other like major companies, and then just posting things that were like very inflammatory and not a good look for the company, but weren't actually the company. They were just at first glance, it just looks like that's the Kellogg's cereal company. You're like, oh, okay, I'm being trolled right now.
I know. I also was just it's not that I was confused, because I understand that that's like how they're going to make a lot of money. But I was also thing that was confusing to me is why I was surprised that people liked it is because I was like, doesn't that kind of just devalue it? Like now, anytime you see like a blue check, you have to be like, is that really because they're important, or is that just because they have money?
Yeah. How soon do we go to the tiered check where it's like, oh,
There's a green check
And
and-
yeah. That's how you know you're real. But the blue check is like, but you're invested. You're on the path to becoming a green check. Oh, someday I'll be a green check.
Someday,
But
yeah, right.
Never be a yellow check. You never.
No, you don't want to hang out with them. You'll get in trouble.
Yeah. That's the slow phase. You never want to be in the slow phase.
I know we're gonna have like World War III is just gonna be fought over like what kind of check that you have.
Right. Yeah. So what do I think the long-term ramifications are of YouTube and this, that, and the other thing? World War III. That's
right. That's the conclusion we're drawing from this podcast.
Do you feel like you kind of touched on this a couple times. Do you have like do you guys see when you're looking at your videos, like there's like the percentage of thumbs up and thumbs down or whatever, and the number of views or whatever? Do you guys ever kind of fall prey to looking through the negative criticism? Like I can't imagine you guys get too much, but like the negative criticism you get, does it bother you at all?
No, I mean, it's not that I'm a bad person to ask this, but like, I don't read through comments or anything. Honestly, the only thing that's discouraging isn't about like the criticism that people leave, but it's more just like putting in lots and lots of effort into videos, into songs, or into whatever, and it's just like it's a crapshoot if they're gonna hit or not.
Right.
We did Tom Sawyer, and I
Rush,
I like put like. Look, it's a cover. I mean, but I put a lot of effort into it. I was going to say heart and soul, but I mean, I didn't write the song. But I put like a lot of effort, like trying to make sure every part of it was like recorded exactly how it was supposed to be and whatever and blah, blah, blah. And we had this guy come in and bring us like his giant drum kit, and we filmed like this really cool 80s style video. And it was like,
I saw, yeah.
Yeah. And then it was just like nobody was commenting like this is terrible. So to answer your question, no, but it's just weird to be like
viewership is down. It almost feels like a slap in the face. You're
I know. I know.
It's 16 hours into this. Like,
I know. It's like you'd almost at that point just be like, wow, I wish that this was so bad that people were hyping it up and giving it views and leaving comments and people would be talking about us. Which, no, not actually. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, like, it's one of those things where, maybe it gets used. Your version gets used in a score for a trailer for a film in like 4 years. And then through the roof, it blows up and you're like, oh, I was upset for being impatient, basically, because like it didn't hit when I wanted it to hit.
Well, I'm waiting for the time that like if I am ever fortunate enough that like content that I make with my name on it gets enough traction that it'll bring some haters naturally. When that day comes, I'll have a different answer for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe we should do that Limp Bizkit cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get a Limp Bizkit cover going on. And then I learned, so this is kind of weird.
Okay.
Like our the Doja Cat Post Malone cover. Did not perform very well on your channel compared to a lot of your other songs. And I was like, 100% it's because I was the first verse and Otter's not there early enough to kind of, get your fans to be on board with what's happening there. And I was like, you know what? Lesson learned. All right. I was like, I thought it would do better because it was like a really popular song. And I thought that was a great way to kind of put the two of us together. And just a simple little like structural hindsight not being, you couldn't because the song was written in a way where if you're going to do a feature like that, you have to do it in that
flip
order.
It around. Yeah.
Right. But like to notice that it didn't do as well, it's not like I wasn't like heartbroken over it. I'm like, I'm sure they're not either. It's just like one in the cog of a million other things that they're going to have coming out. But I was like, damn, I'm really kind of bummed that like I didn't stick the landing on like a better turnout for that. But you can see why and where. Maybe you believe like, well, maybe this will break that pattern. It won't fall privy to that mold or whatever. But certain things are almost kind of like solidified in YouTube stone how they're going to perform and it's still one of our like top 10 most streamed songs on like Spotify like in the last 28 days for like since it's come out. It's always in the top 10, like up and down one or two here and there, and don't know why.
Well, yeah, I know. And I don't know. I mean, you're right in the sense of like there are like pretty obvious patterns, but it's also said that one of those obvious patterns, as you said, that YouTube has written in stone, has unfortunately nothing to do with the amount of effort you put into something. Like there's absolutely no correlation.
The time you put it out, like the time you post it, like how consistent it is with the rest of your releases. You guys have done good with being consistent on the time, like having it be every Thursday, new songs coming out. Your fans know that they're getting that email earlier in the morning from
Pavlov's dogged them.
No,
I mean,
sure, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I know. No, and we've just learned like it's I like jokingly was just like, man, those Christmas songs I did like whatever 2 years ago, like those are my favorite ever. And everyone's just like, yeah, we just didn't really listen to it because like we don't know that song. And I'm like, damn it, just listen to it. Like I promise you, you'll like it. But they're just like, yeah, dude, that's how we are. Or like Guns N' Roses, like, dude, I respect, but like I'm not a Guns N' Roses person. Like I kind of just like, all right, let's get through this Guns N' Roses video, and then everyone's just like,
and it's like
50
huge.
million views.
Yeah, I was like, bro, and that's the thing, like. That's what. So if we're gonna go for the haters, we got to pick like a controversial artist and then go after it. I think Limp Bizkit's an easy one because they're the most out of character, just break stuff and just that could be good. But when you see that there is really like no rhyme or reason to it outside of like it's just gonna hit. What's gonna hit's gonna hit, and that video was also kind of like a fair music video kind of style video. So like there were already some interesting like vibe elements to that I felt like fit in with the song. And then, Thor Love and Thunder comes out, and then that song's like the title track to like the theme for the trailer for that. Mm-hmm. So, they're going to see an increase in streams, and you guys are going to inadvertently carry into that because the way search engine works, you're going to just get picked up. It's just funny that like there's so many different little facets that go into how you pick a song, why, how you orchestrate, how you're going to implement getting it done and getting it out, how it's going to hit, whether it's going to go well. Whether it's going to go well later and you're not going to know because like there's just so many unknown variables. I do love it's just a fun game. If you can enjoy the losses that you take, which are like, maybe the song doesn't take off the way you want to, and you can at least be mindful of what the lesson there is. You're like, okay, all right, that's fine. This makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It's good to have like a pretty like brush it off attitude because like putting out a video a week doesn't matter if this one didn't hit next week.
Yeah, you're gonna be done writing songs after this. Is this your last?
Oh yeah,
you're gonna write? Like no, you're like no. All right, I need to quit overthinking this.
The only thing that like I think maybe people who are like coming up can kind of experience is like it's like a stock market trend. Like if things tank, like a lot of people are like double down, like buy more because like it will come back up.
Yeah, but buy the dip. That's like the common say.
But like it scares so many people to just be like, oh, that didn't do well, so I'm not gonna do that anymore. Because they could be right, but they could also be so wrong. They could, you know what I mean?
Yep, that's exactly how cryptos work.
They could be Kate Bushing it. You know what I mean? Like they could just be like, dude, run over the hill. Like we are not putting that on the record, guys. And then it's like, no, we're gonna put it on the record. Just see what happens. And it's like, yeah, exactly.
Well, dude, we've done. I think we're at 4 hours right now. So this is
great. I love this.
Officially my longest podcast. Dude, we should definitely have you back. I want to get through my first 21, but after that, I don't care who I have as a repeat guest if they're like 6 times in a row. Because like I just want to get to that video game number of 21. That's my goal.
Dude, let's make t-shirts. Let's do a cake. When you do episode 21, let's bring in a cake. To make t-shirts, let's have a celebration.
Yeah, that would be great. You know what I should do is a round table set up with like my top 4 streaming guests and see who I can get to come up. Like get the top 4 here. So like Jason was my first episode, so I wanted him to be my 21st.
Jason. Oh my gosh, Jason. Wait, Jason who?
His name's Jason Olsey.
Oh.
Who are you thinking of?
I was thinking of a different Jason. I'm sorry.
But he was my first guest, and he was kind of the guy who got me over the hump of putting the episodes out. And like once I did his, I did like 4 within the next week. So it was like nice that I was kind of getting the ball rolling then. And then the holidays hit, so there was like a month-long lap, and being able to assemble more, podcast interviews and sit downs with people. But what has been great then is now as I'm getting in towards 21, I'm like, it would be cool to have my maybe not even like the top 4 played ones, but like my top 4 favorites that I think would come in and we could have a really good like round table style discussion and do like a long format 21st episode, do a fucking cake and the whole thing. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, dude. Well, yeah, thanks for having me on. You're not that far away, so I'll be down to come on whenever.
Dude, I really appreciate it. Do you want to tell people like where they can find you and what they can, where they can find you on socials and what to be looking out for?
Absolutely. So look out for First to 11, FIRSTTOLEVEN. ELE, just spelled that wrong. All right, take 2. Look out for First to 11. Everything spelled out on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, everything. Covers every week, Thursday. And Concrete Castles is also putting out a single and a behind the scenes video of the music video making every single month now too. So look out for those. And then I am putting out, I guess, different kinds of content. I'm trying to do like some producer breakdowns, like short ones.
Yeah,
I'm trying to do
2-minute breakdown you just posted the other day.
Yeah, I'm trying to do. I would like to. Get some like drum covers done too soon. So my Instagram is just Sam Gilman, all spelled out. I think maybe there's 2 N's on that, SamGilmann. And that should be all you need to know.
Yeah, so hopefully they can find you and be a part of your artistic journey, man. It's a pleasure because I've had fun since we met and you guys were all on the couch slumped, like messing around with the When We Were Young cover down in Nashville to, doing the Post Malone Doja Cat cover to just talking shop with you about like what your musical passions and interests and, things that you're pursuing are. And I value that you are such a go-getter and that you're very emphatic and energetic about what you're going after. So it's a pleasure just to have you in my ecosystem of creative people that I know I can reach out to, bounce ideas off of and talk to and catch up with. And
the feeling is very mutual. I'm very, very happy that we've connected. I'm very happy that I have, like you said, somebody else in the community to reach out to for stuff. So you got a lot of things that you bring to the table that I do not yet, at least. So
yeah, it's early in the game for you. You got time to accrue all those skills. They're coming.
Yeah, well, we'll go into business about this Tinder, rap beat kind of thing. So
podcast. So can't be giving away the recipe.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cut. Yeah. Cool.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We're always collaborating at all times with the universe.
That is a wrap on another episode of the Collab or Die podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed making this episode for you. And now it's time for our favorite part of the show, the part where I beg you to please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. And don't be shy. Give us a shout out on social media at Collab or Die Podcast on all the cool platforms to share your thoughts, your feedback, and your love. Until next time, Collab or Die, baby.